A mysterious system suddenly descended upon Blue Star, turning billions of real-world humans into players and casting them into a chaotic cosmos of stars. A grand cross-dimensional interstellar game of wits erupted with a thunderous start. For the sake of survival and continuity, the Earth Union brandished the banner of tolerance, extolling racial integration and taking whatever it pleased from alien civilizations, yet it remained cold and merciless only toward its fellow humans. The consequences of excessive indulgence followed one after another. Those alien species sheltered by the Earth Union finally turned and sank their fangs in dragging the real Blue Star down into an abyss of annihilation. Having returned through rebirth, Xiao Fan despised to the marrow the Earth Union's hypocritical peace and loathed the treacherous betrayal of the alien races. Xiao Fan, calm down. We will agree to all your demands, just don't activate the Singularity Device. Out in space, a once Earth-like planet had already become a field of ruins. Countless human corpses drifted like space debris in the silent vacuum. The lingering fear and unwillingness on their faces were the final marks they left upon this world. A young man in battle armor hung suspended in the void, a faintly glowing device in his hand, his gaze icy as he surveyed the carnage before him. He slowly raised his head toward the sky full of alien warships and foreign species. The voice he transmitted through brainwaves carried a bone-deep chill. All my people are dead. Do you think I can still remain calm? How could that be? Many of your Blue Star kin have already become subsidiary races of our civilization. How could the alien commander hastily argued, as long as you don't activate the singularity, we can grant you a star system suitable for reproduction, relocate your people there, and let you live in freedom. The young man gazed at those alien warships, then suddenly threw back his head and laughed. My people. His laughter cut off abruptly, his voice turning as cold as ice. Do you think they are worthy of being called my people? A harsh clicking rang out as he slowly raised the device, both hands locking onto the handles at its ends. In the instant his arms exerted force, violent energy began to spill from the device, turning the faces of the enemies aboard nearby warships ashen as they screamed in terror. Open fire. Kill him. Kill him before he fully activates the device. Thousands of warships fired brilliant beams of light, in unison, all blasting toward the young man. Yet the young man's lips curled upward amid the erupting radiance. Too late. The light detonated completely in an instant, engulfing the entire universe, and even piercing the walls between dimensions, radiating toward other cosmoses. In that moment, it was as if the universe had been frozen by a pause button. In the next second, time began to rewind, light reversed its flow, and everything in existence retreated at an inconceivable speed. The young man stood within this backflowing space-time, his body gradually breaking apart and scattering into nothingness. In the real-world Blue Star, year 2050. By this time, Blue Star had long since broken free of planetary shackles. Breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and nuclear fusion had spawned a vast array of advanced technologies, among which virtual reality games were one facet. While the market was flooded with virtual reality games of crude simulation, tasteless, yet hard to discard, a game claiming a 99-sensory fidelity titled Epoch abruptly appeared from nowhere. After 3 long years of waiting, the day of the server's grand opening finally arrived. Although governments across the globe repeatedly issued warnings urging citizens not to enter this unknown risk game that clung to every major platform and could not be deleted, the allure of 99-sensory fidelity was simply too great. At the instant the opening countdown hit 0, countless players donned Neuralink headbands and chose to log into the game. What the hell is this? I just landed, and I'm already being hunted down by wilderness NPCs. The player watched me. Nyobi wiped his cheek. Warm blood seeped from a wound grazed by a stray bullet, quickly soaking his right palm. His adrenaline surged in an instant. While marveling at the game's astonishing realism, his mind was simultaneously filled with bewildered questions. And he was not the only player utterly at a loss. Not far away, a gang of bikers riding rusted motorcycles, their bodies sprouting disgusting tumors, were roaring as they closed in. Kill this bunch of bastards. Skin them, dry the meat into jerky, and store it as winter rations. Look at this tender flesh, you can tell it tastes good at a glance. Harsh cackling laughter rose. Don't let a single one escape. Gunshots and whistling bullets filled the air. Some players, unable to endure any longer, snatched up stones on the spot and charged forward, ready to fight the bikers to the death. Watch me. Nyobi also wanted to rush in, but remembering the prompt he had seen upon entering the game, he ground his teeth, glared viciously at the bikers, then turned and bolted. If he wanted revenge, he would first need to acquire a decent weapon. Otherwise, being slaughtered like this would leave him seething for an entire day. Many players shared the same thought. Taking advantage of the bikers' focus on butchering other players, more than 200 still clear-headed individuals followed behind him, sprinting madly in the same direction. 10 minutes later, the roar of engines and the bikers' arrogant laughter were still closing in from behind. Some players who could no longer run cursed furiously. Damn it, I'm done running. Let's kill these bastards. We're players, what's there to be afraid of? Exactly, fight them to the end. Foreign curses rang out as well. Watch Me Nyobi braced his hands on his knees, gulping for breath. Though he did not feel mentally tired, his control over his avatar was already experiencing delay. He also picked up a stone from the ground, ready to turn back and fight the NPCs to the death. Just as the situation was about to lock into a fierce stalemate, a crisp crack sounded. The head of the leading biker lieutenant suddenly exploded. Only after a brief moment did a thunderous boom roll in from far away. The scene left every player dumbfounded. One after another, they turned toward the direction of the sound. At last they saw a dark silhouette standing atop a nearby rise. Damn, with sniping at this distance, it's Sand Scorpion. The biker gang members saw the shadow, and their faces turned pale. Only then did they realize they had trespassed into a place they should never have entered. Without hesitation, they twisted their throttles and fled at full speed. Several more thunderous blasts echoed from the distance. Of the bikers fleeing at high speed, all were shot dead except for one deliberately spared. Xiao Fan, clad in a leather trench coat and cradling an anti-materiel heavy sniper rifle in his arms, walked slowly into the crowd of players, his hood pulled low. He swept a glance across these faces, both familiar and strange, then withdrew his gaze and began stripping gear from the bikers' corpses. Since he had activated the Singularity Device, the entire universe had been rebooted to 3 years before Epoch's launch, and he had inexplicably become an NPC within the game, one bearing a Lord template. NPCs bearing such a template could recruit players as subordinates and even share Lord-exclusive talents. As for the conditions required to obtain a Lord template, in general, any native of this world with a certain degree of fame could acquire one. He did not know whether to feel fortunate or helpless. As an NPC, he had lost the player's trait of immortality. From now on, he would have to tread with extreme caution in everything he did. A player from an island nation, eyes flashing with sharp light, hurried to Xiao Fan's back and bowed in thanks, uttering foreign words. But just as the words left his mouth, a handgun bullet struck him, and he fell flat on his back on the spot. The players who had just begun to feel goodwill toward Xiao Fan felt their hearts clench at once. Xiao Fan slung several guns across his back and strode up to Watch Me Nyobi. His voice was cold as he spoke. Say something. Let's talk this out, brother. Watch Me Nyobi took a step back, his right hand behind his back tightening around the stone. The moment Xiao Fan raised his gun, he was prepared to smash it toward Xiao Fan's head. He rapidly calculated the chances of success at this distance and judged them low, so he quietly shuffled a bit closer. Yet Xiao Fan paid him no heed at all, turning instead to another player and asking the same question. That player opened his mouth and spoke foreign words, only to be forcibly fed a peanut. Another pistol round. On the spot. He was a player from a certain neighboring country. After consecutively gunning down several players from island nations, neighboring countries, and others from distant lands, everyone present finally understood. He intended to spare only players from the Celestial Dynasty. As for the rest, he would not let a single one go. A few quick-witted players tossed away their stones and turned to flee, yet cold bullets still found them from behind. Once all those he deemed should be killed lay dead, Xiao Fan holstered his pistol at his waist, righted a motorcycle, and kicked it to life. He performed a stylish drift on the spot, then just as he was about to depart, turned his head toward the still-dazed players of the Celestial Dynasty. If you want to live, follow me. The crowd exchanged glances, licking dry lips, then hurriedly righted the bikers' motorcycles. 3 to 5 people squeezed onto each vehicle and followed behind Xiao Fan, quickly disappearing into the wasteland. Deep in the wasteland, on a radiation-scarred plane, Xiao Fan brought his motorcycle to a halt. He kicked aside a stone at his feet, revealing a mechanical panel hidden beneath. After he entered a password, the ground shuddered and slowly collapsed inward, forming a sloping ramp. He then mounted his motorcycle again and rode down into the ramp. A group of players from Tianqiao were still chattering about Xiao Fan's identity, but when they saw this, they hurriedly followed, trailing after him into the base. The base was not particularly large, but it was surrounded on all sides by solid reinforced concrete, clearly the crystallization of Xiao Fan's 3 years of effort in this post-apocalyptic world. Once everyone had entered the base, the ramp gate slowly closed and the lights along the corridor flicked on one after another. Xiao Fan parked his bike in the garage and casually set his gun down on the floor. A clumsy tracked robot immediately trundled over, picked up the firearm, and disappeared into the depths of the garage. Xiao Fan walked to a cracked leather armchair in the central hall, sat down, and pulled out a cigarette, taking a deep drag. For a moment, the atmosphere throughout the base felt rather awkward. Seeing that no one spoke, the player whose ID was Kinwen Nyobi braced himself and stepped forward. "Excuse me, you are?" Xiao Fan gave him a once-over from head to toe, but felt no sense of familiarity. It was only natural. Ever since this game had been taken seriously by nations in the real-world, players had basically been organized into unified forces. Aside from those Western players who clung to individualism, it was already difficult for Tianqiao players to stand out. Xiao Fan, wasteland codename Sand Scorpion, he introduced calmly. As early as 3 years ago, there was a legend circulating in the wasteland world that otherworlders would descend to save us. Judging by your appearance, you should be that very group. The players were struck dumb at once. So they even came with such an identity setting. Xiao Fan went on the Leto wasteland is no easy place to survive in. He did not spell out the rest, but the players easily inferred his intent. He was trying to recruit them. Thinking of how they currently had nowhere else to go, the crowd immediately erupted into noisy agreement, each one loudly declaring their willingness to pledge themselves to Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan smiled, faintly fully aware that most of them merely saw him as a stepping stone ready to slip away the moment they found a better NPC. He did not mind. He simply had everyone formally declare their allegiance. System notifications rang in their ears. They had sworn fealty to the NPC Xiao Fan and obtained a Lord-exclusive talent, Death Denial. Death Denial, you no longer have a resurrection cooldown and may log back into the game immediately after death. However, the lower limit of your character's pain threshold will be permanently locked at 20%. Another warning followed. Once you declare allegiance, your identity will be bound to your current lord. If you sever this bond, you will lose all attribute bonuses and must start over from scratch. A further warning stated that they must ensure the lord's safety. If the lord died, all attribute bonuses of their followers would vanish along with him. Everyone drew in a sharp breath, then burst into wild elation. It seemed they had truly found a superb lord. A lord talent of no cooldown resurrection was vastly superior to the system's default 24-hour cooldown. Even starting from the very bottom, with such a talent, their growth speed could far surpass that of others. "Greetings, my lord," the crowd shouted in unison. Xiao Fan flicked away his cigarette, but rose slowly to his feet and gave a slight nod, then began assigning tasks to the crowd. The players immediately split into small groups of 3 to 5 and started wandering through the base. Greenhouse sector, energy room, dormitories, canteen, makeshift assembly workshop. Though small, the base was well equipped. After treating everyone to a free high-grade meal, Xiao Fan led them to the warehouse to select weapons. "My lord, where are you taking us? Could it be that we're going to settle accounts with that biker gang?" Kan Wenyobi, clutching a crude wasteland-style pipe rifle, sidled up to Xiao Fan, trying to make his presence felt as he asked, "Just call me Commander. I don't like the title Lord." Xiao Fan tossed out these words without further explanation, then led more than 200 people out in full force to the place where the players had previously been hunted down by the biker gang. He lifted a pair of binoculars standing atop a dirt mound and surveying the distance for a moment, then turned to Kan Wenyobi and handed him a blueprint. "Take some people and dig trenches according to this plan. The biker gang is one of the most notorious roaming syndicates in the wasteland. They will not swallow this insult." Hearing this, Kan Wenyobi thought to himself that they were indeed going to fight the biker gang. He immediately straightened his back and saluted. "Reporting to the commander, I guarantee the mission will be completed." Seeing his manner, Xiao Fan let out a soft chuckle. Holding the blueprint, Kan Wenyobi ran into the crowd, noisily directing the other players to get to work. "Damn, he's really that eager to curry favor. Come on, we know you're holding a blueprint, but anyone who didn't would think it was an imperial edict. Quit staring and get to work." Kan Wenyobi gripped the blueprint and wiped his nose. "The commander said this battle depends on our performance. If we can't catch his eye, will be sent back to where we came from." The moment the players heard that, their entrenching shovels swung faster in their hands. On the wasteland, a hot wind swept past, carrying dust into the air. The crowd worked with fierce enthusiasm, shoveling clods of earth out of the trenches in a steady spray. The ground here was mostly sandy soil mixed with gravel. Players with pickaxes first broke up the compacted layer, and those with entrenching shovels then piled the stony sand onto the outer side of the trenches. Xiao Fan did not remain idle either. He patrolled back and forth along the defensive line, occasionally pointing out deficiencies in the way the players were digging their trenches. "Make way, make way." 3 players pushed a small cart through the crowd, then jumped down into the trench and opened a crate on the cart as if it were treasure. Inside lay a heavy machine gun assembled from a heap of scrap metal parts. They licked their lips, crowding around the weapon to study it. "By the way, do you even know how to use this thing?" "How could I not? Games are all like this. Besides, I'm a former soldier. I may have been discharged 5 or 6 years, but the skills are still there." As he spoke, he had his companion take out a scaffold, setting it firmly on the forward edge of the position. Then he accepted the more than 20-kilogram heavy machine gun from another player's arms and mounted it on the scaffold. As he familiarized himself with it, he muttered, "This design feels a bit like an antique Maxim heavy machine gun." He then brought over an ammunition drum, fed the belt into the gun, racked the bolt, and through the iron sights tested the feel by aiming at the open plain ahead. At some point, Xiao Fan had already crouched at the edge of the trench behind the 3 of them and had someone hold up a target board more than 150 meters away. He chuckled softly. "So can you handle it?" Hearing the voice behind them, the 3 players immediately turned and snapped to attention with a salute. The lead player thumped his chest. "Rest assured, Commander, leave it to me." Xiao Fan pointed at the target ahead. "I'll give you 10 rounds. Within 3 seconds of opening fire, you are to knock that target down. If you can't do it, I'll find someone else to operate this heavy machine gun." The other 2 players glanced at their chest-thumping companion, thinking silently, "You wanted to show off, and now you've been caught, haven't you?" You brag so you can live with it. 150 meters was not exactly close. Through the iron sights, the target looked no bigger than an ant. Moreover, this heavy machine gun was clearly crudely manufactured with no guarantee of accuracy, and the lead player had not handled a firearm in years. Deep down, he lacked confidence. More and more players gathered around to watch the show. Some even itched to take his place at the gun. The lead player could only take a deep breath, sit on a makeshift stool of stacked ammo crates, stretch his legs to brace against the trench wall, grip the machine gun with both hands, and press the firing button. The gun roared to life. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Holy! The ammo belt jerked violently, the whole machine gun bucking like it was dancing madly, and the gunner was instantly stunned. The recoil was monstrous. What are you staring at? Help me steady it, he shouted in a panic. The nearby player reacted at once, grabbing the water-cooling jacket around the barrel with both arms, and almost hanging off it, trying to restrain the machine gun's wild vertical jump as it fired. The heavy gun rattled on, da-da-da-da, kicking up sprays of sand around the distant target. In an instant, 5 rounds were fired. Only with the final 2 shots did one finally hit the target and knock it over. Only then did the 3 of them let out a long sigh of relief. Xiao Fan nodded in approval, patted the lead player on the shoulder, and had the other hopeful gunners come over one by one to try their hand at the heavy machine gun. If a player failed to hit the target with 10 rounds, someone else would take over the role of machine gunner. After explaining the precautions for the heavy machine gunner, Xiao Fan turned to find the players who were still fumbling with the mortar. No, you have to take the safety off the shell before loading it. But how do we aim? We can't just fire blindly, right? Look, there's a sighting scope interface here. How do we attach it? Unbelievable, none of us can operate the cannon. What are we even doing with the mortar? This shell will hit harder than a gunfight with the enemy, right? The group caught a glimpse of Xiao Fan behind them and quickly nudged the small player who was still fiddling with the cannon. The small player impatiently swatted away his companion's hand. Don't disturb me, I'm about to figure it out. He licked his lips, closed one eye, and leaned down to the aiming part, adjusting the mortar's elevation with exaggerated seriousness. Xiao Fan stood silently, watching him pretend to be serious, with a faint smile, his gaze sweeping over the large rock not far ahead, knowing that was the enemy's target. Give me a mortar shell. The small player waved his hand, without looking up, signaling for someone behind him to pass. Is that really okay? The player handing over the shell hesitated, glancing secretly at Xiao Fan. What are you? He'll strike a sole shot, and the commander might even come personally to light a cigarette for me. You won't find a good gunner like me anywhere. The group turned to look at Xiao Fan, who jumped down from the edge of the trench and personally retrieved a homemade mortar shell from the ammo box, opened the fuse, and handed it to the small player. The small player took the shell once again, verified the aiming angle, gripped the shell with both hands, and suddenly released it. Clang, boom. Whoosh, boom. The mortar shell arced through the air with a chilling shriek, precisely landing above the large rock 100 meters away. The towering rock was instantly reduced to rubble. I'm indeed a genius. The small player jumped up, fist pumping, his face brimming with pride. Xiao Fan was also somewhat surprised. He had handcrafted all these mortars himself. Though he attempted to calibrate them uniformly, the differences in precision and slight variations in the shell's charge made hitting the target extremely difficult. Usually, they could only be used for fire cover. After all, hitting a moving target with a mortar is as hard as climbing to the sky, yet this player hit a stationary target on his first attempt. His luck was almost worth buying a lottery ticket. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, took a puff, and then handed it to the small player. The small player instinctively took it and stuffed it into his mouth, only to realize moments later he turned sharply to look at Xiao Fan, dropping the cigarette on the ground. He looked around at his companions, whom he had only just met, and saw a group of them standing at a distance, arms crossed. Commander, let me explain, actually I. Xiao Fan smiled slightly, patted his shoulder, and stuffed a whole box of handmade cigarettes and a lighter into his pocket. The ammo box, marked with a green line, contains training rounds. You're responsible for teaching all the gunners how to use them. The small player felt the weight of the cigarettes and lighter in his pocket and suddenly broke into a silly grin. As soon as Xiao Fan walked away, everyone rushed over. Bro, can I get a smoke? Get lost. You didn't even tell me when the commander came. The small player shouted while clutching his pocket. Thank goodness I hit it, otherwise I would have made a huge fool of myself. Isn't that just to show off in front of the commander? You can do it, bro. Have you played this before? No, but I've played plenty of war games. I'm a cyber cannon master. Bro, if you're that awesome, well, stick with you in the future. Oh, what do you think? 2 people per cigarette, no more. The small player took out cigarettes to share with everyone, claiming he was stingy, yet apart from keeping 2 for himself, he distributed the rest. This is the romance of men. If you ask a buddy to treat you to a Red Bull, he might hesitate, but when it comes to sharing cigarettes, he won't hold back, no matter how expensive. Meanwhile, on the other side, a player named Look at Me Being Awesome was digging a hole in the trench holding a cigarette, but that had been passed around who knows how many times. Upon hearing Xiao Fan call him, he immediately ran over. Commander, you called me. Xiao Fan stood on the dirt slope, pointing towards the barren wasteland ahead. Go to the ammo depot and move the box marked with a skull in that direction. All the explosives are buried there. Do you want me to teach you how to place it? Look at me being awesome flicked away the cigarette, and patted his chest promising no problem. After 2 hours, more than 200 players had become familiar with each other. Among them were many hidden talents, veterans, old employees from machinery factories, fresh graduates. All kinds of skilled individuals. Setting up bombs was a trivial matter for them. But when Look at Me Being Awesome brought people to the position's ammo depot, he found a group of players already gathered around studying the explosives. This circuit is way too simple. Come on, there's nothing in the wasteland. It's already impressive to have a circuit board. True. The leading youth picked up 3 iron pipes, tied together wrapped in red, green, and yellow wires. He carefully opened a bomb, unscrewed the nut on the iron pipe, peered inside under the sunlight, and found it stuffed with light yellow Play-Doh. Oh, this is the real deal, made with trinitrotoluene. What are you all doing? The sudden voice startled the youth, and he nearly dropped the bomb. He steadied the bomb and turned to Look at Me Being Awesome, annoyed. Can't you be quieter? You scared me. Do you know what you're doing? Look at Me Being Awesome scoffed. The youth immediately retorted, with this stuff, give me the materials, and I can make something better. Do you believe me? The players who came with Look at Me Being Awesome already found digging holes boring. Now seeing someone more professional smiled widely. Awesome, bro, we have professionals here, and let's go back and get familiar with our iron pipe guns. Damn it. Look at Me Being Awesome didn't have time to call them back, and the followers scattered, leaving him and the youth staring at each other in disbelief. A few minutes later, a group of players squatted on the gully in front of the position, carefully using spades to dig holes for burying explosives. By the way, brothers, this is my first time doing this. Why do I feel like a terrorist? I see the Middle Eastern Sandal Army in the news, and we look pretty similar. Can you think before you speak? Can we be compared to that bunch of Sandal Army? Exactly. That group is too crude. If I became a technical officer and was given some materials within a month, even an AK wouldn't be a problem. I could even whip up a homemade cannon that packs more punch than a gas canister. Look at Me Being Awesome listened to the chatter of the crowd, completely speechless. So it turns out each of you has the potential to become a terrorist. As the setting sun dipped below the horizon, the heat waves of the barren land dissipated with it. On the vast and desolate wasteland, the howling wind screamed like the wails of lost souls, and the stark temperature difference between day and night made the players in the trench shiver involuntarily. Damn it, we've been waiting all day. Why haven't those motorcycle gang members arrived yet? Could it be that they are too scared to come? Then are we wasting our time today? Wasting time? Not at all. With our commander leading us and the no cooldown rebirth talent, we already have a huge advantage over everyone else. Xiao Fan stood in the trench command center listening to the murmurs of the players on both sides, but he paid them no mind. He knew that with furious temperament, if something happened, Xiao Fan stood in the trench command center listening to the murmurs of the players on both sides, but he paid them no mind. He knew that with furious temperament, if something happened to his men on his turf, he would never let it go. At that moment, a glimmer flashed in Xiao Fan's pupils. They're here. The voice was low, yet it instantly silenced the players in the trenches on both sides, and they all tensed up. How many are there? They say more than 1,000. What, over 1,000 vehicles? That means there are tens of thousands of people. Is it really that outrageous? The rumors grew more exaggerated, with some even claiming that the enemy has come with tens of thousands, prompting many players to mutter, how can we fight against so many people? A black line appeared on Xiao Fan's forehead as he picked up the walkie-talkie and issued an order. All machine gun positions, pay attention. Fire is not allowed without my command. Machine gun positions, understood. Mortar team, aim at the number 1 designated coordinate, prepare 5 high explosive shells, and wait for my command to cover with fire. Mortar team, understood. Everyone else hide, and do not expose any part of your bodies. Understood. The temporary combat teams of 10 responded one by one through the walkie-talkie. The players in the machine gun positions were filled with adrenaline as they pulled back the bolts, and the cold muzzles hidden in the weeds emanated a chilling aura. Boom, boom, boom. Not long after, the roar of engines echoed from afar. On the silent wasteland, this sound was unmistakable. The motorcycle gang had arrived. In the distance, a man wearing a mechanical mask with his left eye glowing crimson was sitting in the passenger seat of a modified 4-wheeled off-road vehicle. He was fury. As he recalled his subordinates' report, anger surged within him. Usually too lazy to argue with the lone wolf Sandscorpion, did he really think he could intimidate him? He had even killed over 10 of his subordinates. If he didn't take revenge for this, how would the people around Darkle City look at him? How could he continue to survive in this wasteland? Click, click. Furious mechanical eye quickly focused, scanning the barren land ahead. After seeing no abnormalities, he switched to thermal imaging mode, frowning slightly. There was a small amount of residual heat on the opposite slope. However, he quickly thought to himself that Sandscorpion was just a lone wolf, and those heat sources were likely left by mutated creatures of the wasteland, so he didn't think much of it. Boom, boom, boom. Seeing the slope ahead, the motorcycle gang members became excited and twisted the throttle to the max, preparing to perform a cool stunt using the slope. Xiao Fan's lips curled into a slight smile. "Wanna fly? Then I'll make you fly even higher." He unhesitatingly pressed the remote control in his hand. Boom! A burst of flames suddenly erupted, and the massive shockwave instantly overturned 5 motorcycles surrounding the bomb. The sudden explosion startled the members of the motorcycle gang. "Drive carefully. Everyone else go ahead and clear the way." Fury steadied the steering wheel and noticed that the driver hadn't moved for quite a while. Turning his head, he found the driver had a metal shard embedded in his neck and was no longer making a sound. Filled with rage, he kicked the driver out of both the person and the door, taking the driver's seat himself. Suddenly his heart lurched, and every hair on his body stood on end as he instinctively turned his face away. In the next second, a bullet whizzed past his cheek, blasting the seat behind him. Fury's heart sank, and he quickly used his mechanical eye to zoom in, clearly seeing the familiar face on the distant slope. It was Scorpion. The enemy's firepower was too fierce. Exposing themselves now would surely turn them into sieves. Xiao Fan quickly embraced his anti-materiel rifle. The tracer rounds formed a fierce web of fire under the setting sun, sweeping toward the position. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The players crouched in the trench, listening to the bullets whizzing past overhead, feeling both exhilarated and horrified. The enemy's firepower was too fierce. Exposing themselves now would surely turn them into sieves. Xiao Fan quickly embraced his anti-materiel rifle and shrank back into the trench, pressing the remote bomb once again. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions erupted on the wasteland, sending massive fireballs into the air and instantly eliminating 1/3 of the enemy's combat power. Moreover, the anti-tank trenches dug by the players in advance caused many motorcycle gang members to carelessly tumble into them, falling off their bikes and landing in disarray. "Damn it! Everyone get out of the vehicles. Fire suppression, charge forward and eliminate Scorpion." Fury jumped out of the off-road vehicle covered in dirt and dust, his face a dark mess. Having been in the wasteland for so long, he had never suffered such a great loss. Furious to the extreme, he grabbed the heavy machine gun from the overturned three-wheeler, one hand lifting the gun and the other steadying the belt, and began to fire wildly at Xiao Fan's position. The motorcycle gang members thought Scorpion was alone and rushed forward with their makeshift submachine guns toward the player's position. A glint flashed in Xiao Fan's eyes as a camera disguised as a rock on another hill slowly turned, focusing on the entire battlefield. As the enemy was about to charge to the front of the position, he picked up the walkie-talkie again. All machine gun positions opened fire immediately. The players were instantly invigorated. "Ha! You little brats, it's my turn to go all out." The camouflage in front of the machine gun positions was pulled back, and the players hiding behind the cover grimaced as they pulled the triggers. Da-da-da-da. 4 heavy machine guns formed a crossfire, wildly shooting at the enemies charging up the slope. The web of tracer fire instantly suppressed the enemy's firepower. Caught off guard by the sudden barrage, the motorcycle gang members were terrified and immediately dropped to the ground, not daring to lift their heads. "The target has been suppressed. Mortar team, rapid fire with 5 shells cover the suppressed enemies." "Fire!" shouted the mortar team leader. Boom, boom, boom. 20 mortar shells were fired in succession within 5 seconds, densely raining down on the heads of the suppressed enemies. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook violently, flames soared into the sky, and the debris kicked up by the explosions scattered like bullets. The unfortunate motorcycle gang members closest to the impact point were instantly turned into blood puddles. The echoes of wails reverberated across the wasteland. "Damn Scorpion! How dare he ambush me!" Fury lay on the ground in a sorry state, utterly enraged. He pressed the communications earpiece in his ear, rocket artillery in the back. "Aim at the enemy position and blow them up." At the back of the line, a pickup truck with a makeshift multi-barrel rocket launcher slowly raised its launch tubes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Accompanied by the violent shaking of the pickup, the rocket's trailing flames densely rained down on the player's position. Boom, boom, boom. The shockwave swept up dust and debris, and some unlucky players were directly blasted away by the rockets that landed in the trench, instantly killed in action. "Awesome, brother. Look at my awesome," was stunned by the bombardment, his character's vision spinning in a dizzying whirl. No matter how much his companion pushed him, he couldn't react for a moment. Slap. A sharp slap echoed as it struck his face, forcibly dispelling his character's dazed state. "What happened?" he asked, bewildered. His companion, covered in dirt, shouted. "The commander told all the brothers to fire at will. Don't let them get up here." "Then what are we waiting for? Kill this bunch of bastards." "Look at my awesome!" Instantly regained his senses, grabbed the iron pipe rifle beside him, and began to shoot wildly outside the position. A barrage of rockets from our side temporarily interrupted the fire suppression from the motorcycle gang. Members of the motorcycle gang seized the opportunity to roll into the blast crater created by nearby mortars, engaging in a fierce exchange of fire with the players from a distance of less than 100 meters. Both sides, blinded by fury, refused to back down, taking cover behind makeshift barricades and exchanging fire with rudimentary pipe rifles. However, in terms of firepower, it was evident that the motorcycle gang had the upper hand. Xiao Fan quickly adjusted the tactics over the intercom. Mortar team fire that will prioritize eliminating the enemy's heavy fire points and densely populated areas. There's no need to force kills from the machine gun positions. Focus on suppressing the enemy to buy time for the mortar team. After a brief pause, he shouted gravely, "Look at me, I'm awesome." In the trench, the soldier engaged in a shootout with the enemy immediately put down his gun to respond. Received. Commander, please command. You take squads 1 to 5 and head to position 3 immediately. Squads 6 to 10 come with me to position 2. Understood. Xiao Fan called out consecutively. Machine gun teams 1 and 4. Received. You are to proceed to positions 3 and 4. Immediately set up weapons in the designated machine gun spots and suppress the enemy. Reporting to the commander. Only I am left alive at position 1. The voice coming from the intercom was panting heavily, indicating that this player had been severely wounded during the recent rocket bombardment. Xiao Fan, who was in the process of moving, paused and said solemnly, "Can you continue to suppress fire?" "Yes." "Then hold your position. The brothers who respawn at the base will arrive shortly to support." Xiao Fan immediately ordered the machine gun team at position 3 will take over the task of team 1. We guarantee to complete the mission. 2 groups of 50 men quickly flanked along the hillside behind the positions. The frontal positions suddenly lost nearly half their personnel, and their firepower was significant. 2 groups of 50 men quickly flanked along the hillside behind the positions. The frontal positions suddenly lost nearly half their personnel, and their firepower was significantly weakened. The motorcycle gang mistakenly believed the players had run out of ammunition, and several bloodied individuals immediately crawled out of the trench ready to charge. Machine gun positions suppressed the enemy's charge. Xiao Fan's voice once again came through the intercom. In a previously silenced machine gun position, a hand covered in soot struggled to grip the edge of the trench as a player fought to sit on a makeshift bench made of ammunition boxes. Hiss, damn, that hurts. He glanced at the 2 companions beside him who had been blown to pieces, and with only an arm remaining, he pressed his chest against the machine gun and pulled the trigger with his remaining right hand. Damn it, everyone go die. The intense pain from his wounds didn't deter him. Instead, it, along with the heated atmosphere of the battlefield, completely ignited his adrenaline. With wounds on his face and his teeth chattering, he was already blinded by rage. As enemy bullets whistled past, he still fiercely controlled the machine gun to suppress the enemy, gritting his teeth while waiting for his returning companions to relieve him. Members of the motorcycle gang who had just charged forward were instantly shredded by large-caliber machine gun bullets. The remaining individuals were terrified, flattening themselves to the ground, not daring to raise their heads. Mortar team, what are you waiting for? Open fire. Wipe out these scum. "Look at me, I'm awesome," roared from the trench. The players in the mortar team were sweating profusely, constantly adjusting the angles of their cannons to provide continuous fire support to the front line. Below in the crater, the furious player trembled with rage. He never expected that on the wastelands surrounding Darkle City, besides his own motorcycle gang, there were others with such formidable firepower. He repeatedly asked about the loading progress of the rocket launch vehicle, vowing to crush the enemy with the resources he had accumulated over decades. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The piercing whistle once again tore through the sky. The bombardment is coming. Players who had suffered from the rocket artillery immediately ceased firing, flattening themselves in the trench. Boom, boom, boom. The positions were once again engulfed in flames. Seeing the players stop firing, the furious players suddenly sprang up from the ground, leading the charge by shouting, "Charge! Take their positions, kill the sand scorpions." With their leader taking the lead, the motorcycle gang members who had originally been thoroughly suppressed mustered their courage and began to crawl up and charge towards the frontal positions. At this critical moment, Xiao Fan and "Look at me, I'm awesome" each arrived at positions 2 and 3 with their team. The slope formed a crescent shape, with position 1 at the base of the crescent and positions 2 and 3 located on the hills extending from both sides, perfectly allowing for crossfire from 3 sides. Unfortunately, the number of players was limited. If only there were more manpower at the flanking positions, they could have completely annihilated the motorcycle gang. Pap, pap, pap. The rhythmic gunfire suddenly erupted. Players who had flanked quickly crouched in the trench, setting up their guns and firing wildly at the charging motorcycle gang. On the other side, 2 players were sprinting with a machine gun, while another carried a heavy ammunition box weighing dozens of pounds. Once the 3 arrived at the positions, they skillfully assembled the weapons, loaded ammunition, pulled the bolts, and pulled the triggers in one swift motion. 2 streams of deadly bullets intertwined and swept towards the charging enemies. By this point, the players had killed no fewer than 500 motorcycle gang members, yet the enemy still had half of their forces remaining, and it was clear they were about to break through position 1. Once position 1 fell, the enemy could easily flank to both sides, and the situation would completely reverse. The enemy is coming up. Mortar team fire a barrage 50 meters back below them to bits. The squad leader in trench 1 ducked back and shouted angrily towards the rear. 50 meters back is our position. A gunner hesitated. The position is about to fall, there's no time to worry about that. Blast it. The squad leader threw down the intercom, stepped on the edge of the trench, and opened the engineer shovel's cover. Brothers, it's time for revenge. Even if we die, we must hold these scum back. The respawned brothers will arrive soon. Charge. Kill them. The players wrapped detonators around their waists, held up their engineer shovels, and leaped out of the trench, charging straight at the enemy. One player swung his engineer shovel with both hands, striking a motorcycle gang member hard on the neck. Stepping on the corpse, he pulled out the shovel, blood splattering all over him, looking like a demon crawling out of the abyss. Even with bullets piercing his chest, he continued to roar as he lunged at the nearest enemy. One player was stabbed in the chest by a rusty dagger, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. With bloodshot eyes, he turned and grabbed the enemy, tearing off the pull ring from the grenade on his chest, rolling into the charging enemy ranks before the terrified eyes of his foe. Ah, kikik. Boom. A violent explosion sent the surrounding enemies flying. 70 or 80 players became completely entangled with over 500 motorcycle gang members. The enemies, fearing friendly fire, hesitated to shoot, while also wary of the bombs on the players, rendering them immobilized and completely passive. Seeing this, the 4 mortarmen at the rear artillery position immediately ordered indiscriminate barrage coverage. Boom, boom, boom. Shells fell into the chaotic crowd, catching the motorcycle gang members off guard. Madmen, they are all madmen. The furious player was both shocked and enraged. The motorcycle gang members, who were used to bullying others in the wasteland, had never encountered such a brutal fighting style. Coupled with the continuous machine gun fire from the hillsides, which also mowed down their own personnel, the motorcycle gang completely collapsed. They all dropped their weapons and desperately fled towards the foot of the mountain. Coupled with the continuous machine gun fire from the hillsides, which also mowed down their own personnel, the motorcycle gang completely collapsed. They all dropped their weapons and desperately fled toward... The furious player was so angry, he nearly spat blood. He had roamed the wasteland for decades without suffering such a great loss, not only losing hundreds of subordinates, but also being defeated by the Sand Scorpions. However, given the urgent situation, he could only unwillingly roar to order a retreat, desperately fleeing under a hail of bullets. The furious player's sixth sense detected a deadly danger. Without thinking, he pulled the bald underling in front of him as a shield. Boom. The underling's body exploded instantly, and a bullet, undeterred, directly blew off his left arm. The furious player, gritting his teeth against the intense pain, rolled into a crater and screamed into the earpiece, ordering the rocket launch vehicle at the rear to bombard the hill where Xiao Fan was. Whoosh, 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 rockets whistled in. Commander, be careful. Seeing this, the surrounding players immediately set down their weapons and rushed over, forming a human mountain to pin Xiao Fan down. Boom, boom, boom. The violent explosions once again echoed across the wasteland, and smoke quickly enveloped the entire hill. The last rays of the setting sun faded away. Under the bright moonlight, the battlefield was filled with drifting smoke mixed with a nauseating smell of charred flesh. Seeing the position where Xiao Fan was located being bombarded, the second and third positions were not as sturdy as the first. The players were terrified that Xiao Fan would perish and no longer cared about those fleeing, rushing madly towards Xiao Fan's position. Commander, are you alright? Layers of severed limbs were pulled apart as a player dragged the bloodied Xiao Fan out from the pile of corpses. Commander, water. Look at how awesome I am. Quickly brought the water bottle. Xiao Fan gulped down a few mouthfuls, his chest heaving violently, secretly thinking that he had been too reckless this time and had underestimated the mechanical modifications of that Fury guy. In such an intense battlefield, the enemy could actually sense his sniping. I'm fine, let my brothers clean up the battle. The enemy is severely weakened and won't come looking for trouble again in a short time. Cough, cough, cough. I can't move anymore. If you're my brother, give me a quick end. Cough, cough. Let me quickly be reborn. 20% of the excruciating pain truly torments a person. It's not that the physical pain is unbearable, but the horror of having one's body dismembered by stray bullets brings a mental anguish that exceeds physical suffering. The players cleaning up the battlefield were not courteous, wielding their shovels and swiftly sending the enemy to be reborn. Everyone watch out, help any brothers you see who can't move. Some are already unable to speak, but are not dead yet. Understood. The players scavenged for supplies on the battlefield. Seeing their brothers' corpses, they would revive them first, regardless of whether they could survive or not. They rode on undamaged wasteland-style motorcycles, 5 people packed onto one hand, holding onto the seat, while the other brandished homemade firearms, returning triumphantly with the glory of victors. Damn, I blew it up, alright. Our Lord is simply too awesome. Ha ha ha. This feels incredible. You didn't see that Sandcoin NPC at that time. It was scared so much by my bomb that it shat itself. Do you know how many people I killed with my machine gun today? More than 100, I counted them. I just checked the official forum and found that most players were killed by the natives of the game world as soon as they arrived, and some were even worse off, directly captured for experiments, leaving them no choice but to delete their accounts and log back in. Gaga. Compared to us, they are simply pathetic. It's still better to follow the commander. I heard that those unfortunate players are still learning some kind of magic things that I can solve with one shot. Do they really need to mumble spells like that? Exactly. Offline. Look at how awesome I am. Started a group called Scorpion Commander, where all participating players joined to discuss today's battle. As the group owner, look at how awesome I am. Tagged everyone. Brothers, to strengthen our team, hurry up and contact the brothers around you. Just call over anyone near Darkler City. No problem. Awesome boss, did you even need to say that? We already called people. Those natives treated us like dogs they can command, but how do we refer to the commander? Brothers, don't you understand the value of this, right? Following the commander is way better than following those Lord NPCs in Darkler City. What era is it now? Why are we still doing that feudal crap? Just looking at it makes me sick. Clearly, upon hearing these complaints, the people in the group were immediately disgusted by those native NPCs in power. Players who originally thought of using Xiao Fan as a stepping stone now completely lost that intention. Look at how awesome I am. Watched his brothers chatting in the group, praising that following the commander was better than following those dog NPCs, so he opened another group, tagging the group owner. Get your basket. Say something if you're alive. Get your basket. I'm busy right now, no time to argue with you. Look at how awesome I am. Did the native NPCs trick you? Seeing that the other party was silent, look at how awesome I am. Chuckled and continued typing. Are you near Darkler City? The other party sent back a slightly shocked question mark. Are you here too? It's important to know that when entering the game, players can freely choose the city they arrive at, but where exactly within the city they'd appear depends entirely on luck. Those with bad luck, like, look at how awesome I am, directly bumped into the face of the biker gang. Those with slightly better luck could appear inside the city, but would soon be captured due to strange behavior and lack of identification tags. If they dared to run, they would be executed on the spot. The other party gloomily expressed that they had encountered a group of strong robbers, and the leader leaped and slashed down with a heavy sword, sending out sword energy that instantly killed him, a typical member of the kneeling upon logging in. Look at how awesome I am. Next time, run south of the city when you respawn. I encountered an exceptional lord here who has death resistance and can allow instant rebirth. Get your basket. Was shocked. Is that true? Why would I lie to you? And I found out that this NPC seems to only have an affinity for players from our heavenly dynasty, showing no regard for people from other countries. Alright, then once the resurrection cooldown ends, I'll head over to your side. Come to my group. Everyone in the group is a brother following the commander. Whether I'm lying to you or not, you can see for yourself when you join. Look at how awesome I am, said triumphantly. Let me tell you, you died without knowing why, but I and my brothers are having a blast. We were chased by a group of native NPCs in the morning, and in the afternoon the commander took us to dig trenches, distribute weapons, and we even fought a sniping battle. It was exhilarating. As he spoke more passionately, get your basket, was completely tempted and immediately joined the group created by the other. He was clearly not the first person to be pulled into the group, as system notifications of dozens of people joining the group popped up almost every second. Within half an hour, with the efforts of all players, look at how awesome I am. S group was instantly overwhelmed. He had no choice but to quickly purchase a 10-year super membership just to barely allow those who couldn't enter the group to continue joining. But this was only a temporary measure, as the number of people in the Penguin group was ultimately limited, and it was not ruled out that look at how awesome I am would have to create more groups in the future. The newcomers listened to the players who had participated in sniping battles boast, each one full of spirit, constantly asking about Xiao Fan. The old players patiently informed everyone that the core points were 3. First, he only had goodwill towards players from the Heavenly Dynasty. Second, he did not treat them as slaves, but rather as brothers. Third, this lord's talent is death resistance, allowing 0 resurrection cooldown. These 3 points hit the players' sweet spots, and everyone eagerly promised that as soon as the resurrection cooldown ended and they logged back, and they would immediately rush to Xiao Fan's base. Xiao Fan was unaware that his base was about to experience a massive population explosion. The sunlight of the following day pierced through the morning mist, casting its rays upon the earth once again as players who had been busy recruiting companions for Xiao Fan logged back into the game. Look at me being awesome. He arrived at the door of Xiao Fan's office and gently knocked on it. Come in. He pushed the door open at the response, his gaze first landing on Xiao Fan, but the next moment it was firmly captured by the power armor standing on the workbench in the corner, his eyes unable to move away even a fraction. The metallic shell gleamed with a cold luster, and the complex mechanical structure exuded a palpable sense of power, igniting a fervor in his heart. Is there something you need? Xiao Fan took a sip from his teacup, his cold voice pulling him back from his drifting thoughts. Look at me being awesome. Came back to his senses, he quickly stepped forward and said, Report, Commander. I received news that a large group of brothers wants to join us. What do you think about this? Sure. Xiao Fan's reply was straightforward and decisive without a hint of hesitation. Hearing this, look at me being awesome, let out a heavy sigh of relief. It was only when he logged online that he realized he had been so focused on crazily pulling people in that he hadn't even asked the commander in advance if he was willing to take them in. When he knocked on the door, just now he was still anxious inside, afraid of being rejected. Now his racing heart finally settled down. He stood there fidgeting, his expression somewhat awkward. Xiao Fan noticed and gestured for him to speak his mind. Look at me being awesome. Scratched his head, feeling a bit embarrassed, he said, Commander, can I borrow a batch of motorcycles? I plan to go pick them up. The wasteland is not safe. If we encounter the motorcycle gang on the way, my brothers might end up being slaughtered by them. 7410, that's the startup password for the heavy truck in the base garage. Xiao Fan looked at him and said, you take your men and bring them back safely. Smack. Look at me being awesome, snapped to attention and saluted, his voice booming enough to make the room tremble slightly. I promise to complete the mission. Watching him stride away, the studio door slowly closed by itself. Xiao Fan's gaze returned to This was a simple power armor he had assembled himself, but unfortunately it was stuck at the stage of the driving energy source and was still just an immobile hulk. He turned to look at the wasteland map on the computer screen beside him, lightly tapping on a marked point. He thought to himself it seemed it was time to visit that place. It hid something he must obtain, which was also key to establishing a foothold in this perilous wasteland. According to his memories from the previous life, that thing was supposed to appear 3 months later. Now that he was setting out early, he could take the lead and grasp this opportunity tightly. Boom! The 10-wheeled heavy truck roared like a waking beast, producing a deafening roar. In the driver's seat, look at me being awesome, pressed down hard on the throttle, nearly pushing it all the way into. This heavy truck had undergone Xiao Fan's modifications, and its power system was extraordinarily formidable. Coupled with durable solid tires, even if it were taken to Darklair City for sale, it would be valued at over 10,000 PZ gold coins. A heavy machine gun was mounted on the roof, and the player operating it glanced down at the motorcycle team closely following the heavy truck, raising his arm excitedly and shouting, "Yo, charge!" In the past, it was always the motorcycle gang rampaging through the wasteland. Today, they could finally experience this exhilarating rush of speed. Hearing his shout, players in the motorcycle team responded in unison. Those riders with 6 explosive lances sticking out of their back raised their arms high, their cheers echoing across the wasteland. Scavengers appearing sporadically along the way caught a glimpse of this intimidating convoy from afar. Terrified, they dove into nearby ditches or ruins without a backward glance, even forgetting to take their collected scraps. In the sky, an observer released by players as a kite was scanning the surroundings with binoculars. Suddenly, he spotted several dark shapes appearing on the horizon a kilometer away and immediately grabbed the walkie-talkie, exclaiming urgently, "Report, boss. There's a situation ahead." Received. Look at me being awesome, replied casually, hanging up the walkie-talkie on the car's roof hook. Then suddenly sounded the heavy truck's horn. Toot, 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 toot. The sharp, piercing horn sound broke through the sky, echoing across the vast wasteland. Players riding motorcycles immediately spread out in a tacit manner, surrounding the heavy truck on both sides. Some players quickly opened the gliding wings on their backs, soaring into the sky, with explosive lances circling above the convoy in a vigilant manner. On the other side, in several captured 3-wheeled vehicles, players were pulling the gun bolts, the sounds of catching ringing one after another. They tilted their heads to aim their gun muzzles steady and pointed at the dark shapes ahead, their gazes sharp as eagles. As long as the opponent made any movements, they would immediately open fire. Their equipment level now allowed them to almost walk sideways across this wasteland. While other players were still struggling to survive, they already had the confidence to initiate battle. Damn, is it the motorcycle gang? In the distant convoy, the leading bounty hunters' brows were tightly knitted. They had come from Darklair City, and the Alchemy Guild had recently placed high bounties on arrivals, making the reward for capturing an arrival higher than hunting a 2-headed Red Bull in the wasteland. For this money, they were willing to risk being attacked by the various forces in the wasteland venturing deep into this area to search for their target. Seeing the leather-clad outfit and arrogant demeanor of the player convoy, they instinctively regarded them as the motorcycle gang and immediately ordered their subordinates to prepare for battle. The kilometer distance vanished in an instant at high speed. The player's motorcycle team approached first, swiftly circling around the bounty hunter's convoy, waiting for "Look at me being awesome" to give the command. No, it's not the motorcycle gang. The leading bounty hunter's brows furrowed even tighter, his mechanical prosthetic hand gripping the pistol tightly, a sense of unease washing over him. Though these people's attire resembled that of the motorcycle gang, their faces were clean and fair, completely lacking the grotesque appearance of motorcycle gang members afflicted with tumors from prolonged radiation. Their arrivals. A thought flashed through, and a strong sense of unease surged within him. The gear on these arrivals looked somewhat familiar. Could it be that they took down the Fury? Otherwise, how could they have so many excellent pieces of equipment? This speculation made cold sweat break out on his back instantly. Just then there was a sudden violent shaking sound from the iron cage behind the bounty hunter's convoy. "I am Geyer Basket. Brothers, help us take down this bunch of scum." The player in the cage shouted excitedly at the sight of reinforcements. "Shut up." The indigenous guard next to him immediately raised an electric lance and stabbed it viciously. The electric current coursed through the iron bars enveloping Geyer Basket, causing him to convulse and fall in the cage, but the gaze he cast at the indigenous guard grew even more sinister, filled with murderous rage. "Kill them." Confirming that the people in the cage were their own, Look at Me Being Awesome, without a moment's hesitation, immediately issued the attack order. The players hovering in the air immediately seized the opportunity, throwing explosive lances at the cluster of bounty hunters on the ground. Go! Boom! The explosion sounded repeatedly, the lances filled with Xiao Fan's specially crafted hibernating adhesive. In an instant of explosion, the adhesive splattered, and those bounty hunters who were touched were instantly engulfed in raging flames. They let out heart-wrenching howls, rolling frantically on the ground, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. But it was all in vain. Rolling only spread the hibernating adhesive more evenly, intensifying the fire. Before long, these people became fire figures, struggling on the ground for a moment before going still. "Good, brothers, let's go. Take down this bunch of bastards." The players in the iron cage shook the railing hard, their faces filled with the ecstasy of revenge. Taking advantage of the chaos on the battlefield, several players on motorcycles rushed forward. They took out their large steel pincers and forcefully attacked the chains on the cage door, cutting them in just a few moves. "Get in the car." A player shouted into the cage while patting the back seat of the motorcycle. Geyer Basket and others immediately crawled out, jumping onto the motorcycles. The riders twisted the throttle hard, speeding towards the heavy truck. Seeing their soon-to-be captured cargo escape, the bounty hunters' eyes turned red with rage. Just as they raised their guns to shoot, they were suppressed by the heavy firepower from the heavy truck and the three-wheeled vehicles, and could only awkwardly hide behind the front of their vehicles, watching helplessly as the players rescued their people. As Geyer Basket jumped into the driver's seat of the heavy truck, he heard the ding-ding sound of bullets hitting the bullet. Tisk, it's rare to see you so flustered. Look at me being awesome. Couldn't help but tease. Geyer Basket shot him a glance, too preoccupied to argue, simply murmuring a thank you. No need to be polite. Look at me being awesome. Waved his hand. Let's hurry up and leave. There are still many brothers waiting for rescue. Wait a moment. Geyer Basket suddenly spoke, his eyes fiercely locked on the bounty hunter convoy ahead. Is this vehicle sturdy? Nonsense. This is the commander's vehicle. It's as sturdy as they come. Look at me being awesome. Patted the steering wheel, his tone filled with pride. Then he'll drive. Geyer Basket's voice was cold. I'm going to crush these bastards. Look at me being awesome. Glanced at the fury boiling in his eyes, and then at the bounty hunters still stubbornly resisting ahead, silently vacated the driver's seat. As Geyer Basket took the seat, his movements were swift and decisive. He pressed the clutch, shifted gears, released the clutch, and then stomped down the throttle. The heavy truck roared like an angry rhinoceros, producing a deafening roar as it charged straight towards the bounty hunter convoy. Seeing this, Look at Me being awesome quickly pressed the button on the control panel. The obstacles in front of the heavy truck fell heavily, kicking up clouds of dust, creating an intimidating momentum. Get out of the way. Seeing the heavy truck charging in like a mad bull, the bounty hunters were terrified, scrambling out from behind their vehicles. But just as they left their cover, they were locked on by the heavy machine gun on the roof, and a few who ran slower collapsed on the spot. If they didn't run, they would face the full force of the heavy truck's charge. Just as they were caught in a dilemma, Look at Me being awesome activated the nitrous oxide acceleration device. Instantly, the exhaust vents on both sides of the heavy truck's front spewed out scorching flames, and the entire vehicle shot forward like an arrow, rapidly increasing its speed and unleashing all its momentum. No. The bounty hunters' pupils constricted, desperately raising their arms to shield themselves. Boom. The violent impact sounded deafening. The truck that was hit soared into the air like a toy, flipping several times before crashing heavily to the ground, instantly shattering into pieces. The bounty hunters behind the truck were directly sent flying by the tremendous impact, drawing an arc in the air before crashing heavily onto the sandy ground, never to move again. Geyer Basket looked at the horrific scene before him, spat heavily, the pent-up anger in his chest finally dissipating completely. Pa, your cover is as ridiculous as you are. The rescue operation continued until dusk. Look how impressive I am, bringing back more than 1,000 people. Originally, I could have brought back more people, but I was informed offline that most of my brothers encountered various situations during their rush and perished. Although it was frustrating, it did not make the players think of abandoning the game. Instead, it fueled their determination. Once they stabilized their footing, they would certainly show these natives a thing or two. Reporting to Commander today, I brought back 1052 people. I guarantee I can bring back more tomorrow. Xiao Fan glanced at the other person and shook his head. Tomorrow there are other tasks. You all come with me for a trip. More than 1,000 people were somewhat crowded for the base, but it was still manageable. Offline players once again flooded the official website to gather intelligence from various parts of the game world. One piece of news caught the attention of players from the Celestial Empire. Xiaojuzi Wolf. Damn Chinese people, it's one thing not to help us, but to openly attack and kill us. Henruin. Watch your mouth, or one day the east wind will blow right to your doorstep. Li Zion. Damn Celestial Empire people, they dare to do, without facing the consequences, it's disgusting. Zizalong. Yeah, I killed you, so what? Come at me. Guzi felt a bit itchy. Who do you think you are to qualify for our rescue? It's already a mercy that I revived you and spared you from suffering. Watching the players from Japan and Korea argue with the players from the Celestial Empire, players from various countries, including some confused players from the Celestial Empire, were all spectating. After a while, everyone finally understood the reason. It turned out that near Darkleer City, there was an NPC who only had a good impression of players from the Celestial Empire. Not only did he actively rescue players from the Celestial Empire, but he also fought alongside them against local forces, gaining the goodwill of those Celestial Empire players who followed him. During the day-to-day, players from the Celestial Empire who followed this NPC drove heavy trucks and rode motorcycles equipped with various heavy weapons to rescue others who wanted to join him. However, in the process, they inevitably encountered some Korean and Japanese players. With old grudges combined with new ones, the players from the Celestial Empire showed no hesitation and directly put them into resurrection cooldown. This immediately drew criticism from players of the two countries. Players from other nations merely watched while players from the Celestial Empire displayed thoughtful expressions. This NPC, who only accepted players from the Celestial Empire, not only treated them like brothers, but also fought against the local forces that bullied the players, appearing to be quite a good lord. This made many players from the Celestial Empire ponder whether to delete their accounts and choose to descend in another city to ally with him. But after careful consideration, they ultimately decided against it. After all, not all cities could provide a suitable living environment for players like Darkleer City. 2 days had passed in the game world, and as the major factions figured out the existence and characteristics of players, they all began to extend olive branches to recruit. The powerful talents held by those lords were very attractive to players, such as gaining strong elemental affinity, the bloodline of holy light angels, and the immortal talents of vampires. These powerful talents excited many players. The next day, hearing that Xiao Fan would take them out on a mission today, players logged into the game immediately after dinner. As soon as they logged in, the new players asked the veterans where to collect weapons. Meanwhile, those veterans who had long seen the weaponry in the storeroom logged in early, quickly gathering decent weapons with a mindset of first come, first served. Players who logged in later could only choose from the leftovers. While this weapon is way too rudimentary. One player held a rusty iron pipe shotgun, which was so corroded that he had to hammer it open with his fist to insert a shell, and after firing once, he had to violently hammer it open again to reload. Other iron pipe weapons were in similar conditions, with one player complaining, "Damn it, this rifle's bolt won't even pull back. It's rougher than the weapons my grandpa used during the anti-Japanese war. Be grateful you have something to use it, don't you see there's a group of people without any weapons." The player holding the iron pipe weapon noticed others staring at his weapon intently. He quickly hugged the iron pipe weapon. He was still dissatisfied with protecting it like a treasure, afraid it would be snatched away. A group of players who didn't receive weapons ran straight to the corner. Xiao Fan was there cleaning his anti-materiel sniper rifle. "Commander, are there any more firearms?" "None." Xiao Fan did not look back, answering while holding a cigarette in his mouth. The players who didn't receive weapons immediately felt a wave of disappointment. "Don't worry, if we don't have guns or cannons, the enemies will help us build them when the time comes." Before he could finish, the entire base suddenly fell into an eerie silence. All players' gazes simultaneously turned toward Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan's hand, which was cleaning the gun, suddenly paused as he realized he had misspoken. He quickly changed the subject, telling the players who hadn't gotten guns to go to the warehouse and bring some tools, saying they would be needed for the upcoming operation. After saying that, he stopped speaking and continued focusing on cleaning the gun. "What's going on? How does the commander know our Celestial Empire's catchphrases?" "I have no idea. Maybe there are people from the Celestial Empire in that mysterious game company who added these details when designing the commander character." "That's right. Since this game world has elements from those Western countries, there's no reason it wouldn't include our Celestial Empires." "You scared me. Ooh, I almost thought the commander was one of us." "You're talking nonsense. The commander is one of us." Fortunately, the players had excellent imaginations and automatically found a reasonable explanation for Xiao Fan's recent unintentional slip, not pursuing the matter further. A troop of over 1,000 people set out in a grand manner. Xiao Fan sat in the heavy truck's driver's seat, with look how impressive driving. Veteran players armed with elite weapons stood in the truck bed. Players who couldn't find a seat opted for hanging tickets, holding a gun in one hand and gripping the truck bed or door handle with the other. Other players squeezed 3 or 4 onto a motorcycle. Even so, over 700 players didn't even manage to get a hanging ticket, and could only run behind the convoy, treating it as a training drill. In Xiao Fan's words, "In the wasteland, any machinery might break down, but your legs would never fail. To survive in this perilous wasteland, the first thing you must learn is to run." Everyone's initial physical condition was the same. No one was stronger than the other. Moreover, since the team consisted entirely of boys, if they were ridiculed for falling behind as weaklings, how could they mix in the player community in the future? So even though they were exhausted from running, the players gritted their teeth and kept pace with the convoy for off-road travel. The veteran players did not just sit in the vehicle watching, they often got down to give their seats to those who were struggling but still trying to hold on. To give the others a way out, they would say, "My feet are numb, I'll get down and run for a bit." Each person basically could rest for 20 minutes after running for 40 minutes, so no one was completely drained. Under such high intensity training, many players' character statuses changed from exhausted at the beginning to weary. As they continued running, their breathing became steadier. Even if their characters' legs felt like they were filled with lead, it did not stop them from continuing to run. They ran for an entire day, and 1,000 people managed to cover an astonishing distance of over 200 miles. In modern society, this is simply unimaginable. "Commander, where are we going?" Along the way, the atmosphere in the heavy truck's driver's seat was somewhat dull. Seeing the sun about to set look how impressive, finally couldn't help but ask. Xiao Fan opened his eyes from a feigned slumber, gazing through the bulletproof glass at the ruins in the distance, and calmly stated, "The ruins of an ancient civilization city, we have arrived." The cold wind howled. Xiao Fan ordered the team to stop and set up a bonfire for warmth. He instructed the players to rest well tonight, but to remain vigilant, ready to awaken at a moment's notice. He then called upon Lao Ten Sauerkraut, the little player who had enough materials to handcraft a tank, as mentioned last time. Xiao Fan instructed him to bring some companions and ride a motorcycle to set up movement sensors 1 kilometer away. The other party agreed without hesitation and immediately took off on their motorcycle for companions. Camping alone in the wilderness at night was extremely dangerous. One could be snatched away in their sleep by some lurking creature. However, with over 1,000 people camping in the wild, they became the most dangerous presence in the night. Even the most vicious mutated creatures in the wilderness would not dare to attack them openly. Xiao Fan deployed the motion sensors to prevent any unforeseen events and avoid encounters with bounty hunters. If the other party were to quietly attack the players in the camp, it wouldn't matter how many would die, but non-combat casualties would hinder the tasks for the following morning. "Report, Commander, I've arranged for the less sleepy brothers to stand guard." "Look at me being awesome," jogged over to report. Xiao Fan nodded. He opened the tactical backpack from the resting area behind the driver's seat, glanced inside, and then tossed it to the other party. "Distribute this to the brothers. The smoke will help keep them awake during the night." "Look at me being awesome," opened the backpack and found 2 homemade cigarettes from the commander along with several unknown canned goods which invigorated him. Indeed, the commander would not treat them poorly. He saluted again and then called over the brothers on night duty. Amidst the envious gazes of everyone, he opened the cigarettes and distributed 2 packs to each. In the chilly wind, other players wrapped in the warmth of the bonfire donned leather jackets stripped from enemies and provided by Xiao Fan nestled together to log off. The on-duty players stood 100 meters away from the camp, smoking and lying back on the sand, counting the stars in the sky. Xiao Fan hid in the warm sleeping area behind the driver's seat, pulling down the screens hanging from the roof. He glanced at the footage transmitted by the motion sensor cameras, confirming that there were no unexpected occurrences, and began to rest, clutching his long rifle. Time passed quietly. The next day, the players logged on punctually. They retrieved the motion sensors and set off. This time, however, it was Xiao Fan driving, while "Look at me being awesome" and "Kick your basket" squeezed into the passenger seat and the small bed in the back to rest. They seemed spirited, but their bodies were clearly not as energetic. They needed to force themselves to rest to recover. After logging off, the bodies without mental control would fall into a deep sleep, recovering their energy completely in just 2 hours. In such a state where one could not be awakened even if the sky fell, the quality of sleep was exceptionally good. Xiao Fan held a cigarette in his left hand, his arm leisurely resting on the window of the car as he drove at a snail's pace of 25 kilometers per hour with his right hand on the steering wheel. In the swaying driver's cabin, Xiao Fan silently gazed at the increasingly clear ruins of the city. This city was not a true ultra-ancient civilization ruin. Rather, it was a capital city that had been destroyed by nuclear weapons used by the Bees Federation decades ago, one that was ready to split the land and crown a king. This devastation led the already crumbling ecology of the Lida Prairie to a complete collapse. The entire plain was filled with radiation dust capable of causing illness. The reason for this was simply that the Alchemy Guild had learned of an ultra-ancient civilization relic existing beneath this city. This relic contained technological black boxes left by the ultra-ancient civilization. A technological black box is a product of ultra-ancient civilization technology that modern humans cannot comprehend, with capabilities that are extraordinarily beyond normal. By simply inputting materials and energy, it can help construct anything one desires. This device is akin to a wishing well. Of course, what it can specifically construct also depends on its functional limitations. What Xiao Fan is searching for is precisely the technological black box of the ultra-ancient civilization. Although the Alchemy Guild had already taken away the most significant items from the relic, the leftover scraps of the ultra-ancient civilization had been scavenged by bounty hunters for decades. However, in some corner there still remained a black box that Xiao Fan needed most right now. With that object, he could thoroughly establish the framework for the development of his forces. As they approached the ruined city, the Geiger counter used to detect radiation in the vehicle began to emit clicking alarm sounds. Xiao Fan urged everyone to stay alert while he took out a syringe and injected himself in the wrist. He was not worried about ordinary radiation, but as soon as the Geiger counter he had made began to alarm, he knew he had to be prepared. Otherwise, if the radiation dose in the ruined city exceeded his metabolic capacity, it could cost him his life. It might not show immediately, but within a week he would turn into a puddle of blood. Only the fighters or mages from Doclair City could traverse the ruined city freely due to their exceptionally strong physiques. Look at me being awesome, and others were awakened by players who had logged off quietly. Upon hearing they were about to enter the city, they all quickly perked up. What's that noise? Listening to the urgent clicking sound in his ear, Look at me being awesome asked in confusion. Laughton Sauerkraut recognized the familiar sound and looked at the gray ruined city. He uncertainly said, could it be the radiation dose is too high? Indeed, this city was destroyed by an intercontinental nuclear bomb from the Bees Federation decades ago, and the high radiation has yet to dissipate, turning the entire Lida Prairie into a wasteland, Xiao Fan explained calmly. What? Radiation? Look at me being awesome exclaimed in surprise. He glanced at him, and Laughton Sauerkraut scoffed, what's the big deal? It's just a bit of radiation. As long as it's not a dose that can kill you instantly, just dying once can eliminate radiation exposure. What are you afraid of? Kick your basket teased, you should read more books. Your brain isn't functioning properly now, is it? Right. You're awesome. Look at me being awesome knew his character well and didn't bother to argue. The truck's wheels rolled over the road covered in radiation dust, while behind them the players in the convoy looked around, gazing at the black bones turned to powder in the tire tracks. Everyone exchanged glances. As far as the eye could see, there were shattered buildings, cracked roads, various vehicle wrecks, and countless bones. These bones lay in grotesque postures, either standing or lying, giving off an inexplicable sense of horror in the wasteland. My God, how many people must have died here? Look at me being awesome couldn't help but click his tongue. Xiao Fan replied expressionlessly, according to incomplete statistics, about 15 million people died here. Of those, 5 million died directly from the thermal radiation of the nuclear bomb, while the remaining 10 million all succumbed within a week under the intense lethal radiation. The players fell silent. Was this the power of a nuclear bomb? It truly was terrifying. Laughton Sauerkraut rubbed his chin, beginning to calculate in his mind. Given the radiation intensity and lethality, even if the population density of the entire city back then was roughly similar to the impoverished districts in India, it would at least require the equivalent of half a Tsar Bomba to cause such damage. Moreover, it had to be a proper fission bomb, not a hydrogen bomb, to inflict such harm. Clang! Xiao Fan leaped off the vehicle and slammed the door shut. He surveyed the devastated surroundings and turned to his companion. Look at me, how impressive, instructing, get our elite to follow me. The rest should gather usable supplies and load them onto the vehicle. Look at me, how impressive, immediately grinned, casting a smug glance at Gani Lanzi. Gani Lanzi scoffed dismissively. What's there to be proud of? It's just following the commander into battle, right? Next time an opportunity arises, he'll definitely bring his crew to show off, and he won't believe he can't catch the commander's eye. Xiao Fan led over 200 elites, slowly heading towards an underground passage. This was the entrance to the ruins of an ancient civilization established by the Alchemy Guild. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The eerie quiet of the passage was terrifying, with droplets of water from the ceiling continuously falling into puddles on the ground, producing a crisp yet unsettling sound. Everyone held their breath and turned on the spotlights on their chests and weapons, scanning the surroundings vigilantly. Xiao Fan held a knife in his left hand and tightly gripped a .50 caliber handgun in his right, standing in the center of the group as they advanced steadily. Squeak! A sharp, eerie cry suddenly pierced the silence. Look at me, how impressive, felt a shadow flash by on his left, something lunging towards him. Bang! In a critical moment, the muzzle of Xiao Fan's gun suddenly flared with fire. Even in death, its eyes still glowed a sinister red, sending chills down people's spines. Gulch! Many players quietly swallowed their saliva, and cold sweat trickled down their back. Even in death, its eyes still glowed a sinister red, sending chills down people's spines. Gulch! Many players quietly swallowed their saliva, and cold sweat trickled down their backs. Stay alert, Xiao Fan commanded in a deep voice. He had entered and exited this underground ruin countless times in his past life. Since the Alchemy Guild had withdrawn and all valuable items had been looted, no one had set foot here for until players arrived. Those awakened with magical talents sought out this place to rapidly enhance their abilities. The mutated creatures in the ruins, long subjected to nuclear radiation and catalyzed by the elemental energy of this world, would condense a substance known as elemental core in their brains. The elemental core contains pure elemental energy, serving as the core material for mages' cultivation, and after special technological conversion, it can also function as a high-energy battery. An ordinary elemental core can support the electricity consumption of an average family for an entire year, making it an extremely precious resource for the entire Maloka star. Because of this, the ruins of the ancient civilization have long become the nest of mutated creatures. They must remain on high alert at all times, or moment's carelessness could lead to their demise. Chirp, chirp, chirp. But the gunfire from earlier had thoroughly startled the horde of rats lurking deep in the passage. In an instant, countless pairs of crimson eyes lit up under the spotlight, a mass of glowing points that made one's scalp tingle. The next second, hundreds if not thousands of mutated rats surged forward, rushing towards the group. Xiao Fan quickly stepped back to hide behind the players, loudly ordering those carrying flame throwers like old tan sauerkraut to move forward. Hiss! Watch me unleash the ultimate fiery barbecue. Old tan sauerkraut and his companions excitedly yelled as they pulled the triggers. Two streams of scorching flames erupted instantly, filling the entire passage, sweeping towards the tide of rats. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The air was filled with their shrill cries. Under the high-temperature flames exceeding 1,000 degrees, those hairless rats, drenched in blood, had no chance to struggle and were instantly reduced to ashes. Stop! Upon hearing Xiao Fan's command, the two players operating the flame throwers immediately ceased their actions. Everyone looked down, finding the ground of the passage covered with a thick layer of rat corpses, the burnt smell mingling with a fishy odor spreading out. Everyone gasped in shock. Had they not prepared the flame throwers in advance, with just over 200 of them, they would have been devoured by the mutated rats, leaving not even bones behind. But Xiao Fan knew well that these were merely appetizers. In the depths of the ruins, the truly terrifying entities had yet to reveal themselves, and he had no intention of provoking those monsters just yet. He skillfully led the team through the intricate ruins, turning left and right. Along the way, they encountered several waves of wolf-like mutated creatures, but thankfully, the players' firepower was fierce, and those monsters were turned into sieves as soon as they showed their heads, raising not a hint of disturbance. This underground ruin was unimaginably vast, already forming a complete food chain within. Various mutated creatures occupied their respective territories, and instances of boundary crossing were rare. Thus, Xiao Fan was not worried that the commotion here would attract mutated creatures from other areas. After more than an hour, the team estimated they had traveled over 10 kilometers. The players could not help but complain about just how vast this underground ruin was. Suddenly, Xiao Fan spotted a familiar signboard, and his body jolted. He quickly stepped forward and vigorously wiped off the dust on the sign, revealing a line of text that the players could not comprehend. Warehouse 5. That's right, it's here. In his previous life, the Japanese officials had found that ancient civilization's technological black box right here. Everyone stay alert. The players immediately turned, training their gun muzzles towards the dark passages on either side, and the atmosphere grew tense. Xiao Fan sheathed his tactical dagger and slowly raised his right hand to press against the warehouse door. In the dim light, "Look at me, how impressive," vaguely saw a strange light flickering in Xiao Fan's eyes. The next second, accompanied by a violent vibration, the warehouse door slowly creaked open inward with a piercing sound. In an instant, the vacuum negative pressure inside the warehouse frantically sucked air through the door gap, stirring the air currents in the passage to create a gust of wind that slammed against the players' faces. As the door fully opened, Xiao Fan was the first to charge inside. Ignoring the various supplies piled up in the warehouse, his gaze was fixated on the black cube floating on the central platform. Tactical level nano 3D printer. According to his memories from the previous life, this technological black box was individual equipment from an ancient civilization. It was specifically designed to help soldiers quickly construct basic weapons and survival supplies in harsh environments with scarce resources, only to be equipped by soldiers on special missions. And now it was about to become his possession. This black cube was not large, just the size of a cubic decimeter. The moment Xiao Fan's fingers touched it, the cube suddenly disintegrated into countless tiny cubes the size of pinheads, swiftly attaching to his right wrist, ultimately transforming into a black wrist guard with a matte finish. Take the supplies from the warehouse, we retreat. This warehouse still housed numerous standardized equipment from the ancient civilization, each with formidable power. If he could equip a special forces team with this gear, Xiao Fan could swagger across the Dali wasteland. In his previous life, Little Notebook relied on this batch of equipment to brazenly suppress the players from the Celestial Empire in the Dali wasteland, infuriating them to the point of nearly grinding their teeth to dust. Only later did the officials dispatch a large force, also bringing a significant amount of technological weapons from the ancient civilization, finally managing to subdue those guys. Xiao Fan tossed his longest old weapon to a nearby player and walked straight to a weapon rack, picking up a completely black large gun. The heavy gun felt solid in his hands, and the two elongated magnetic rails were particularly striking under the light. This was the magnetic rail heavy sniper that had gained a notorious reputation in the Dali wasteland, said to be able to kill any heavy armor from 1,000 meters away with a single bullet. Now this formidable weapon had also become his trophy. Wow, I'm going to strike it rich. With these things I dare to attack Darklair City. Players were so excited they could hardly speak, hastily tossing their crude iron pipe weapons behind them, cradling the ancient equipment from the warehouse with more tenderness than they would a lover. Rifles, machine guns, handguns, bombs. All kinds of weapons were available, leaving the veteran players present wide-eyed. When they heard Xiao Fan say each person could choose one item to take, everyone trembled with excitement. Less than a week after the launch, being able to obtain equipment of this caliber put them far ahead of other players. In truth, Xiao Fan wasn't intentionally generous. He knew well that these seemingly powerful ancient equipment were in fact not even at the civilian level. According to the data in his memory, a rebellion had erupted within the ancient civilization, and this underground ruin was merely a planetary outpost built by the rebels. These weapons were merely backward, self-defense weapons produced using their limited resources. Later, when the regular army of the ancient civilization arrived and suppressed the rebels, they dismissed these items completely. If they were truly useful, they would have been taken away long ago, never to remain for millions of years, ending up in his hands. These weapons would only serve to intimidate others in the early game. Look at me being awesome. He arrived at the door of Xiao Fan's office and gently bossed. They're heading straight for Ruined City. In a relatively intact courtyard within Ruined City, hundreds of people crowded together densely. A subordinate hurried to the burly leader and whispered his report. Upon hearing the news, the leader violently hurled his roughly rolled self-made cigarette onto the ground. A grotesque centipede-like scar across his face twitched violently with rising fury, as if stirring. Damn it! Which blind-eyed bounty hunter gang dares trespass here? He snarled through clenched teeth. Sneaking in to scavenge scraps that I might tolerate, but storming my territory with this many men without so much as a courtesy call. Have they grown tired of living? Boss, judging by their speech and those strange garments, they don't seem like bounty hunters. The subordinate hesitated before adding. They're more likely the newly emerged descendants. Players could effortlessly understand the native language of this world, but without the game system's translation layer, most natives could not comprehend players' speech. Moreover, players hailed from every corner of the globe, speaking a dizzying array of tongues, making communication with natives little better than gibberish between roosters and ducks. Upon hearing the word descendants, the burly leader Lychee froze momentarily, then curled his lips into a cruel predatory smile, his eyes blazing with savage light. He knew well what descendants were, a group of strangers who had appeared abruptly on the wastelands just days ago. Weaklings so frail, they couldn't even best the red-eared hares haunting the plains. Just 2 days prior, he'd captured a batch of descendants and sold them to Darklair City, earning himself a tidy fortune. Now, with so many appearing at once, it felt as though the god of light himself had delivered wealth straight to his doorstep. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Lychee slapped his thigh 3 times. I've been scouring the waste for these fat sheep, and now they've walked right into my den. I shan't hold back. Elsewhere, several young players slipped into the ruins of what once resembled a shop. Thick dust blanketed the shelves, and the dented cans upon them bore labels long since faded beyond recognition. One player casually grabbed a can, shook it, then wrenched open the pull tab. Instantly, a stench erupted, so vile it rivaled a biological weapon. Cough, cough, cough. Who the hell defecated inside this thing? Jesus, this reek. Can you please get that thing far away? Ugh. The player who opened it doubled over, instantly dry heaving against the crumbling wall, unable to straighten up. His sole thought echoed bitterly, sometimes hyperrealism in gaming isn't a blessing, it's a curse. The group bolted from the ruined shop like refugees fleeing disaster, casting one last wary glance at the broken doorway, each face etched with lingering dread. Let's go, said an older player. Most items here are useless, and radiation levels are almost certainly off the charts. If anything were still functional, it would have vanished long ago. The others nodded in agreement and followed him decisively toward other ruined rooms in search of salvageable supplies. The streets teemed with industrious players. Some fired volleys at mutated beasts, others heaved heavy wrenches, dismantling abandoned vehicles in coordinated teams along the roadside. Hey, check this out. Brand new motorcycle engine. Back home, I'll build my own bike from scratch. Anyone snagged a working battery? I'll pay top coin. These car batteries are long dead, but I can repair them. Interested? Absolutely. What are you waiting for? TCH. This 4-cylinder engine looks nearly pristine. Whether it runs or not is irrelevant. I'm hauling it back now. This brass radiator. Pure gold. Melted down craft bullets sell them to the brothers. Guaranteed profit. Thanks to heavy-duty transport trucks, players swarmed the ruins like locusts descending upon a field. Every object with even marginal utility was stripped bare, down to the metal lampposts lining the streets, bulbs removed, wiring extracted, poles themselves hoisted onto trucks. Automobile carcasses stood no chance. Chief, someone's gone missing. Gaia Lanzi, who had been tinkering with an old radio, immediately set it aside and turned. Did he wander off alone to scavenge? The messenger shook his head. I searched the entire building. No trace of him. Gaia Lanzi frowned, paused in thought, then commanded firmly, log out now. Try contacting him directly. Minutes later, the subordinate snapped his eyes open and blurted urgently, Chief, he's been captured by unknown. He logged out immediately, fearing danger, and has been waiting for us to reach him. The group's expressions hardened instantly. Where is he? Gaia Lanzi demanded. Inside Unit 3, the building next door. Gaia Lanzi swept his gaze across his companions. Before he could speak, they'd already exchanged silent nods, swiftly forming a combat formation and sprinting toward the neighboring unit. By now, virtual reality technology had become ubiquitous, and many players had spent over a decade immersed in military simulation games, honing battlefield discipline and tactical acumen to elite levels. Gaia Lanzi himself ranked among the absolute top-tier veterans of such titles. At the base of the unit, he crouched low, fingertips brushing over drag marks on the ground, then measured the scattered footprints. With a subtle hand signal, he conveyed 4 hostiles, approximately 1.9 meters tall, weapons unknown. Understanding instantly, the team raised their weapons and split into 2 squads, advancing silently along the drag trail. Soon they arrived at a residential door. The drag marks ended abruptly here. The enemy was almost certain. Gaia Lanzi signaled again. No words spoken, yet perfect synchrony among all 9 players. Squad A pressed flat against either side of the door. Squad B readied for immediate breach. As Gaia Lanzi's countdown gesture concluded, he clenched his fist and kicked the door inward with devastating force, instantly pivoting sideways to take cover. A player already having armed a crude flashbang grenade lobbed it through the opening. Boom, wire. Blinding light flared, followed instantly by an enraged curse, damn it. Seizing the moment, Squad B stormed in, firing controlled bursts into every potential ambush point, suppressing the room with precise, alternating fire. Once their magazines emptied, Squad A surged forward seamlessly to maintain suppressive fire, while Squad B withdrew behind cover to reload, then fanned out to clear each corner methodically. Living room, kitchen, secondary bedroom. All cleared. Only the master bedroom remained unsearched. There was no doubt the remaining hostiles waited within. Just as the team prepared for another breach, the master bedroom door, frame and all, exploded outward. A Squad A member mid-kick was struck full force by the flying door and frame, hurled backward and slammed hard onto the floor. Gaia Lanzi recoiled in shock and instantly raised his rifle, firing blind into the doorway. Chief, watch out. The dazed player scrambled upright, just in time to see a towering figure in full medieval plate armor burst from the bedroom, hefting a massive greatsword aimed straight at Gaia Lanzi's arm. He shouted the warning just in time. Gaia Lanzi reacted with lightning speed, yanking his arm back mere instants before the blade descended, then bellowed for everyone to seek cover and return fire. He rolled behind the sofa, peering out cautiously, and saw them clearly, warriors wielding cold steel and mages gripping ornate staves. His heart lurched. These were undoubtedly the warriors and mages mentioned in forum posts, the world's native combatants. How had they gotten here? Die, you bastards. One player, who'd finally wrestled control of a heavy machine gun, opened fire wildly at the bedroom doorway. Small arms rounds might barely scratch them, but the heavy machine gun's high-caliber fury was another matter entirely. The armored leader instantly raised his shield, a solid iron wall sealing the threshold. Small arms rounds might barely scratch them, but the heavy machine gun's high-caliber fury was another matter entirely. The armored leader instantly raised his The youth nodded, drew a curved blade fragmentation mine from his pack, jammed it into the floor, then tumbled swiftly behind the sofa for cover. Moments later, the heavy machine gun's magazine ran dry. Seeing the lull, the enemy warriors sneered, and the armored leader lowered his shield, leading his comrades charging forth from the bedroom. Kaboom! The fragmentation mine detonated, thousands of steel pellets erupting in a lethal fan-shaped blast, slamming into the onrushing figures. Yet even this devastation failed to deliver fatal wounds, only staggering them momentarily. The armored warrior recovered instantly, lunged toward the nearest player, and swung his greatsword. The player didn't even have time to scream before falling, vanishing in a flash of white light, teleported back to base. The others recoiled in horror, raising weapons to retaliate, just as the mages inside the bedroom raised their staves. Fiery orbs screamed through the air, forcing the players to scatter desperately. Boom! One fireball slammed into a nearby cabinet, erupting in a conflagration equal in fury to a high-explosive grenade. Scorching heat washed over them, singeing the tips of their hair. What's all that commotion? Hearing the sharp, overlapping gunshots erupting from the neighboring residential complex, several players hauling supplies paused and glanced upward. Don't worry, probably just our comrades running into a tough, mutated creature. Everyone's armed, they'll handle it. Nodding in agreement, the group dismissed the noise and resumed their work without further hesitation. Only when urgent distress calls and warnings crackled repeatedly over the public comms channel did the squad leader, gripping his radio, realize something was gravely amiss. Without unified command, the players instantly descended into chaos. Some charged forward eager for street-level combat, others huddled in place, firing wildly in blind defense. The scene devolved into utter pandemonium. I've engaged the enemy. They're a band of mages, exceptionally powerful. Gaia Lanzi scrambled onto the cab of a heavy truck flanked by two bloodied underlings shouting hoarsely, "If you trust me, follow my orders, now." Every gaze snapped toward him. Though no one spoke, frantic movements froze midair. All stood rigid, eyes locked on him, awaiting his command. Seeing no resistance, Gaia Lanzi issued crisp orders. All squad leaders, mobilize your men. Push every abandoned vehicle nearby against the heavy truck to build defensive cover, immediately. Heavy weapons specialists, deploy your gear and prepare suppressive fire. Everyone else, seize adjacent buildings and rooftops to establish interlocking fields of fire. Each soldier takes one detonator. Should you be ambushed, trigger it without hesitation. Take the enemy with you to the grave. With a decisive leader at the helm, the players transformed instantly from chaos into disciplined cohesion. Working in unison, they dragged derelict cars into the street, encircling the heavy truck to form a makeshift defensive perimeter. Swarms of players flooded roadside shops, toppling shelves to barricade windows, while black muzzles peered through narrow gaps, trained steadily on the avenue. No sooner had the defenses been reinforced than Lychee arrived with a large contingent. His face darkened. Clearly the subordinate head sent to deliver word had failed abysmally and paid for it with a stinging slap. Humph. Do you truly believe these crude thermal weapons can halt me? Lychee sneered, then swept his arm forward. Advance. Capture them alive. Do not kill them. The moment his command echoed, a dozen mages raised their staves in unison, chanting incantations under their breath. In the next heartbeat, a dozen blazing fireballs materialized midair, trailing searing trails as they hurtled toward the player's position. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions thundered in rapid succession. Many players, having never faced mages of this world before, were caught utterly unprepared, blasted into white light, their avatars instantly resurrected back at base. Hold your ground. Heavy weapons, suppress immediately. Urban assault teams, neutralize the mages first. Gaia Lanzi roared into his radio, then added coldly, detonate the charges. Blow those armored shells to oblivion. TNT pre-plant beneath sewer grates detonated simultaneously, unleashing cataclysmic force that ripped up the entire asphalt road. The massive shockwave hurled heavily armored warriors off their feet. Those nearest the blast radius had their internal organs pulverized, instantly dying outright. Others farther out were flung violently, limbs snapping, writhing in agony. Lychee's pupils contracted sharp. Across the wasteland, hunters relentlessly pursued these descendants. They'd never even reached Darkler City. Where then had they acquired such devastating explosives? Before he could react, gunfire erupted from surrounding derelict shops. Behind him, mages screamed in piercing agony, one after another collapsing. Urban assault teams had pinpointed their positions with lethal precision. Damn it. Only now did Lychee grasp how grievously he'd underestimated these descendants. The cost of his arrogance burned deep. Fueled by fury, he hefted his greatsword. Faint auroras of battle aura shimmered around his body as he lunged toward the player's machine gun emplacement. Leaping high, he brought the blade down in a devastating arc. The heavy machine gun and its operator were cleaved cleanly in two. Such terrifying might left surviving players stunned silent. Yet it also ignited their raw, feral. Several players hurled themselves forward, clutching grenades and screaming. But a single slash of sword energy intercepted them midair, slicing them cleanly at the waist, spilling crimson across the pavement. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. All squad leaders, push vehicles to build cover. Heavy weapons, establish suppressive fire. Deep within an underground ruin, Xiao Fan, returning with his team laden with spoils, suddenly stiffened as frantic cries burst from his radio, his expression hardening instantly. In an instant, everyone dropped their haul and sprinted upward, weapons clutched tight. Within 5 minutes, the battlefield above had become a slaughterhouse. The stark disparity in equipment and the overwhelming individual prowess of the enemy had decimated the players. Ammunition ran dry swiftly. Survivors surged from every crevice, clutching bombs and hurling themselves at the foe in desperate suicide charges to buy time. Lychee's forces, clad in reinforced armor and empowered by battle aura, dispatched charging players effortlessly, barely breaking a sweat. As enemies closed in on the heavy truck, Gaia Lanzi silently withdrew his last glory grenade, preparing to detonate it alongside them, to delay the advance second by precious second. ZZZT boomed. A shrill tearing shriek split the air. Xiao Fan crouched low and firing was hurled backward several meters by the weapon's monstrous recoil. Simultaneously a bullet, thick as a thumb, lanced toward Li Qi, who was slaughtering players with ruthless efficiency. The instant Xiao Fan acquired his aim, Li Qi sensed mortal peril. At the bullet's impact, he raised his greatsword to block. Clang, crack. The thick projectile struck the blade dead center, shattering the reneged steel outright. Unspent momentum drove the bullet into his plate armor, launching him backward, crashing headlong into a ruined storefront, raising a choking cloud of dust. After a long silence, the dust settled. Li Qi emerged slowly from the rubble, gripping the shattered hilt of his broken sword. He saw Xiao Fan calmly reloading, and glimpsed Qin Wenyo Bai and others wielding sleek, unfamiliar arms methodically cutting down his men. Rage contorted his features, veins bulging at his temples. "You, Scorpion. I'll remember you. You'll pay for this." Spitting out the threat, he abandoned the field, without hesitation fleeing with his battered remnants, not daring to look back. As the enemy vanished, survivors emerged from cover, relief surging through them, erupting in unrestrained cheers. But when they began tallying heads, silence fell like a shroud. Of the original 1,000-strong force, and the additional 200 who'd just emerged from the ruins, fewer than 400 remained alive. This wasteland was far more treacherous than anyone had imagined. "Commander, why didn't you just shoot him dead on the spot?" Qin Wenyo Bai hefted his hyper-ancient weapon, baffled. Xiao Fan rose slowly from the ground, his left hand dragging the magnetic-rail sniper rifle, his right fist clenched and shaken vigorously, joints popping audibly. Understanding dawned on the others. That shot's recoil had dislocated the commander's shoulder. A second trigger pull would have shattered his right arm beyond repair. All exchanged awed, silent glances. The sheer recoil of that rifle was truly monstrous. Xiao Fan ordered the battlefield cleared swiftly, then led the survivors away from the ruined city. On the return journey, players freshly resurrected from base clustered tightly around Qin Wenyo Bai, reaching out curiously to touch the hyper-ancient weapon cradled in his arms. When word spread that the commander had pledged one such artifact to each member of the excavation team, envy flared hotly, eyes reddening with covetousness. Each resolved inwardly henceforth for every mission they'd log in early and stick close to the commander. With him, rewards were guaranteed. Xiao Fan sat atop a weapons crate in the truck bed, turning to Gaia Lanzi beside him. "What's your name?" "Gaia Lanzi." Startled by the direct address, Gaia Lanzi hastily returned the borrowed weapon to Qin Wenyo Bai, snapped to attention, and saluted sharply. Dead silence gripped the truck bed, then erupted into deafening, belly-clutching laughter. Some collapsed sideways, rolling on the floor, gasping for breath. Xiao Fan's expression darkened slightly. Gaia Lanzi, realizing his blunder, flushed, betrayed, and his name carried unfortunate double meanings, and delivered with such solemnity the awkwardness was so profound it could have furnished a 3-bedroom apartment. He cursed himself inwardly. Why had he ever impulsively chosen such a ridiculous name? Xiao Fan exhaled sharply, regaining composure. He let the matter drop and said evenly, "Your on-the-spot command earlier was impressive. Here discipline is clear, faults are punished, merits rewarded." He gestured toward the arsenal stacked in the truck bed. "Choose any weapon you wish." Gaia Lanzi froze. He braced for reprimand, not reward, for his humiliating gaffe. His heart hammered wildly. Right then he swore inwardly from this day forward he would follow the commander without question, unwaveringly, absolutely. His eyes swept the array of arms, then hesitated, voice tentative, "Commander, may I choose?" Yet the next instant Gaia Lanzi pointed firmly at the very rifle resting in Xiao Fan's hands and declared earnestly, "Commander, Yet the next instant Gaia Lanzi pointed firmly at the very rifle resting in Xiao Fan's hands and declared earnestly, "Commander, I want your anti-materiel sniper rifle." Xiao Fan. The players. Inside the underground base, numerous players moved about restlessly. With no orders issued by Xiao Fan and peril lurking beyond the walls, none dared venture outside. Instead, seizing the opportunity of Xiao Fan's return with his team, they began exploring the base's facilities, its steam-hazed subterranean greenhouse, and its vertical farm, where a group of logistics-minded players eagerly volunteered to tend the crops. Some harvested ripe fruits, others pruned overgrown vines. In the power chamber, players wearing wrenches at their waists studied blueprints retrieved from an adjacent storage room while standing beside the steam turbine. They performed routine maintenance on minor turbine faults and fine-tuned the base's overall electricity consumption, optimizing efficiency and conserving energy. In the workshop, players with pencils tucked behind their ears leaned over drafting tables, debating strategies to assemble gear by hand using salvaged scrap parts. At this moment, the players' innate initiative shone in full force. No one rashly seized command, nor did any troublemaker squander base resources for personal gain. Moreover, united by shared cultural roots, they displayed exceptional cohesion. The sole anomaly. Not a single female player was present. Yet the reason was self-evident. Upon logging out, a player's in-game avatar would not perish until 3 days had passed. In this wasteland, survival for women was exceptionally precarious. Only after male players secured a firm foothold would female players begin to appear in greater numbers. Beneath the amber glow of sunset, a convoy emerged slowly on the horizon of the desolate plain. Players patrolling near the base recognized the convoy as Xiao Fan's party, and like startled prairie dogs surged upward from the underground entrance to wave enthusiastically at the returning vehicles. Players with rifles slung across their backs and cigarettes dangling from their lips savored the moment deeply, like triumphant warriors returning from glory, calmly accepting the praise of their comrades. The moment they disembarked, players unzipped their backpacks and shared their spoils with fellow members. Bottles of liquor, vacuum-sealed rations, faded but still wearable garments. Amidst salutes from all present, Xiao Fan re-entered the base. First, he accessed the base terminal and reviewed the activity log. Seeing what the players had accomplished during his absence, he smiled in quiet satisfaction. He pushed aside the monitor, lit a cigarette, and drew a long, slow breath. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed since the game's official launch. The scheduled update loomed imminent, and with it the true power of the enigmatic system would manifest. Every native of Marloka, who commanded subordinates, would soon realize that a great transformation was dawning upon their world. Precisely at 11 p.m., every player was forcibly logged out. Those who had yet to swear fealty to a lord instantly dissolved into golden light. A voice resonated within the minds of every Marlokan native who held subordinates. Era 1.01 update initiated. Lords possessing subordinates may now declare their developmental plans for those under their command. This system shall broadcast your declaration to all descendants. Every native lord who commanded players stood utterly stunned. Disbelieving the voice echoing in their thoughts, they fell to their knees in reverence, murmuring hollow incantations. May the machine god protect us, our lord has manifested. Words devoid of meaning. Xiao Fan knew time was not on their side. In his previous life, the lord he followed had wasted precious moments lost in frantic prayer, missing a critical update announcement which led many followers to abandon him for more promising alternatives. The early stage of subordinate development was paramount. Players had invested little, and abandoning their characters carried negligible psychological cost. Thus, capturing their loyalty early was vital for every lord. Without hesitation, Xiao Fan uploaded his comprehensive base development plan. In the real world, players flooded back onto the Era official website. Curses, trade requests, squad formations. The forum buzzed with chaotic energy. Yet one section burned brightest, female players voicing their grievances. I guarded my virtue for 20 years, and now it's been claimed by a virtual NPC. Damn it. This game harbors blatant hostility toward us women. Good heavens, this is outright discrimination against women. I demand regulatory oversight by the LGBT community. God Almighty, you cannot fathom what we've endured. This game has inflicted profound psychological trauma upon me. I will sue the Era Development Studio. Ignoring the delusional opportunists scheming to monetize Era, even sincere female players vented frustrations so absurd they left others speechless. God Almighty, you cannot fathom what we've endured. This game has inflicted profound psychological trauma upon me. I will sue the Era Development Studio. They'd previously wondered why so few female players appeared, only to realize once captured they simply logged out, waiting 3 days for their avatars to expire before rejoining. The reason was universally understood. To log back in prematurely, driven by loneliness, would be to invite true, irreversible solitude. Suddenly a notification chimed. Players instantly clicked through. Dear players, greetings. The Era 1.01 update is now complete. This patch resolves several bugs and introduces key optimizations alongside new systems. World Lord rankings ranks lords based on the cumulative influence of their sworn followers, guiding players' faction choices during early, mid, and late stages. Rank 1, Saint Nina Anro, Holy Maiden of the Church of Light, possesses potent angelic bloodline. Effects unknown. In rank 2, Emperor Ferdinand, Imperial Prince of the Bice Federation, possesses potent draconic bloodline. Effects unknown. In rank 3, Lufeng, President of the Mages Alliance, possesses elemental spirit bloodline. Effects unknown. In rank 10, Xiao Fan, codename Scorpion of the Sands, bloodline legacy, Death Defiance. Effects unknown. No way. Our commander made the list. Commander is legendary. Huh. I knew I chose right. Commander is extraordinary. Though Xiao Fan's influence paled beside Marloka's famed luminaries, his achievement could not be dismissed. To break into the top 10 amid such titans, without lineage or resources, was nothing short of spectacular. Countless Chinese and international players alike stared in bafflement. How, they asked, could Xiao Fan, who trailed the 9th-ranked lord by a galactic distance, possibly qualify. Yet one insight emerged clearly from the rankings: the first 9 names belong to iconic figures widely known across the game world. From 10th place downward, however, lay mostly obscure unaffiliated warlords. And 2. Players may search their lord's name on the official website to view the developmental blueprint declared upon swearing fealty. Players hurried to the lord interface and entered their lord's name. And what the hell? Praying, and damn it, mine stuck too. Is this seriously happening? Screw this idiot. I'm deleting my character and pledging to one of the top 9. And just as in the last cycle, players grew mentally exhausted by their lord's superstition. What future could such a lord possibly hold? Forever kneeling, forever praying. By contrast, players loyal to Xiao Fan watched their peers despair, and even their furious genealogical insults, with unrestrained amusement. Then, leaning close to the holographic display, they carefully examined their lord's vision for the future. In Lord Xiao Fan affiliation, the 4th scourge, and perhaps we are weak, but we are infinite. Buffed. A stream of carbonated bliss sprayed from the mouths of players like Canwen Yobai. How refreshingly unpretentious was this faction's name? How exactly did Commander know the term, the 4th scourge? Did such cultural resonance exist within the game world? No matter, onward. Base development plan, merit-based military system, rank structure, army reorganization, mission, tiering, and medal achievements. All officially launched. In merit system, Lord Xiao Fan declares the implementation of a merit-based system governing all subordinate advancement. Origins and gender are irrelevant. Every reward and resource allocation shall be determined solely by accumulated merit. Completing missions assigned by Lord Xiao Fan yields corresponding merit rewards. Ranks ascending: recruit, veteran, elite, corporal, sergeant, staff, sergeant, sergeant major, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major lieutenant, colonel, colonel, brigadier, general, major, general, lieutenant, general, general, currently held by Lord Xiao Fan. In recruit, automatically granted upon formal induction into the 4th scourge. Veteran requires the 10 enemy kill medal. In elite requires the 100 enemy kill medal. In corporal, must have commanded a squad level operation at least once and executed it with distinction. N. Army reorganization implements hierarchical units: squad, platoon, company, battalion, regiment, brigade, division, and army. Each squad comprises 10 personnel. Each higher echelon commands 5 subordinate units. Mission tiers: future assignments from Lord Xiao Fan will be classified by difficulty: simple, standard, hard, cruel, and hellish. Medals: consuming medals grants merit value bonuses in the next campaign. Once consumed medals are permanently expended and cannot activate bonus states for subsequent campaigns. 10 enemy kill, awarded for eliminating 10 enemies cumulatively, grants 10 merit bonus. In 100 enemy kill, awarded for eliminating 100 enemies cumulatively, grants 50 merit bonus. In ruthless, in a hard or higher tier battle, achieves an average individual or unit kill count exceeding 100, grants 70 merit bonus. In one man, one gate, in a hard or higher tier battle, accounts for 20 of total enemy casualties, grants 100 merit bonus. In butcher incarnate, in a hard or higher tier battle, accounts for 50 of total enemy casualties, grants 300 merit bonus. In divine warrior descended, achieves total annihilation of enemy forces in a hard or higher tier battle, grants 1000 merit bonus. In assault formation, in first ascent, in breakthrough, in 666. No pretense left. They must be insiders who designed Commander's system. This familiar merit structure and medal system, unparalleled. Brothers, I'm rushing into play right now. Soon I'll wear my chest so heavy with medals that fresh recruits will stare in awe. This is pure euphoria. I'm claiming the Divine Warrior Descended medal. In the office of the Special Investigation Team, directly led by the higher-ups, the smoke was thick enough to almost solidify. Chief, you must take a look at this. The door was suddenly pushed open, and a subordinate rushed in holding a document, handing it to the elderly man in the main seat. The old man extinguished his cigarette with his fingertips and quickly flipped through the document. When he scanned the key content, the previously serious expression suddenly relaxed, even showing a hint of a smile. How I thought this Epoch was filled with elements from the West like angels and dragon tribes, but I didn't expect it to contain such authentic elements of the Celestial Empire. He pointed at a name in the document: Lord Xiao Fan. 4th Calamity. Death Resistance. This combination is quite interesting. After saying that, he passed the document to the staff beside him for circulation. The people in the office each finished reading the information on the document, their faces filled with astonishment, looking at each other in silence. If they weren't fully aware that this was just a game, they would almost be convinced that this lord named Xiao Fan was truly a person from the Celestial Empire. He understood all too well what players from the Celestial Empire wanted. Whether it was the military merit system, the rank system, or the military restructuring. For players, being able to charge into battle and gradually rise to the rank of commander by virtue of their military exploits was far more exciting than receiving vague rewards. Moreover, based on the feedback from the Celestial Empire players following him, it was all positive. Xiao Fan never treated the players as mere pawns. Instead, he often fought alongside them, referring to them as brothers with no air of superiority. "Chief, what should we do next?" someone tentatively asked. The old man lightly tapped his fingers on the table and said in a deep voice, "Let's observe further and see what movements he makes next." The next day, as the game server opened, a series of reforms initiated by Xiao Fan ignited the players, and at the moment the server opened, players surged toward Xiao Fan's room like a tide pounding on the door, which seemed almost ready to collapse. The door slowly opened. Xiao Fan's muscular upper body was exposed, covered in a dense array of scars, a shocking sight. There were gaping gunshot wounds, deep knife marks visible to the bone, and claw marks that looked like they had been torn by a beast. The previously noisy players fell silent in an instant, their eyes wide as they stared at the scars, filled with shock. It's hard to imagine what brutal battles he had endured. "Is there something you need?" Xiao Fan asked, toothbrush in mouth, holding a porcelain teacup, feigning ignorance. The leading player, "Look at me being awesome," exchanged glances with his comrades, and awkwardly smiled. "Commander, we came to collect our rank badges." "Xiao Ling, take them to collect their rank badges," Xiao Fan casually instructed. "Yes, master." A round, chubby, spherical robot suddenly flew out of the room, its half-body liquid crystal panel displaying a crooked and funny smiling face, exuding a charming contrast. It turned out that after obtaining the black box last night, Xiao Fan quickly dismantled the old-fashioned artificial intelligence and created a brand new intelligent core, finally replacing the outdated intelligence system that often frustrated people in the base. Now the entire operation of the base was controlled by this intelligent core named Ling Shu, and this spherical robot was its mobile terminal. The players immediately followed Xiao Ling, who was leisurely flying overhead, and swarmed toward the central distribution machine. The initial rank badges were all for new soldiers. Though simple in design, the metal new soldier badges were tightly clutched by the players, their faces filled with excitement. "Tisk, what a pity. Last time I wielded a machine gun and killed at least 100 enemies. If this military merit system had been implemented earlier, I would have been promoted to elite soldier by now." An experienced player gently stroked his badge, lamenting. "Hiss, what's this? Look at me being awesome," suddenly gasped, feeling a stinging pain at the back of his neck akin to a mosquito bite. Xiao Ling immediately flew up to him, the smiling face on the liquid crystal panel wobbling. "The master hastily produced a large batch of combat devices last night. The one you are wearing on your wrist will connect to the neural feedback device just implanted at the back of your neck. From now on, everyone can exchange their military merit points for desired combat chips. These chips are one-time consumables. Inserting them into the combat device will instantly grant you corresponding tactical skills and professional knowledge, helping to enhance your combat power." "Wow, that's amazing." The players immediately erupted with excitement, all bending down to examine the black combat devices on their wrists. The most terrifying aspect of technology is its replicability, which is also why Xiao Fan was never daunted by those mages and high-level warriors. "Weak body. Then rely on genetic modification or mechanical prosthetics for enhancement. Learning skills takes too long. Then, just like downloading files to a computer, upload directly to the brain." In summary, this technological path of his was not inferior to those reliant on innate abilities of spiritual energy or magic. "Hey, this is all in Chinese characters," a player suddenly exclaimed. Everyone crowded closer, and indeed the operation interface of the combat device was entirely in Chinese characters with not a trace of foreign language. At this moment, the players felt even warmer inside, finding the operation much more intuitive. "Wait, we can even copy our own combat skills." The player who had previously achieved the 100-kill accomplishment halted his finger over the interface, his tone filled with surprise. Xiao Ling swiftly flew to his side, and after scanning and confirming, explained, "Yes. You can copy your combat experience into skill cards, which can be kept for personal use or sold to other warriors. There are no limits on downloading skill cards. You just need to go to the supply depot and spend military merit points to buy nano storage chips. However, when uploading combat experience, the learner's brain will suffer slight damage. Though minor damage from a small upload is negligible, a large upload in a short time could lead to brain overload, causing irreversible damage. Moreover, there's one more thing to note. If the learner dies before fully mastering the skill, upon resurrection, the corresponding combat memories will be completely lost. Due to incomplete integration, they will have to learn anew." The players hardly paid any attention to this risk, immediately surrounding the machine gunner player, eagerly asking if he would sell his combat experience. The machine gunner player also got into the spirit of it, quickly asking Xiao Ling about the price of the nano storage chip. Upon learning that it only cost 10 military merit points, he immediately started planning how to organize his machine gun tactical skill card. "By the way, are there any tasks available at the base? Does the commander have any new orders?" Someone asked impatiently. At this moment, everyone was a penniless rookie with 0 military merit, all eager to earn military merit points to exchange for supplies and skills. Xiao Ling answered affirmatively and immediately accessed the projector in the central hall. The huge screen lit up instantly, densely listing various tasks. Some involved assisting factories in manufacturing and assembling weapons. Some were responsible for caring for greenhouse crops. Some required hunting in the wastelands to gather supplies, and others were for maintaining the base's energy equipment, covering logistics, combat technology, and other fields. The players immediately selected tasks according to their specialties, and in no time they set off with their tools. As the sun just peaked over the horizon of the wasteland, the entire Fourth Calamity base roared to life, like a finely tuned machine operating efficiently. Everyone performed their duties passionately, busy as could be, with no one left to chat or slack off. On the other side, Xiao Fan had finished washing up, gnawing on an unknown sour sweet fruit while sitting in the studio. As players passed by, they could see him rapidly typing on the keyboard through the gaps in the drawn blinds, occasionally glancing up at the 3 monitors lined up in front of him. No one knew what he was delving into. In the wasteland, the motorcycle tires screeched against the ground, leaving a long black skid mark. Old Tin, carrying a submachine gun, had a bulging engineer's bag slung over his shoulder. He looked out at the endless expanse of the desolate yellow wasteland and raised his hand to open the combat device's sunshade. Data signals instantly connected to his visual nerves, projecting orange markers in midair around the beep, beep, beep. Iris projection task coordinates completed. He nodded to the 9 little brothers behind him. According to the base's new military structure, these 9 would be his squad members from now on. Everyone immediately split up, pulling out homemade landmines from the motorcycle's trunk and heading towards the mark. Having previously provoked both the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang, Xiao Fan was well aware that these 2 groups would never let things go easily and would seek revenge sooner or later. With the base short on building materials, there was simply no way to construct defensive walls. Setting up landmines to create a blockade became the most efficient method. Xiao Fan's plan was to leave 2 passages for daily travel while sealing off all other directions with land. SHHK. Old Tan's engineer's shovel suddenly thrust into the ground, and he quickly crouched down to dig, his movements swift and decisive. The scorching sun beat down upon the Leto wasteland as waves of radiation-laden heat swept over the hillside, causing the brown trench coat of the player to flap audibly in the wind. He held a telescope crafted from 2 iron pipes and 2 glass lenses, scanning the movements in the surrounding wasteland. Ever since he joined the commander, the current Fourth Calamity players had completed their transformation from prey to hunters. He accepted the tasks of rescue the descenders and exterminate the locusts. The former involved finding Tianxiao players willing to join the Fourth Calamity, while the latter required killing members of the motorcycle gang and hyena gang within a 25-kilometer radius centered around the base. Whether recruiting Tianxiao players or killing enemies, each completed objective would earn him 2 merit points. He noticed that Look at Me made no movement and simply said, "Basket, there's a group of people at your 3 o'clock direction. I can't see clearly, go take a look." "Damn, next time you can pretend to be the scavenger." "Alright, stop complaining, let me take a turn next time." It turned out that with the combat device, the embedded channel communication system was comparable to the communication channels games were supposed to have. It was quite convenient. Looking through the telescope at the middle finger raised by the other party, Look at Me chuckled. "Boss, after 3 whole months, we can finally have a good meal this time. Don't celebrate too early, hurry up and dismantle this 6-legged antelope and leave this place immediately." The man, his face cracked from the dry heat, scanned the surroundings warily, urging the others to handle the prey quickly. In this resource-scarce wasteland, a human life might be worth less than 10 pounds of mutated creature meat. Dismantling a 6-legged antelope could yield about 50 pounds of meat, which could be sold in Darkle City for at least 5 by silver coins. These silver coins could buy hundreds of pounds of mutated horned potatoes, enough for the tribe to last a month. Thus, for all scavengers in the wasteland, this 6-legged antelope was worth its weight in gold. Who suddenly the lookout in the distance whistled, signaling a warning. Everyone immediately halted their movements, raising their weapons and standing at the ready. Aside from the burly leader and a few relatively strong individuals wielding homemade firearms, the others all had simple spears. They formed a circle around the prey. Before long, F your basket, and others approached nearby, observing from several dozen meters away. The burly men were also nervously watching F your basket and his group. Noticing that the other party had delicate skin resembling the nobles of Darkle City, they exchanged glances. They secretly wondered, why aren't the lords from the city staying within the city and instead wandering around this dangerous wasteland? Moreover, they were dressed like scavengers. Fortunately, the burly leader was well informed. After hesitating for a few seconds, he immediately realized that these people were all descendants. The thought of the bounty on the descendants in the city made him lick his lips. Others might have caught on too, looking towards the leader, waiting for his order. However, in the end, reason suppressed their greed. Logically speaking, the few groups of descendants they had encountered in the past had immediately fled upon seeing them, There was no reason for them to approach. Moreover, the expressions of these individuals were not panicked at all, rather they were examining them. Damn it, a group of scavengers, so poor they might as well bleed. F your basket said, looking speechless. At that moment, a support call from Look at Me echoed in his mind. Basket, hurry back. I've spotted a group of players being pursued by the motorcycle gang, and there are quite a few of them. Ignoring the indigenous scavengers in front of him, F your basket immediately sprinted towards the distant hill. The wind whipped his tattered trench coat, revealing the long spear on his back. The burly man's pupils contracted, and cold sweat broke out on his back. They were fortunate not to have acted impulsively earlier, otherwise if a fight had broken out, they would have undoubtedly faced certain death. Watching the departing players, the burly man hurriedly urged his subordinates to accelerate the dismantling of the six-legged antelope and leave this place of troubles. After sharing visual neural images, Look at Me determined that those scavengers were not the target of the mission and thus decisively abandoned surveillance and turned his gaze elsewhere. To his surprise, he really saw billowing dust rising from a small hill in the distance. Dust that could only be kicked up by a convoy. A group of unfortunate souls was being bundled and stuffed into the vehicle by the convoy's people. It goes without saying these were definitely players being hunted by the indigenous people of this world. Boom, boom, boom. Look at Me jumped onto his off-road motorcycle, twisting the throttle all the way down. He drifted and turned around, charging towards the convoy with his subordinates. The convoy seemed to have also noticed them. After observing for a few minutes, realizing they were not their own, they immediately turned to flee. However, it was too late to run now. The machine gunner player on the trike squeezed the trigger, firing wildly at the enemies riding motorcycles adorned with wasteland aesthetics. Die. Look at Me accelerated to the side of an enemy, stepping on the footrest with his left foot. He stood up and kicked out his right leg, knocking the opponent over. The enemy dazedly got back up, pulling out a pipe pistol to fight back. Bang! A bent steel pipe struck his back of the head, and the enemy collapsed on the ground motionless, or coming to a stop. The enemy dazedly got back up, pulling out a pipe pistol to fight back. Bang! A bent steel pipe struck his back of the head, and the enemy collapsed on the ground motionless. Young people are great, they just fall asleep. Stowing the steel pipe, the player grinned and revved the throttle, following behind Look at Me. In just one encounter, the riders in the enemy convoy were completely wiped out. The remaining trucks realized something was wrong and immediately sounded the alarm. Suddenly, bald heads popped up from all corners of the truck, one of whom, draped in a leather trench coat and adorned with various chain decorations, crawled to the back. He pulled the bolt and opened fire with the heavy machine gun at the approaching players. Swish, swish, swish. Damn. 2 players were hit on the spot, directly respawning back at the base. Look at Me turned to look at his blood-soaked left arm, his mouth twitching slightly from the pain. Generally speaking, when pain reaches a threshold, the brain commands the body to secrete adrenaline, automatically cutting off sensations to shield against pain. In severe cases, it can even lead to shock, ensuring the body's functions. However, the effect of his death resistance forced his pain threshold to remain at a minimum of 20. In this state, the pain was unbearable, yet not enough to trigger the brain's protective mechanisms, making it truly uncomfortable. Injured. F your basket, who was chasing on his motorcycle, noticed Look at Me's bloodied left arm and teased, "Why don't you go bandage up over there? I can handle the rest of them. Get lost." Look at Me shot him a glare from the corner of his eye, annoyed. "You go left, I'll go right." "No problem." Both notified their subordinates to follow in the public channel. They accelerated to the left and right sides of the truck, where the enemy machine gunners had blind spots. Clang. The 2 players pulled out shotguns and dealt with the enemies on the iron barricade. Then they took out 2 hooks and latched them onto the truck's rear bumper. Then they pressed a switch on the motorcycle. 2 slowing plows dropped from behind the seat. As the iron chains used for cushioning were pulled taut, the 2 plows carved deep trenches into the ground. The speed of the enemy truck visibly slowed down. Kill them. On the narrow walkways beside the truck bed, enemies pulled out weapons and attacked the players on either side. The players were not to be outdone, launching explosive spears that caused the enemy to cry out in anguish. Da-da-da. 2 trikes finally caught up, wildly firing at the enemies on either side of the truck bed. Clang, clang. The truck bed was extremely sturdy. The penetration power of the homemade machine guns was insufficient, leaving only a dent without penetrating. However, when hitting a person, the effect was entirely different. The struck enemies either lost limbs or spilled their guts all over the ground. The scene was quite bloody. Thud, thud. The truck driver heard a knock on the window. Focused on driving, he caught sight of an unfamiliar large face out of the corner of his eye. Damn bastard. He panicked and floored the accelerator while the passenger, holding a shotgun, opened the door and aimed at Look at Me to pull the trigger. However, on the other side, F your basket seized the opportunity, grabbing the top of the window with both hands and delivered a flying kick with both legs together, directly kicking the 2 out. That was a good kick. What a good mockery. The 2 quickly closed the door and exchanged smiles. Then they took control of the truck, turning it around towards the base. The two men sped non-stop toward the base in their truck, flanked by their subordinates riding motorcycles as escort. As they approached the forward outpost guarding the base's access road, one of them spoke over the public channel. Instantly, several players burst out, hefting iron bar barricades to clear the blocked path. The truck roared. The 2 packets of hand-rolled cigarettes, crafted by indigenous tribespeople, were handed over. The gatekeeper player whistled in awe. Incredible, boss. Another massive haul. The convoy raced onward. By dusk, they finally reached the base. Brothers, come on out. We're home. Shit. With a pull, look how awesome I am, swung open the rear hatch and froze in place. Before him, crammed into the cargo bed, huddled dozens of terrified indigenous people. Clad in ragged garments and parched, cracked skin, they trembled uncontrollably at the sight of the players. Look how awesome I am, and I'll bash your basket, exchanged stunned, speechless glances. Wait, wasn't this supposed to be a rescue mission for fellow players? So why are they all indigenous? This is absurdly farcical. Half our squad lost only to return with a caravan of locals. So, does this even count toward merit points? The news swiftly reached Xiao Fan. He grabbed his trench coat and strode briskly outside the base. Surveying the disheveled, beggar-like inhabitants of the wasteland tribe, he quickly grasped the truth. The motorcycle gang, having suffered heavy losses in their last clash with him, must have grown desperate, resorting to conscripting tribal villagers as forced laborers. And look how awesome I am, and his team had unwittingly mistaken that raid for a player capture operation, hauling the captives straight back to base. Xiao Fan offered no explanation, only instructed Xiao Ling to award merit points, 1 point per person duly recorded. Though the reward was halved from expectations, profit was still profit. Look how awesome I am, and I'll bash your basket, voiced no complaint. Also issue this order henceforth: no one may abduct wasteland indigenes without my explicit command. Though he did not turn, Xiao Fan could already sense the calculations flickering in the players' minds around him. True, the number brought back was small, but across the wasteland, indigenous tribes were as ubiquitous as rabbits in Australia. Compared to the uncertainty of rescuing stranded players, simply collecting tribespeople was undeniably more efficient. He had to shut down that loophole before it took root. At the commander's decree, surrounding players coughed awkwardly, quietly suppressing their private schemes. Damn, it almost turned us into the old British colonizers or the American GIs. Slavery is unacceptable. We are civilized people. Xiao Fan scanned the crowd gathered beside the truck and called out, who among you is the leader? From the throng, a broad-shouldered man, shielded by several others, tremulously rose to his feet, with elders, women, and children huddling protectively before him. Lord, command us as you wish, but please spare the children and women. The man dropped to his knees before Xiao Fan and bowed his head repeatedly. Xiao Fan remained silent for 2 breaths, then raised a finger, pointing steadily down the road they'd just traveled. Follow this path. Once past the outpost, you will leave my territory. He turned and walked away without another word. His base's resources were already stretched thin. Some players, resenting the high cost of rations, preferred dying in the wasteland rather than purchasing supplies, letting teammates retrieve their gear instead. To shelter these tribespeople would exhaust every reserve, dragging the entire settlement into collapse. Survival on the wasteland permitted conscience, but forbade sainthood. To do otherwise would doom both self and others, a hard-won truth he'd learned with his life in a prior existence. The tribespeople stared at Xiao Fan's retreating figure, then at the players who had silently parted the way, dumbfounded, unable to believe their eyes. We're being released. Though thick with confusion, none dared delay. They tumbled hastily from the truck, helping one another up, and fled along the straight, tire-grooved road into the distance. Where's Sour Cabbage, brother? Old Flem Sour Cabbage. Look how awesome I am, paid no mind to the tribespeople's departure. Clutching over 100 military merit points, he bellowed through the base. Hearing his name called, Old Flem Sour Cabbage emerged from the base's repair shed, half a wrench still clutched in his hand. What the hell? Are you summoning spirits? Look how awesome I am, rushed forward, slung an arm over the other's shoulder, lit a cigarette, and flicked his gaze toward the captured heavy-duty truck. Heard you've got skill. Can you modify this beast for me? Old Flem Sour Cabbage shrugged off his grip, circled the truck slowly, kicked the tires, tapped the cargo bed with his knuckles, then asked what exactly needs modifying. Boost engine power significantly. Reinforcement on the cargo bed isn't needed. Just extend and widen it to carry more. Look how awesome I am, stated plainly. Base salvage missions offered solid rewards, but previously lack of towing capacity made them inefficient. Now with this heavy truck, properly modified salvage runs would yield far greater returns than scavenging for stranded players. Old Flem Sour Cabbage stroked his chin thoughtfully. Fine, I'll do it. 100 merit points. Can't you lower it? Or I'll pay in real currency. Look how awesome I am, immediately bargained. Old Flem Sour Cabbage shook his head. No discount. First, upgrading engine output means either installing a higher output engine or modifying the turbocharger. Both require costly materials which I'll need to source from others. Second, extending and widening the cargo bed means dismantling the current one, reinforcing the chassis, but acetylene for cutting and welding rods must be purchased from base supply. 100 merit points is already a favor. Look how awesome I am, glanced at I'll bash your basket, who nodded. He clapped decisively. Done. Deal. Once the merit points transferred, they divided tasks. I'll bash your basket returned the rented motorcycles. Rental fees steep with daily penalties for late return. Well, look how awesome I am, maneuvered the heavy truck onto an adjacent vacant lot. Old Flem Sour Cabbage wasted no time. He arrived shortly with 2 assistants, erected a 4-sided open-air temporary workshop beside the lot, wheeled in tool carts, and began work. Meanwhile, deep within the wasteland, Chief looked toward our village. Zack stood atop a low hill bearing freshly hunted game, his heart lurching as he spotted thick smoke rising from his tribe's direction. Ominous, unmistakable. He shouted urgently to his kin, quick, back to the village now. By the time they staggered breathlessly into camp, all they found were empty makeshift huts and utter devastation. Shattered pots and pans littered the ground, and stored dried rations had vanished. Zack collapsed to his knees with a thud, palms braced against the earth, voice trembling. It's over, all gone. Their village had been sacked, their people abducted. Only those who'd gone hunting remained. Chief, look at these tire tracks. Either the bounty hunters of Decrell City, or the motorcycle gang. A subordinate hovered anxiously around Zack, near tears, his wife and child's fate unknown. Could urgency be any greater? Others echoed his despair, faces hollow with hopelessness. Zack himself felt utterly helpless and adrift. Neither bounty hunters nor the motorcycle gang were forces his scavenger tribe could confront. His own son had been taken too. He'd envisioned returning with fresh meat to share with his people, only to find ruin instead. He sat numbly on the ground, voices around him muffled, distant, as if heard through water. He had no idea where to begin. Just then movement stirred atop a nearby hillock. All sprang upright, staring, and erupted in jubilant cries. It was their people. They sprinted wildly forward, swarming the returning villagers, shouting questions. What happened? How was the village raided? How did you escape? After hearing their account, Zack and the others stood frozen, disbelief etched across every face. Are there truly such benevolent people in this world? In the past, even enslaving them as laborers, until they broke, then burying them as fertilizer, would have held more value than simply setting them free. Chieftain, their numbers are great, and by their speech they're all descendants. A tribesman leaned close to Zack, voice hushed, the implication clear. Survival on the wasteland meant aligning with a powerful faction, if possible. Except, of course, the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang. Those 2 factions demanded endless labor with no recompense, not even food. Better to starve in the open wasteland than endure slow, brutal enslavement under them. Zack hesitated. Their unexpected release might mean the descendants deemed them worthless, and approaching voluntarily would likely earn only rejection. Yet the arrival of the descendants had worsened the wasteland's already dire conditions. Rumors whispered that the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang had recently suffered massive casualties, and now scoured the wasteland, seizing anyone they could to replenish their ranks. For his people's safety, even knowing he might be turned away, Zack resolved to try. A group of laid-back players lounged on the observation deck chairs with their legs crossed, munching on the unknown fruits produced on the base, and smoking, looking utterly relaxed. Damn, why does this fruit taste like a rotten radish, bland and dry? Come on, it's better to have something to eat. We can earn merit points for our 3 meals a day, and this task is in high demand. You're still complaining. On the other side of the observation deck, a person swung their legs and exhaled a puff of smoke, glancing disdainfully at the others. I heard that some lifestyle players are planning to start farming, but I wonder if they can manage it. Don't kid yourself. With such strong radiation, who knows what the crops would turn into. But I've heard that there's a plant called horn yam in the wasteland which has low yield, but is unaffected by radiation. It's the main food source for the indigenous people living in the wasteland. Someone tossed away their cigarette butt and turned to the others. What's up? Do you want to become a farm owner? Just taking a look. It's an open game. Everyone has their own way of playing. The other person chuckled and looked ahead. Suddenly their expression changed, and they quickly grabbed the binoculars to peer into the distance, discovering hundreds of people approaching, including children. Hey, below, stop playing cards, something's happening. They shook a bell. The group of players gathered around the wooden table immediately dropped their cards and grabbed their weapons. Damn, who the hell is it? I had a winning hand. Oh please, I have a bomb and a plane. How could your cards compete with me? Stop the noise, let's go out and take a look. The 2 hopped on their motorcycles and sped out of the outpost. The players on the observation deck also rubbed their hands and readied their machine guns. Should anything unusual occur, they would be prepared. Boom, boom, boom. Soon the players reached the front of the group, circling around them on their motorcycles. Zack immediately raised his hands, signaling everyone to kneel on the ground to show they meant no harm. The players then dismounted, weapon in hand, and approached the group. What do you want coming near our territory? Zack and the others were confused, only seeing the strangers' mouths moving, unable to understand what they were saying. What do you want? The leading player's companion asked again. This question immediately drew the disdainful glances of others. After all, they were the natives of the game world. How could they treat them as intruders? Dear sirs, we have come to seek refuge with you. Not understanding the players' words was no issue, as Zach quickly expressed their request. The players couldn't speak the stranger's language, but they could understand them. The indigenous forces wanted to join their base. How do we proceed? A player shrugged, saying, "You're asking me. I'm not the commander." In the base, Xiao Fan hadn't anticipated that this group of indigenous people released just yesterday would come back today with their families seeking refuge. He fell into deep thought. After a while, he considered the shortage of logistical players in the base. If they could bring in some indigenous people to work for free, it wouldn't be a bad deal. Their numbers were not large, and the base could afford to support them in the early stages. So he instructed the players at the outpost to escort them to the base without personally meeting them, allowing the players to take them to the greenhouse farm to help take care of it. The extra people were given brooms to help clean up the base's garbage. With Xiao Ling around, there were no communication. Returning players were surprised to see a batch of indigenous people at the base. Zach, filled with gratitude, found Xiao Fan and kept thanking him, declaring their loyalty. Having a place for shelter from sun and rain and ensuring 3 meals a day without needing to do hard labor. This life felt like a dream. He felt immensely relieved for making that bold decision. Xiao Fan merely nodded slightly and didn't engage further. The days passed quietly. One day, Zach suddenly dragged a small boy with a leaking backside out of the greenhouse, taking a whip made of electrical wire to give him a beating. "Hey, why are you hitting him?" A player saw this and immediately stepped forward to stop it. "This has nothing to do with you, mind your own business." Xiao Fan pushed aside the monitor. The screen displayed the greenhouse's surveillance footage. He stepped outside, telling the meddling players to ignore it. "Lord, this kid has been sneaking fruit from the greenhouse. I must teach him a lesson today." After saying this, Zach raised the whip to strike again. Xiao Fan grasped his arm and said, "No more chances." "Thank you, Lord." Zach kicked the boy's backside. The boy immediately cried and kowtowed, promising he would never sneak food again. The observing players looked at the small boy, then at the greenhouse, and could guess the situation. Getting whipped for merely sneaking a bit of food felt futile. Little did they know, in a resource-scarce environment, your sneaking food could very well cost someone else's life, and if you took someone's life, any beating you received would hardly be deemed excessive. Zach promised with a thump on his chest that such an incident would never occur again, pleading with Xiao Fan for another. Xiao Fan silently nodded and didn't respond further, only informing, "The base does not keep useless people. You will send 40 laborers to accompany the descendants' convoy to search for supplies." Zach quickly agreed, saying this as he dragged the boy by the ear, taking him to the outdoor camp tent. "From now on, keep an eye on your child." Zach quickly agreed, saying this as he dragged the boy by the ear, taking him to the outdoor camp tent. From now, he took a piece of wood to sit down, muttering, "Each family must send one man to follow the Lord's subordinates to search for supplies." Everyone was stunned. Hearing this, the mother, who had just felt sorry for the child, grabbed his ear again and gave him another round of whipping, causing the child to wail. In truth, Xiao Fan did not genuinely wish to punish them. The scale of the base's logistics was limited, and managing just over 50 people was sufficient. The remaining individuals couldn't simply be kept on the payroll. Instead of keeping them at the base, it was better to have them send people to join the players in searching for supplies. This would not only show them that the base is not a charity, but it would also enhance players' efficiency, allowing them to better cope with sudden threats. He also wanted to see if he could shift the expenses of these indigenous people onto the players, not requiring much payment, just offering some food to fill their stomachs. And to support these laborers, players would have to spend money on food at the base or go hunting or trading, which would also promote market circulation within the base. Initially, players were reluctant to accept this group of indigenous people, thinking it would be too troublesome to bring them along, plus the cost of providing meals was too high. But upon hearing that Xiao Fan would let them use it for free for 3 days, they immediately scrambled to take part. Free labor was too good to pass up. Having more hands to help transport goods would significantly increase efficiency. The 40 indigenous people were instantly claimed. However, Xiao Fan was unaware that while the base was flourishing, a conspiracy against him was secretly unfolding. Bang! The player made a precise 100-meter shot, taking down a 2-headed cow instantly. He stood up, wiped his nose, and smiled with pride. "Haha, it turns out my time spent on shooting games wasn't wasted, and my marksmanship is indeed precise." Phew, he whistled at a distance. Zach and 3 companions immediately darted out from behind cover, quickly rushing toward the prey. Without needing the player's instructions, they swiftly began to dismember the quarry, loading the choice meat onto their motorcycle. For several consecutive days, the player found that this group of natives seemed quite capable. Just based on their skills in butchering, their speed in handling prey was worth 3 meals a day. Moreover, the player discovered that as long as he left the easily perishable offal to these guys, he could calculate the reward. Thus, what began as suspicion has now become a demand. Zach and others had clients lined up for a month. Players who were collecting supplies were experiencing similar situations. Although these scavengers had low cultural levels, they were exceptionally skilled with valuable parts and materials. They neatly organized the materials you collected according to their different values, far surpassing the method of simply tossing everything into a truck as players tended to do. Often when a truck returned there were few valuable items, most could only be processed as scrap metal. Bang bang bang. The player sat on a hilltop smoking and enjoying the breeze. Suddenly, he spotted a group of figures on the horizon. He asked in the channel and realized there was no one around. He immediately raised his gun and fired 3 shots into the air. He signaled Zach and the others to quickly hide with the prey, also warning the group that this was his territory. Upon hearing the gunfire, the group scattered in panic. The player thought they were just a bunch of weak scavengers. "What's wrong, sir?" Zach hurriedly ran over to inquire. "Just a bunch of scavengers," the player said dismissively. Watching the scavengers who had originally fled now rushing back towards him, he couldn't help but frown. With a cigarette in his mouth, he replaced the magazine. If they dared to rob him, he would definitely shoot without hesitation. The player had also learned the survival rules of the wasteland these days. That is, do not trust anyone except your brothers. Because a few days ago a group of brothers was tricked by a bunch of thieves disguised as scavengers, resulting in a trap where they lost all their gear, returning to square one. Wearing a combat device embedded with a language system, Zach could now understand the player's words. He silently watched the scavengers who seemed to be fleeing. Wait a minute. Hearing the roar of engines, the player's expression changed. Clouds of dust appeared behind the fleeing scavengers. The player immediately understood the reason. It must be the motorcycle gang or another faction capturing the scavengers. Goodness, free military merit and experience coming my way. Hey, is anyone nearby? A group of unidentified native vehicles is chasing scavengers, and there are trucks too. Brothers looking to make a fortune, hurry over. The coordinates have been uploaded. Damn, encountering such an opportunity. Brothers, wait, him right next to you. I'm bringing people over immediately. I've been tracking this group for days only to run into you. Wait for me. Ha ha ha. It's our turn to strike it rich this time. The public channel was bustling with excitement. All surrounding players immediately abandoned their current tasks and drove toward this direction. In less than 10 minutes, hundreds of players gathered at the slope. Team leaders from various squads raised their binoculars, quietly observing from behind the dirt mound. The scavengers running over the hill saw a group of people behind them and, frightened, turned to run back. But they were quickly controlled by the players, who screamed in terror, leaving the players dumbfounded. Tell them to run to the right along the slope. Stop the damn yelling. The player looked at Zach. Zach nodded hurriedly and grabbed someone. Just as he was about to speak, he realized it was someone he knew. Ammon, is that you? Zach. The man grabbed was also stunned. Wasn't your camp captured by the motorcycle gang? How are you here? Actually, the story. The player looked impatiently at the two. Stop the damn small talk and let them leave quickly. Zach nodded to indicate he understood. We're currently living well under the protection of the Sand Scorpion Lord. After saying that, he pointed out a route for them to escape quickly. Ammon glanced at the player and then at Zach. In the end, he led his tribe to flee along the indicated line. The group chasing Ammon soon arrived at the foot of the hill. The players collectively looked up, lying on the ground, controlling their weapons to fire at the enemy. In one round, they wiped out all the unprepared riders. As this side opened fire, players hiding behind 2 other hills immediately rode out on motorcycles. Yo-ho, charge, brothers. Ha-ha. Military ranks experience military merit. Incoming. Gagaga. Let's kill them. The motorcycles landed heavily, kicking up a cloud of dust. The players were filled with excitement, showing no fear of war. Their faces were filled with the desire for military merit and ranks. Now the greatest enemy was not the opponents, but their own teammates. With many monks and little porridge, those who were slow would suffer. Damn it, we need to catch up. Now the greatest enemy was not the opponents, but their own teammates. With many monks and little porridge, those who were slow would suffer. Damn it, we need to catch up. Others in disarray. This was the first time they had seen players so crazy. Damn it, it's those Sand Scorpion's subordinates again. The small leader who brought people out to recruit felt incredibly unlucky. The entire wasteland is so vast, yet they encountered this group. But he also knew that the Sand Scorpions were expanding their territorial influence, as these subordinates' activity range was growing wider. Before long, they might encounter the opponents just stepping out. Watch out, boss. The co-pilot of the off-road vehicle suddenly warned. The small leader, realizing something was wrong, saw an opponent leap directly off a speeding motorcycle and pounce onto his off-road vehicle. Bastard, kill him, quick, kill him. Gagaga. Your retribution has come. Damn. Oh. Behave, don't struggle, it will just hurt a bit, and it will be over soon. The player rode on the opponent, fiercely swinging a spade at his head. The blood-splattered face suddenly turned to the small leader, revealing a sinister grin. The small leader was terrified, hurriedly fumbling for his gun. Oh. Before long, one person was tossed out of the off-road vehicle, run over by the player's vehicle behind. Hee. Robbing is indeed quicker. How long will it take to save enough to buy a car? Pulling out a dagger from his waist and tossing it aside, he casually lit a cigarette, said something in the channel, and turned to drive away from the group. The enemy's capture convoy was no match for the hundreds of hungry players, and soon it was completely annihilated. The The players who managed to get a ride sensibly left the heads for the brothers who got nothing. The off-road vehicle made a sharp turn, stylishly stopping beside Zack. The player raised an eyebrow and smugly asked, "Cool, right?" Zack looked at the blood-soaked chest of the other party, scratching his head, unsure of what to say. Suddenly the player noticed a man beside him. His expression suddenly sharpened. His right hand had already reached for the gun at his waist. "Sir, listen to me, it's not what you think." Zack's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly raised both hands to explain. "You better give me a reasonable explanation, or according to the base's regulations I have the right to kill you," the player said coldly. Zack swallowed hard. He pulled a man who was returning and said, "He used to be a leader of a tribe like me, but now he has also been captured by the motorcycle gang and barely escaped." The player interrupted, "Don't talk about that useless stuff." He pulled the trigger. Zack hurriedly continued, "Sir, it's like this. A man's son escaped from the motorcycle gang and has important intelligence about you. He said he is willing to share this information with you and begs you to shelter him and his people." The player cast a suspicious glance at a man. Although he didn't know what the player was saying to Zack, seeing the scrutinizing gaze made him immediately anxious, insisting that what he said was true and that this information was crucial for the player. "You should have said that earlier. A look at the mess this has caused." The player got out of the car and patted the still fearful Zack. Then he instructed him to load the prey into the vehicle and took him to the base. As for his tribesmen, they could wait outside the bridge outpost, and the commander would notify them to let them go if he agreed. After being translated by Zack, and man expressed his gratitude with a bow. And man trembled at the door, unable to resist glancing at Xiao Fan with his peripheral vision. The wild sand covered the traces, and the poison blade sealed the throat. And man trembled at the door, unable to resist glancing at Xiao Fan with his peripheral vision. The wild sand covered the traces, and the poison blade sealed the throat. Is this the legendary Wasteland Scorpion? They even joined forces with the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang to prepare to attack the enemy camp. Speaking of which, can they withstand the two largest wild forces around Darklyre City? Is my decision too reckless? With a wave of his fingers, the player understood immediately. He took the two out of the office. However, Xiao Fan gathered all the squad leaders and initiated combat deployment. Players scattered outside received the news and rushed to the base. In the cafeteria, over 200 players gathered together. They were all seasoned players who had fought a formal. Nobility and commoners all have their worth, each of them who had earned their wings pulled together their own teams. But that's fine. He unscrewed his homemade thermos and took a sip of tea brewed from unknown leaves. Xiao Fan leaned casually against the dining table. He appeared very relaxed, giving players a sense of intimacy, like that of a startup company between the boss and employees. He retightened the lid of the thermos and set it aside. He looked up at the players, some smoking and some picking their nails. They looked nothing like a regular army, but more like a group of street bosses. "The latest intelligence indicates that an informant told me that the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang have joined forces along with other newcomers to prepare to attack our base." As soon as the words left his mouth, a clamor arose in the cafeteria. "What nonsense! The motorcycle gang and the hyena gang joining forces is one thing, but other newcomers are preparing to attack us. Who? If I find out, it'll take a plane to deal with them in real life. From what I gathered from that informant, I suspect it's the little devils and the sticks. They must have seen that we've been developing well under the commander, and since they couldn't defeat us offline, they want to regain face online. Then what else is there to say? My great-grandfather didn't subdue them back then, so it's our turn to fight. If it were just the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang, the players might be excited and not care. But when the little devils joined this battle, the nature changed entirely. If they lose this fight, they would be nailed to the pillar of shame, both online and offline. They are not some foot, they still care about their reputation." Xiao Fan smiled slightly. "It is said that the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang joined forces, but they had to drag in the little devils. Isn't this giving these players from the Celestial Empire a buff? If they don't beat the enemies senseless, it counts as his loss." Clap, clap. He clapped his hands to quiet. "Look at me being awesome, screw you, old phlegm pickled cabbage." Present. The three immediately stepped out of the ranks, standing straight and giving a military salute. Xiao Fan said, "I hereby appoint you as temporary captains, each in charge of 5 companies with 150 men. Your squad will serve as lieutenant company leaders, overseeing the 5 platoon leaders who will serve as second lieutenant platoon leaders." He lit a cigarette and took a puff. With his right hand holding the cigarette against the table corner, he snapped his left fingers. Xiaoling immediately projected the map. The 3D terrain map within a 30-kilometer radius of the base was fully revealed. He drew a circle on the projected mini-map, and a horizontal projection map showed a semicircle. "Old phlegm pickled cabbage, your regiment is the engineering regiment. Make sure your people deploy anti-tank mines within the area I marked. I am not worried about the enemy's newcomers. We can use flesh to clear the mines for the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang. We will have enough time to send troops to counterattack when they approach the base. What I am concerned about is the infiltration of their armored personnel carriers. If that happens, we will have no chance to withdraw and reinforce. He paused. He continued, "Moreover, once the battle begins, you will be responsible for transporting personnel, ammunition, and supplies, as well as maintaining the machinery. Old phlegm, pickled cabbage, guarantee task completion." Xiao Fan nodded, then look at me being awesome. "You have fought a formal battle with me once. This time you will act as the first-line main force. The outer minefield's blockade is like an invisible wall. We only need to guard the entrance from the base to the outside world. The enemy, not wanting to waste their manpower on mines, can only launch a frontal assault. Then they will collide head-in with the 1st Battalion, led by look at me being awesome. Guarantee." The other party hadn't finished speaking when Xiao Fan stopped him. He asked, "If you were to deploy the position, how would you arrange it?" Look at me being awesome immediately moved to the projection. He quickly conceived in his mind and soon constructed a crescent-shaped position. The trenches were interwoven, making it easy to get lost at first glance. However, for players with combat instruments, this situation did not exist at all. Upon discovering that the enemy had even dug anti-artillery holes, he revealed a reasonably satisfied smile. At least after the last time they were hit by rockets, they knew to pay attention to being bombarded by the enemy's rockets. However, there were still some shortcomings. Adjust the machine gun positions to the sides for crossfire. Look at me being awesome asked in confusion. "Commander, what if the frontal machine gun fire is insufficient and the enemy rushes straight forward?" Xiao Fan chuckled lightly. "First, by positioning the machine guns on both sides of the line, the probability of being subjected to a round of rocket bombardment by the enemy and directly being wiped out will not occur. Even if the enemy prioritizes dealing with the 2 side machine guns, they will waste 2 rounds of rocket attacks. By the time they are reloaded, our artillery's fire suppression will be enough for others to take over the sacrificed machine gun squads. Second, if the frontal firepower is too fierce, the enemy will run to the sides. In this case, with your battalion of 1250 men covering every corner will significantly weaken the overall line's defense. With the machine gun positions set up on both sides, the enemy will rush straight to the frontal position to avoid heavy fire, allowing you to divert more troops to the frontal position to grind the enemy down. We are fighting a frontal defensive battle, and the base is much closer to the position than the enemy, so we are not afraid of grinding with the enemy. Do you understand?" Look at me being awesome scratched the back of his head, wondering why he hadn't thought of that. Indeed, compared to the commander, he was still too inexperienced. He called the others back to formation. He called over Screw You. "How will you deploy your position?" Screw You asked. His gaze was heavy as he scanned the map, quickly arranging on the 3D map. He completely abandoned the deployment in the central rear of Position 1, instead establishing 2 unconnected defensive lines 300 meters behind the protruding sections of Position 1. "Explain your thoughts," Xiao Fan asked with a smile. Screw You explained, "First, the base is only 25 kilometers away from the position. I calculated that walking from the base to the position would take at most half an hour. If there are vehicles for transport, it will arrive within 10 minutes at the latest. In that case, the front 2 lines basically do not require any defenses. Even with a little oil warfare, we can keep the enemy at bay beyond Position 1. Xiao Fan smiled lightly and said, "What if the enemy sends extraordinary fighters to charge hard against the firepower?" Screw You lightly touched his side positions. His voice turned cold. "Then I will let the brothers on the side positions directly engage in a pincer attack to cut off the enemy's reinforcements. The engineering regiment supports the first-line position, coordinating with the 2nd Battalion to encircle and concentrate firepower to crush the enemy at the cost of the entire 2nd Battalion, allowing the 1st Battalion to reinforce the position while the engineering regiment continues to keep a close watch on the enemy. In this way, it can also serve as a deterrent, making the enemy pay attention to our side positions when attacking and not daring to throw all their forces into the frontal battle. Otherwise, once we surround them, the enemy will undoubtedly be defeated." The players listened to Screw You's explanation and exchanged glances. Quite ruthless. Indeed, Xiao Fan looked at Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage. Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage did not deploy the defensive line, but detailed the planning for the 2 positions. "I will build anti-tank stakes here, and here, to prevent the enemy from having armored units as the infantry and tanks coordinate to launch a crushing offensive against our positions." He added, "Also here and these places, to increase anti-armor units. If the commander can provide me with some TNT and the right to use the base's machine tools, I can lead the brothers to quickly produce a batch of simple anti-tank individual rocket launchers. Moreover, I want to lead a group of artillery teams to ambush here and stand by. Last time I calculated the approximate range of the enemy's rocket launch vehicles. The attack distance is between 800 and 1,000 meters. It's still a matter of materials. Producing rockets is not difficult. If the commander agrees, I can lead people to create a batch of multi-tube rocket launchers that can be pulled away by motorcycles. Once the enemy's rocket launch vehicles expose themselves, we can launch counter-battery fire to destroy their long-range firepower." The players inhaled sharply. Damn, what a talent. I didn't realize that all the brothers in the base were skilled, truly a gathering of talents. Xiao Fan nodded in satisfaction. Meeting adjourned. Today's combat deployment is classified. No one outside of those present is to be informed. The players express their understanding. If the deployment is disclosed to all players and a nosy player brags about it on the official website, it would be a problem. The players were diligently making preparations, hastily completing their defensive deployments before the enemy could launch an attack. Meanwhile, the script had already harbored malicious intentions, quietly activating a backstabbing skill. Not only did it fail to inform the motorcycle gang and the hyena gang about the players' ongoing deployment, but it also planned to collude with the forces of the Tianqiao, players using them as a knife to eliminate the indigenous allied forces completely. At that time, the supplies from both the enemy and ally camps, along with the base from Xiao Fan, would all be within their grasp, allowing them to firmly establish their footing in the wasteland. This thought was truly treacherous. How do we respond? The other side is sending someone over to verify, and they want our people to guide them to the base. Simple. Just reply that the commander has been alerted by players, and to prevent information leaks, we are currently not recruiting any subordinate forces. We can let them mix in, but each position must set up checkpoints, and only those with identity badges can enter. We cannot allow them to take the opportunity to scout the situation. They also proposed a cooperation plan to feign defeat in the first wave of the battle, giving up the first position to lure the motorcycle gang and hyena gang members in. Once they entered, we would launch a charge to reclaim the position, catching the enemy completely off guard. The next day, we would cooperate with them to interfere with the enemy's command decisions and seize the base in one fell swoop. Surely they wouldn't be like Liu Bei borrowing Jingzhou, taking without returning, right? Old Sour Pickle spoke up. Look at my awesomeness. That is exactly what I am worried about. In that case, we can let them take the frontal defense of the first position. We will fill the trenches with explosives in advance. If they dare to play a real act, we will tear off the facade directly. Regardless of the final outcome, we won't suffer any losses. All right, I agree. At this time, the awesome boss still wants to go out to collect supplies. Look at my awesomeness, grinned, handing 2 cigarettes to the brothers at the outpost. Just going out for a stroll to guard against those little devils' surprise attacks. Thanks. He waved to the people below. Let them through. The barricade was moved aside, and Look at my awesomeness drove the truck, taking his subordinates straight away. The heat waves rolled in, distorting the scorching air. In a secluded corner, Look at my awesomeness sat in the driver's seat, opened the car door for ventilation, and quietly waited with a cigarette in his mouth. Boss, they are here. Look at my awesomeness glanced at the few black shadows in the distance without saying a word. The players in the truck opened their weapon safeties, chambering rounds, standing ready in the truck bed. Are you Look at my awesomeness? You are little chrysanthemum wolf. Hi. The newcomer immediately bowed at a 90-degree angle and then smiled, asking, May I ask if you have brought the items? Look at my awesomeness snapped his fingers, and a little brother beside him immediately handed over a rolled-up blueprint. Upon seeing this, little chrysanthemum wolf became excited and reached out to snatch it for a look. But Look at my awesomeness placed his feet on the car door, sharply raised his right hand, and pulled the blueprint back. The smile on little chrysanthemum wolf's face instantly froze. What do you mean by this? Look at my awesomeness curled his lips into a smile. Money for goods in exchange. Little chrysanthemum wolf took a deep breath and signaled to his subordinate beside him. That subordinate immediately logged off on the spot, and after a while logged back in and nodded at him. Look at my awesomeness instructed his little brothers to keep a close watch on the surroundings, and he logged off to check his account, soon receiving a notification that the final payment had arrived. He logged back in and finally handed the deployment map to little chrysanthemum wolf. There is only one way into the base. All other places are filled with anti-infantry and anti-armor mines. If you want to take a detour to attack, it's simply impossible. I was appointed by the commander to serve as the captain of the forward position responsible for this defensive deployment. This map clearly marks our deployment and firepower configuration. Little chrysanthemum wolf did not easily believe his words, but memorized the general markings on the blueprint and immediately handed it over to his subordinate to keep safe. Can you take me into the base to see the position firsthand? Look at my awesomeness nodded. No problem, but to avoid exposure, I can only take you in alone. Someone had warned the commander earlier. The base is currently on high alert, and bringing too many people would easily leak information. Little chrysanthemum wolf waved his hand, indicating it was fine. After all, this is just a game. Even if something unexpected happens, it's not real death. As long as they can verify the situation at the position, the follow-up plan will be stable. Hey, how did the awesome boss come back so quickly? Oh, I didn't see a single shadow outside. I just remembered there were still some details in the combat deployment that needed to be perfected, so I came back to find Lan Zi and them to hold a meeting to finalize it. The barricade was moved aside again, and Look at my awesomeness personally drove, taking little chrysanthemum wolf sitting in the passenger seat into the base. As the vehicle passed the position, little chrysanthemum wolf hurriedly leaned against the car window, his eyes fixed on various places in the base, comparing the scenes before him with the deployment map in his mind. Bang! Look at my awesomeness stopped the car, taking little chrysanthemum wolf and a few subordinates out of the vehicle. Just as they were about to step into the position, they were stopped by two guards who demanded to see their military rank badges and combat instruments. You guys go back to the base and tell Lanzi. I will take a look around the position myself. Understood, boss. A subordinate said, taking the bewildered little chrysanthemum wolf back into the car. Little chrysanthemum wolf felt puzzled. They clearly agreed to take him to check the position. How did it suddenly change? But feeling the scrutinizing gaze of the guards, he immediately felt guilty and hurriedly lowered his head and dove into the car. What on earth is going on? The player driving the car responded with a serious expression. I told you before, the base is currently on full alert. We didn't expect the commander to set up strict checks here. You have neither a military rank badge nor a combat instrument. If we hadn't helped you out just now, you would have been exposed long ago. The alert level is this high, eh? Little chrysanthemum wolf felt uncertain, his heart racing. 2 hours later, upon returning to the base, look at my awesomeness abruptly pulled little chrysanthemum wolf over, hastily stuffing him into the truck, only leaving one sentence. We must leave now. What happened, awesome lord? Look at my awesomeness suddenly turned his head, questioning fiercely. Did you send other people into the base to spy on intelligence? Little chrysanthemum wolf was taken aback. How could that be? Don't waste your breath on useless things. My subordinate reported that the commander has already noticed that spies have infiltrated the base, and they are currently conducting a full-scale inspection. Little chrysanthemum wolf suddenly recalled the image of players from the Stick Nation, secretly muttering in his heart, could it be that they sent someone in behind my back? He couldn't help but curse in his heart. These sticks are truly more trouble than they're worth. Today they could have thoroughly grasped the enemy's position, but now it has all been messed up by them. At this moment, the disadvantages of lacking unified communication were fully revealed. Although the players from the Stick Nation were in a cooperative relationship with them, they all had their own hidden agendas and had secretly sent people to infiltrate the base to scout. This precisely gave the Tianqiao players an opportunity to set up a trap. Upon returning, both sides were bound to argue fiercely about this matter. And when both parties reached the point of having to be frank and laid out the deployment maps they obtained from the Tianqiao players for comparison, they would find that the contents were completely identical, leading them to trust the authenticity of the blueprints completely. After all, this is just a game. No one would be foolish enough to ignore readily available benefits while going to great lengths to conspire with many players to set up such a trick. And when both parties reached the point of having to be frank and laid out the deployment maps they obtained from the Tianqiao players for comparison, they would find that the contents were completely identical, leading them to trust the authenticity of the. To ease the conflict, both sides had no choice but to present their respective deployment maps to exchange trust. The two of them lowered their heads, carefully comparing, and discovered that the contents of the two maps were exactly the same. Now they completely believed that the deployment map provided by the Tianqiao players was real. In the chat group, players were voicing their opinions regarding the recent infiltration for intelligence, gathering their words, dripping with disdain. Damn it, I really let a Pacific Ocean of water flow this time. That guy can't even act, yet he's called Li Zion. Right, and that little bastard too. Thinking he was being discreet, I could still catch a glimpse of the other party jotting things down while I was on the road. They were just a hair's breadth away from shoving a notebook hidden under the car door in my face. Damn, sometimes acting is truly exhausting, but this time the other party was generous, gathering over 3 million for us. Once the great battle ends, every brother will at least receive 1,000. How delightful. Ha ha ha. In the conference room, the high-ranking officials who were peeking at the screens couldn't help but laugh out loud. It was easy to imagine how furious the little bastards and the Koreans would be once they realized they had been duped by the players from the Celestial Empire. Have our people infiltrated yet? Report, Commander. Over 30 of them have joined the Xiao Fan faction, with one even becoming a second lieutenant squad leader responsible for the frontal combat at Position 1. I believe that after this battle his rank will surely rise. The commander nodded silently. He knew that this second lieutenant was merely a temporary position. After the battle his rank would revert to that of a new recruit. If it weren't for his exceptional combat skills being chosen by Look at My Brilliance, he too would probably be just another soldier like the ordinary players. Whoa. On the frontline, players were still reinforcing their defenses when a chilling alarm suddenly echoed. Everyone immediately jumped into the trenches, bracing themselves for battle, while some logged off in a hurry, frantically calling friends. Damn, what a time to choose. I was halfway through taking a dump when I had to rush online. No way, I just opened my takeout. You guys are lucky I was in the middle of playing cards with my girlfriend and had to log in while bearing the title of incompetent. 666. My dude is really 6. Ha ha ha. Achievements and glory are the ultimate pursuits of a man. Women can only come second. Players lay in the trenches, gazing into the distance. They saw countless heads on the hillside beyond the blockade, roughly estimating there were at least over 30,000, a number more than 10 times their own. This group of little bastards certainly didn't tell us the truth. In the command center, Look at My Brilliance remarked coldly while holding a telescope. The next moment a voice echoed in his mind from J.N.I. Lanzi. Wasn't this already expected? Although the enemy outnumbered them 10-1, the no resurrection cooldown was their greatest reliance. More importantly, players from the Celestial Empire were typically reserved and humble, never boasting about Xiao Fan's talent like Western players. Good things must be kept secret to be shared with the brothers only when bringing them into the fold. This led to an intense curiosity from the outside about Xiao Fan's abilities, yet not a single piece of information could be gleaned. After all, this was a secret among their own. Players not from the same faction could never hope to extract any words from them. Otherwise, what would happen if foreign races infiltrated their ranks? Is this the intelligence you gathered? The hyena and Fury stared at the neatly organized positions not far away, their faces dark enough to drip water. They had previously stated that the enemy was vulnerable, but looking at this fortified position, it was hard to believe they had not prepared for more than 3 days. Killing two would be unbelievable. Sir, the enemy is indeed weak in our eyes. However, the reason they knew we were going to attack is solely because of your orders that let your subordinates slip away. The enemy must have leaked the information intentionally for revenge. Fury glared fiercely at little Chrysanthemum Wolf. This guy dared to publicly expose his scars. In the past, such a person would have already become reserve food. But now they still needed the other party to act as cannon fodder to exhaust the enemy, so he could only suppress his anger and say coldly, "Since that's the case, let us see your strength." Little Chrysanthemum Wolf flashed a hint of a cold smile, respectfully replying in slightly awkward native language, "Rest assured, just watch us perform." After saying that, he signaled to Li Zion beside him. Li Zion crossed his arms, his handsome face filled with indifference, yet the excitement in his eyes couldn't be concealed as he looked towards the position. Although this was just a game, it was still a genuine simulation of war. If he could break through the defenses of the Celestial Empire players on the front line, he, Li Zion, would be hailed as a hero of the Pickled Vegetable Nation, and the whole world would take notice of the Pickled Vegetable Nation and him, Li Zion. This was his goal for this mission, vastly different from little Chrysanthemum Wolf's long-term ambitions. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. The little bastard commander raised his saber and shouted loudly. The next second, a tide of Pickled Vegetable Nation and little bastard players surged down from the hillside, charging fiercely towards the positions of the Celestial Empire players. As soon as they entered the attack range, the Celestial Empire players, filled with national hatred, immediately opened fire, wildly shooting at the little bastards and Pickled Vegetable Nation players. Da-da-da. Damn, that hurts. Damn it, my leg. My leg. In just a brief encounter, the little bastards and Pickled Vegetable Nation players fell like cut wheat, collapsing in droves. Even though they had set their pain threshold to 10, how could they, who were usually pampered, ever witness such a scene? Each of them displayed expressions of terror, clutching their wounded areas and wailing. "You bastards. Don't embarrass the Pickled Vegetable Nation. If you're not dead, get up and keep charging." What the hell? Didn't we say the enemy would cooperate and willingly give up their positions? Why is their firepower still so fierce? Both commanders' faces turned ashen. However, it wasn't just them. A look at my brilliance couldn't help but twitch his mouth, cursing in the channel. Damn. What did the squad leaders explain? Everyone tone it down. The squad leaders were also at a loss. They had clearly stated to hold back. Why did all the brothers turn reedied as soon as the battle started? Brothers, let's kill these little bastards. Ha ha ha. Achievements. So many achievements, we're rich. Little bastards, come again. Da-da-da. You guys take it easy. Didn't we say to hold back? Orders were transmitted layer by layer to the squad leaders at various positions. The reprimanded squad leaders immediately put away their weapons and patrolled their teams, seeing their reedied brothers and kicking them in the butt to force them to calm down. 5 minutes later, the firepower at the positions finally subsided. However, some still shot a few more rounds at the crowd to earn achievements. Fortunately, Look at My Brilliance had warned the little bastards and the Pickled Vegetable Nation beforehand, saying not all players could be bought off, and encountering a small amount of firepower resistance was normal. Thus, the enemy should still not suspect anything. Gradually, the firepower at the positions dwindled to half of what it had been at the start, and even the machine guns on both sides only sporadically sounded a few shots. The little bastards and the Koreans finally managed to storm into the first frontal position. On board. Damn it, die for me, you bastards. The players from the Celestial Empire and the little bastards and Pickled Vegetable Nation players instantly tangled together, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat in the trenches. Even though the players on the position were bloodthirsty, the disparity in numbers was too great, and the first position was quickly lost. Sir, do you see? This is our strength. Now you can let your people follow up and attack. The hyena and Fury exchanged glances and immediately ordered their subordinates to join the battlefield. Give it to them hard. Da-da-da. But the result was that as soon as the hyena gang and motorcycle party charged in, the machine guns on both sides of the first position immediately opened fire at full strength, forcing them to flee with their heads down. The two were taken aback and quickly ordered the army to charge behind the descendants in front. However, the Celestial Empire players on the flanks completely ignored the little bastards and Koreans in the trenches, focusing their firepower on the group of natives. At that moment, an unexpected incident occurred. Look at My Brilliance realized that the little bastards had not turned against them as agreed, cooperating with them to eliminate the hyena gang and motorcycle party members. Instead, they climbed out from the positions, heading straight for the base in the rear. Damn it, I knew it would be like this. Look at My Brilliance roared in fury, without any hesitation, ordering the detonation of the explosives in the trenches. In the deafening explosion, both groups of enemies were buried in the positions. Sauerkraut, immediately send your engineering battalion reserves to block the gap. Loughton Sauerkraut replied with a stern face, understood. Baka, the enemy tricked us. The treacherous Celestial Empire people. Little Chrysanthemum Wolf and Li Zion watched their subordinates get blown up and erupted in rage. So many explosives that could have been used on the front line were instead buried in the only passage of the frontline trenches, clearly meant to trap them. They had originally thought to let the hyena gang and motorcycle party hold off the Celestial Empire players while they directly charged towards the enemy's base, deciding the victory in one blow. But now it seemed that this was clearly a conspiracy set up by the enemy. At this point, both sides had completely shown their cards with no further reservations. The reserve forces of the little bastards and the Koreans immediately followed suit to join the battlefield, attempting to charge directly as long as the defense gaps in the frontal position had not yet been filled. What's the situation on Xiao Fan's side right now? In the conference room, the director sipped his tea, set his thermos aside, and asked. Report, Chief. According to our informants, our forces have formally engaged with Xiao Gizi and Pao Kaigwa. Our positions were, as agreed beforehand with the other side, to withdraw and execute a pincer attack on the indigenous forces. But Xiao Gizi and Pao Kaigwa betrayed that agreement, planning to have the hyena gang and the biker crew hold us down while they themselves rushed straight for the base camp. Oh, everyone was startled, hearts tightening. Could the main base be on the verge of being breached? The secretary smiled and added, Rest assured, Chief, the enemy vanguard has been completely wiped out, and the sappers commanded by Lao Tensuan Kai have already moved up to plug the defenses. He paused, his expression darkening. However, I still think the situation is far from optimistic. The enemy lied about their committed numbers. Their forces amount to at least 10 times ours, battering the front lines. What follows may be. The chief raised a hand and cut him off. Do not worry. Do not forget there is one person who has been watching and has not acted yet. Everyone looked puzzled, and then after a moment understood. Of course, they had been fixated on the players and the battlefield and had forgotten the Lord Xiao Fan. When he first encountered players, he once led them in a small-scale positional battle, and his leadership and command on the field had been exceptionally brilliant. Now that he remained unmoved, it meant matters had not yet reached a point to rouse his concern, he had likely reserved a contingency. The forum threads about Xiao Fan, silent for days, suddenly erupted with activity, their heat surpassing even the top 9 boards. The blazing icon beside Xiao Fan's avatar testified to the comment section's fevered intensity. Players from many countries noticed the anomaly and flooded the forum to gawk. You scoundrels! How dare you break your oath? Damn it! Tianqiao people really put on one face in public and another behind their backs. Oh, come on, don't you know all's fair in war? Can't handle it at the outset. Exactly. If you object, bring it to the battlefield. Got tricked, and now you yap here, is it not shameful? Tianqiao has 5,000 years of civilization. What sort of battlefield stratagem haven't we seen? Your tactics are laughable. Think you can turn our side? You've been watching too many dramas. In reality, or in game, are you fit to be our rival? The forum's auto-translate made the whole matter clear to international readers. Tianqiao players had clashed with Xiao Gizi and Pao Kaigwa players in the game. Judging by the scale, each side had committed tens of thousands of participants. By real-world standards, Xiao Gizi and Pao Kaigwa had intended to bribe Tianqiao players, pouring in over 3 million only to discover they'd been deceived, an embarrassment broadcast to the world. As the forum's heat rose, ever more people joined the discussion. Rough tallies showed that players from Jiaoji, Yaogua, Asan, and other countries ready to join numbered some 100,000 in total, an absolute overwhelm. Joined the fray to support Xiao Gizi and Pao Kai. Rough tallies showed that players from Jiaoji, Yaogua, Asan, and other countries ready to join numbered some 100,000 in total, an absolute overwhelm. Seeing this, Kinwen Yobi and others grew uneasy. The numerical disparity was simply too great. In the conference room, the chief frowned, and the other bigwigs glared, slamming the table in fury. A pack of barbarians only respect force, not reason. We should never have left them a chance during the purge. Though it was only a game, it reflected many real problems. These forces would seize any opportunity to try to topple Tianqiao. Pop. The chief lit a cigarette, inhaled calmly, and said slowly, It seems our Lord Xiao Fan is under considerable pressure this time. With so many nations united against Tianqiao players, even if they did not mount a concentrated assault, simply rotating harassment and disrupting development each day could by delaying progress alone utterly exhaust Xiao Fan and Tianqia's players. The situation was indeed grim. Chief, perhaps we should. Someone ventured. The chief waved a hand. It's just a game, no need to escalate this into something diplomatic. Everyone instantly understood. One must not let a game affect real international relations. Yet not escalating did not mean lacking responses. Soon several major conglomerates and companies within Tianqiao issued statements. They said the nations whose players attacked Xiao Fan's base had shown worrying aggression, and therefore they would reduce investment in those countries and suspend related expansion plans. You have the leisure to make trouble in a game. Fine. Then we'll cut off your cooperation, leave you without salaries, let you all go beg for scraps. In a corporate office, a tall, rugged, middle-aged man snorted in disdain. Humph, they've even dared bully my son. Go tell them if they want to continue cooperating, haul their people out of that game at once. Chairman, the other side insists this was purely voluntary behavior by their national players and that it's only a game, and so we need not take it so seriously. The secretary murmured. It is necessary. The man stared sharply at his secretary and said solemnly, this is not merely a game, it is a probe. If we showed weakness in the game, that effect would quickly spread into reality. Then they will loudly proclaim that Tianqiao is not invincible, and in subsequent real-world negotiations they will seize the advantage and press for more. The secretary, seeing his boss' grave face, trembled slightly and hastened to promise immediate action. Meanwhile, the situation inside the game was quietly shifting. Players from Day and other nations proactively offered to team up. They said they could not directly reinforce the front, but could wage guerrilla warfare behind enemy lines to harry supply routes. The enemy's greatest weakness was precisely their logistics. Even if players could respawn and rush back to the field, ammunition and supplies still had to be transported to the front. So much material was to many foreign players like equipment delivered on a platter. Helping Tianqia's players would curry favor and under the banner of justice openly seize supplies. A twofold gain perfectly advantageous. Kan Wenyobi promptly reported the situation to Xiao Fan. Without a word, Xiao Fan instructed him to send a coordinate to the Day players and revealed that a cache of weapons and ammunition had been reserved there. Though mostly improvised, the weapons were more than sufficient for guerrilla warfare. They were his contingency. Should the base fall, this stock would give him the means to rise again. For now, the Day players benefited. Upon receiving the coordinates, they were ecstatic, privately relieved they had backed the right horse. What players most lacked was startup capital. With this cash, their force could snowball and grow ever larger. Moreover, their opponent was Xiao Gizi Day, and Xiao Binzi had a long-standing feud. At the prospect of dealing with Xiao Gizi, the Day players howled with eagerness, itching to charge. The situation unraveled completely. While players in other regions still searched for ways to survive, events in Lida, Huanyuan set off chain reactions and ignited all-out conflict. Even the previously overlooked indigenous factions could not help but turn their heads. All eyes fixed on Xiao Fan, the man who had stirred this godforsaken land into blazing life. Tap, tap, tap. Ka, ka, ka. A player rushed to the machine gun position with an ammo box, tearing it open with a flourish and handing over the ammo clip. Click. The gunner swiftly took the ammo clip, loading it into the gun and pulling back the bolt to chamber around. The assistant beside him held tightly to the violently shaking ammo belt as the machine gun roared again, unleashing a torrent of bullets that transformed into a storm of metal, wildly sweeping towards the advancing enemy. Whoosh! Suddenly a few stray bullets came flying, and one striking the main shooter right in the eye socket. A life can be lost, but equipment must not be abandoned. Human life is far cheaper than gear. The assistant witnessing this felt no sorrow for his. A life can be lost, but equipment must not be abandoned. Human life is far cheaper than gear. The assistant witnessing this felt no sorrow for his fallen comrade, but rather excitement at finally being able to operate the machine gun himself. One hand steadying the ammo belt, the other pulling the trigger, he revealed a frenzied grin as the machine gun shook violently. With every enemy that fell, he imagined hearing the notification sound of achievements being unlocked. Woo woo, it's a rocket shell. Get down. Hearing the familiar whistling sound, the players quickly dove into the air raid shelter. Those who were too late simply lay in the trench, covering their ears with their hands and opening their mouths wide to minimize the negative effects of the bombing. Boom, boom, boom. After the bombardment, the squad leader wiped the soot from his face and peered up from behind cover. Looking at the nearby enemy, he fired while shouting to the artillery observer beside him, the flanking heavy fire can't suppress the enemy. The frontal assault from the enemy was a massive wave, their momentum overwhelming. Call for artillery support immediately. The artillery observer pressed his head down, focusing intently on the battlefield to relay information to the rear artillery positions. Artillery unit, pay attention. Confirm target 1 coordinates. At the mortar position on the reverse slope, a smoking artillery player abruptly tossed away his cigarette, standing up with his muscular torso bare. Everyone prepare. Target 1 coordinates. The artillerymen quickly crouched beside their guns to adjust their aim as the squad leader received the frontline observer's orders in his mind direction 1720 range 0450. Calibration complete. Fire. Boom boom boom. 5 mortars fired simultaneously, their shells screaming as they landed 200 meters in front of the squad, 5 plumes of black smoke rising explosively. The violent explosions toppled dozens of enemy combatants, but the more they were bombarded, the fiercer the remaining ones charged, soon rushing past the bombing zone towards the positions. The artillery observer crouched behind the cover, shrapnel whizzing past his ears. He raised his binoculars, fixated on the battlefield, shouting range correction. 0400. Shorten the distance by 50 meters. After shouting, he lowered the binoculars, picked up his weapon, and joined the defense. On the other side at the artillery position, the messenger repeated the orders range correction 0400 or shorten the distance by 50 meters. Ready. Fire. Boom boom boom. The mortar shells slid from the player's hands into the barrels, instantly whistling out and accurately striking within the designated coordinates. Oh, Baka, don't retreat. Push forward with all your might. Victory belongs to our land. All the mortar positions opened fire, the dense bombardment causing the enemy and the players to wail, and even with the pain threshold set to 10, the piercing sensation of shrapnel penetrating their bodies was still excruciating, not to mention the horrific sight of severed limbs and corpses, far more terrifying than any horror film. Even knowing it was a game, the players from the opposing side panicked, some starting to flee. One person running can lead to 10, can lead to 100. They dropped their weapons and fled, even forgetting to log off directly. Death is not terrifying. What is terrifying is lying half dead among a pile of corpses, feeling the warm remains of teammates' insides with no one to rescue them. Damn bastards. The player Little Chrysanthemum Wolf trembled with anger at seeing his fleeing teammates, but soon felt a sense of relief. These deserters were shot dead on the spot by the enforcers from the rear, the motorcycle gang and hyena gang. This is the frontline battalion command. All artillery units pay attention. Target 1 coordinates direction 1253, range 0250. Implement continuous fire coverage. Watch me shine. Putting down the binoculars, the player spoke in a steady voice. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd squads, all attack. Rush out of the trench and engage the enemy in melee. Sauerkraut, get your engineers up here. 4th and 5th squads, keep the fire going. Indiscriminate attack. Understood. Understood. 5 artillery units and 25 mortars bombarded the target coordinates, instantly creating a vacuum zone, completely separating the enemy's reinforcements from the frontline assault team. Do. As the charge sounded, players from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd squads felt their blood surge, charging out of cover with their weapons drawn. Die for me. A player executed a flying kick, toppling an enemy. Trash. Take this. He climbed on top of the opponent, swinging a shovel down at their head. Seeing this, an enemy rushed up to assist, stabbing a few rusty long knives into the player's back, piercing. The player spat out blood violently, the intense pain triggering his nerves. With red eyes, he turned to glare at his assailant, grinning savagely. Little devils. Let's die together. Sizzle boom. The players from Tianshao, outnumbered 10-1, managed to disrupt the enemy's attacking. The enemy attempted to charge, but was firmly blocked by players from 3 squads. In the open wasteland, while engaging in close combat, they also faced crossfire from the 4th and 5th squads. To retreat meant facing the artillery's fierce bombardment. Advancing was impossible and retreating was equally challenging. The squad commander leading the Little Devils was gritting his teeth in frustration. In a corner of the battlefield, a special squad coordinated seamlessly, remaining calm even when surrounded by dozens of enemies. The squad leader held his dagger reverse gripped, stabbing relentlessly. Each strike could severely injure or eliminate an enemy. Suddenly, the squad leader was pierced in the abdomen by an enemy from behind. He retaliated, eliminating the foe, staggering back to his own defensive circle. Boss, can you hold on? A teammate asked. The man wiped the blood from his face, panting, but unable to hide his excitement. Damn. It cost me $200 to get over here, worth it. He fixed his gaze on the enemy. Don't mind me. Take them out. Whether we can stand out from those overlords depends on this moment. The teammates laughed heartily. Don't worry. We professionals can't be outdone by militia brothers. If it comes to that, we'll just pack up and go home. The fury of the commander in the rear and the cunning of the ferocious beasts each had their own calculations. They let the Little Devils and the players from the Pickled Vegetable Nation fight fiercely on the front lines, while they took advantage of the gaps with the flanks covered by rocket artillery and not yet re-establishing defenses, each leading their teams to charge towards the sides. Among them, the subordinates of the ferocious beasts charged the most fiercely. The heavily armored warriors served as shields at the front, protecting the ragtag troops behind them as they rushed forward. Watch me be awesome. Basket, the 4th and 5th companies are about to collapse. Understood. The players from the 2nd company, who had been observing for a long time, could no longer hold back, and they became excited upon hearing the news. As the charge sounded, more than 1,000 players rushed out of the position to reinforce the 4th and 5th companies at the 1st position. They crossed the trenches without pausing, using the momentum of the downhill charge to surge towards the enemy like a mudslide. However, the defenses of the enemy's heavy soldiers were truly astonishing, and the players' ordinary weapons couldn't penetrate at all. Fortunately, everyone was well prepared, pulling out conical magnetic adhesive bombs and slamming them against the enemy's plate armor. Beep, 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 boom. The special conical cavity of the bomb allowed the explosives to melt the internal copper layer, forming a high-temperature metal jet that instantly pierced through the enemy's thick plate armor. These anti-armor magnetic grenades crafted by the engineering battalion could even penetrate 40mm homogeneous armor steel. Even though the enemy's plate armor had undergone special processing, its equivalent thickness barely reached 20mm, making it incredibly easy to breach. In just one round of charges, the heavy soldiers that the ferocious beasts were proud of perished completely on the battlefield. Fury was infuriated, shouting orders, "Let the rocket artillery attack the charging enemies on the sides." "Fury, what are you doing?" The ferocious beast suddenly turned around, his face filled with horror. They were entangled with the enemy at that moment, and launching rockets would surely lead to their own soldiers' demise. Fury coldly glanced at him. "Your heavy soldiers are already dead. If we don't take advantage of this moment to seize the position, we'll never have another chance." The ferocious beast thought for a moment. Besides his elite troops and the charging team, the rest were just cannon fodder he had gathered, thus he silently approved of this decision. The deathly shriek of the rockets once again pierced the sky. The old pickled vegetable put down his binoculars, a mocking expression on his face. "A bunch of amateurs, they don't even understand the basic principle of changing positions after firing a shot." In fact, when the first wave of rockets came, he had already noticed the launch vehicles hidden behind the earth slope. He didn't counterattack immediately. He wanted to see if the enemy would change their position. If he rashly attacked and missed, it would alert the enemy, making it difficult to retaliate. Clearly, he had overestimated the enemy. After launching, once they remained in place without any tactical adaptability, which was truly pathetic. He raised his hand and pointed forward, ordering the players behind him, "Maintain coordinates, return fire immediately." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Their rockets were only 10 centimeters in diameter, resembling firecrackers during the new year. However, the 30-centimeter-long booster powder allowed them to reach a range exceeding 1 kilometer. Though the explosive yield was small, comparable only to high-explosive grenades, their quantity was overwhelming. 2 rocket launcher platforms only a meter wide and long could launch 200 rockets at once, covering an area of 200 meters. Not good. Its enemy artillery fire quickly moved the rockets. Boom, boom, boom. Fury screamed in terror, but it was all too late. The dense rain of rockets fell like arrows, instantly covering their artillery positions. The cries of agony rose and fell as countless tiny iron balls penetrated bodies, causing excruciating pain to those hit, while more incoming iron balls sealed their fates. Moreover, the ammunition and weapons piled beside the launch vehicle were also ignited by the shelling, leading to a series of chain explosions. The blazing flames shot up, engulfed in thick black smoke, visible even from several kilometers away. In this blow, Fury's resources were completely devastated. He fell into a rage, pulling the trigger of the pistol with the only hand left, roaring for all members of the motorcycle gang to throw themselves into battle. Seeing this, the ferocious beast could only grit his teeth and follow. If they couldn't eliminate the Scorpion this time, they would have no chance of turning the tables in the future, and the Scorpion would become the undisputed king of the wasteland outside Darkle City. This was not the outcome they wished to see. "Die for me." The ferocious beast, being a top warrior, charged forward in heavy armor, like a tank, unstoppable in his path. Leading his subordinates, he quickly approached the position. The players were alarmed, and the old pickled vegetable hurriedly sent forward the rocket launcher operators from the engineering battalion to obstruct him. Though the ferocious beast was large, his reactions were swift. Upon seeing danger, he either dodged flexibly or grabbed a nearby player or his own soldier to shield himself. He blazed a trail, leaping directly into the trench. "Damn it, the enemy has broken in, kill him. You scum." The ferocious beast gripped his new great sword tightly, unleashing a wave of sword energy that swept across the trench. The players along the way were instantly cleaved in two, and even those holding anti-armor grenades had no chance to approach. Seeing the defense line breach, the players like, "Watch me be awesome," were in a panic. The energy system has been activated. System self-checking. Weapon systems normal. Hydraulic power systems normal. Propulsion engine systems normal. The tactical helmet automatically closed as Xiao Fan, clad in powered armor, slowly walked down from the assembly platform. He moved his wrist, feeling the fit of the armor. After obtaining the black box, he used its capabilities to create the energy core for this powered armor using a simple core. Though this core couldn't compare to advanced energy technologies like micro-fusion batteries or antimatter energy rods, it was sufficient to support the armor through this crisis. He slung the magnetic rail heavy sniper on his back, grasped the dual-bladed great sword tyrant's blade, and hurried towards the front lines. "Ha ha ha. Scorpion, today you will undoubtedly die. The ferocious beast stood on the position, laughing wildly at the corpses of players around him. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed from the sky. "Oh, you are quite confident." Boom. A flash of light crashed down, and amidst the flying dirt a bright red glow lit up in the smoke. Accompanied by the mechanical grinding sound, Xiao Fan, wearing powered armor and holding the tyrant's blade, slowly emerged from the dust, standing before the ferocious beast. "It's the commander. The commander is here. Brothers, don't be afraid, we're secure now. Charge." Xiao Fan's appearance injected a shot of adrenaline into the demoralized players of the Celestial Empire. They roared past him, charging madly at the enemy. Without the formidable opponent of the ferocious beast obstructing them, the players could now match the enemies evenly, especially since they could instantly respawn, their reserve forces being virtually endless. Powered armor. "I didn't expect you to have such equipment." The ferocious beast was shocked, the arrogance on his face instantly fading, his expression turning serious as he fixed his gaze on Xiao Fan. The next second, he suddenly exploded, launching a jump slash accompanied by a fierce wind, the heavy sword aimed directly at Xiao Fan's head. Xiao Fan skillfully dodged to the side, gripping the central hilt of the tyrant's blade, tightly countering with a powerful strike. Clang! At the critical moment, the ferocious beast drew his sword to block. The immense force transmitted through the sword knocked him off balance, causing him to crash to the ground. Before he could rise, a strong sense of crisis surged over him. Without a second thought, he quickly rolled on the ground to evade. Boom! The ground where he had just fallen was blasted apart. Xiao Fan pulled out the half-buried tyrant's blade, wordlessly launching another fierce attack on the ferocious beast. The entire sequence of actions was crisp and clean, each strike lethal, without a single word wasted. Damn it! The ferocious beast was utterly frightened, and looking at the astonishingly powerful Xiao Fan, thoughts of retreat began to rise. He grabbed a nearby lackey and hurled him towards Xiao Fan, while he himself turned and fled for his life. Xiao Fan smirked, disdainfully reaching for the magnetic rail-heavy sniper behind him. Loading, aiming, and pulling the trigger, the actions flowed seamlessly. Boom! A dazzling spark of high-energy electric current flashed by the sharp bullet, piercing through all obstacles in front and accurately hitting the ferocious beast from behind. His upper and lower halves instantly separated, rolling several times under the effect of inertia before crashing heavily to the ground. The ferocious beast stared in disbelief at his lower half. Not far away, countless memories flashing through his mind. He had once wanted to be a just knight, but the oppression of life and the injustices of the world had gradually transformed him into the very person he once despised. Now everything had finally come to an end. A relieved smile appeared on his face as his eyes gradually lost their luster. Fury, on the opposite position, had been watching his movements since Xiao Fan's appearance. Seeing the ferocious beast killed, he was so frightened that he immediately mixed into the crowd and fled in a panic. By the time Xiao Fan surveyed the battlefield, the chaotic crowd had already concealed his whereabouts. Xiao Fan slowly walked to the center of the battlefield, where enemies instinctively avoided him, no one daring to confront him. He slowly raised the tyrant's blade, and his commanding voice reverberated across the battlefield, "Leave no one alive." The morale-boosting buff instantly filled to the brim. The players surged with bloodlust, completely casting aside their defensive worries, roaring as they charged out of their positions, actively pouncing on the enemy. With the commander personally on the battlefield, there was no longer any rear to speak of. Charging recklessly was the way to go. The little devils and players from the pickled vegetable nation, seeing this, knew that the tide had turned. With the commander personally on the battlefield, there was no longer any rear to speak of. Charging recklessly was the way to go. The little devils and players from the pickled vegetable nation, seeing this, knew that the tide had turned. But their calculations were precise. In this great battle, the only beneficiaries were the players from the Great Goose. They picked up a batch of weapons and equipment for free. Although they were all homemade, they were enough to help them establish a foothold in the wasteland faster than players from other countries. Vultures with a wingspan of 2 meters circled above, the stench of blood and smoke permeating the silent battlefield. The earth was soaked in blood, countless corpses thickly strewn across the entire battleground. Players from the engineering battalion drove heavy trucks, buses, and modified off-road vehicles to scoop up the bodies lying on the ground, transporting them in batches to an open area 10 kilometers away from the base for unloading. Subsequently, they drove tractors assembled from spare parts, dropping down tillers to crush the corpses, thoroughly mixing them with the barren sandy soil. Before long, this land would become the most fertile place in the wilderness, and the crops planted here would surely yield a bountiful harvest. Gather, gather. Xiao Fan stood in the center of the square, hands behind his back, his voice steady and powerful. Over 3,000 players immediately assembled in battle formation, their movements swift and synchronized. Xiao Fan surveyed the group of players before him, whose eyes shone brightly, and who still bore the aura of the battlefield, nodding in satisfaction. The players gazed at him nervously. With the great battle concluding, it was time to reward achievements. They had been so caught up in the fight that they could hardly remember how many enemies they had slain or how much merit they had earned. But that was of no concern. The base's combat system had already documented everyone's achievements and reported them to Xiao Fan. Who were the cowards and who were the heroes would soon be revealed. Look at my greatness. Here. Look at my greatness immediately stepped out of the ranks standing tall. Xiao Fan proclaimed loudly, in this battle you commanded the 1st Battalion, achieving a 38 annihilation rate of the enemy forces in a single engagement. At the beginning of the battle you faced an enemy force 10 times your size Hedon, ultimately achieving a kill count 3 times that of your own participating troops. You personally killed over 100 enemies and successfully commanded units at the squad level and above to complete combat missions. Now I confer upon all soldiers of the 1st Battalion the one man holds the Pass and Bloodied Soldiers medals and grant you personally the Cold and Ruthless medal along with the rank of corporal. Step forward to receive your honors. Look at my greatness stood tall and saluted Xiao Fan solemnly. Xiao Fan personally placed 3 honor medals upon him. He then removed the new soldier badge from his chest and replaced it with the bronze corporal badge. As for the other soldiers of the 1st Battalion, they could collect their medals after the award ceremony. Return to formation. Yes. Look at my greatness stepped back into the ranks. Feeling the envious gazes from those around him, he held his head high, his heart brimming with pride. Blaster basket. Here. Blaster basket marched out from the ranks. In this battle you commanded the 2nd Battalion, achieving a 32 annihilation rate of the enemy forces. You took the initiative to lead your troops into combat against an enemy 10 times your size, successfully annihilating over 20 of their forces. You personally killed over 100 enemies and successfully commanded units at the squad level and above to complete combat missions. Now I confer upon all soldiers of the 2nd Battalion the one man holds the Pass and Tiger Warriors medals and grant you personally the Cold and Ruthless medal along with the rank of corporal. Step forward to receive your honors. Yes. Blaster basket stood tall accepting the honors under the gaze of the crowd and then returned to the ranks. Old Phlegm pickled cabbage. Here. Old Phlegm pickled cabbage with a submachine gun slung across his chest and an engineering backpack on his back strode forward. In this battle you commanded the engineering 3rd Battalion, achieving a 30 annihilation rate of the enemy forces. During 2 rounds of artillery bombardment by the enemy your unit heavily damaged and completely annihilated their long-range fire units. Your unit utilized landmines, demolition bombs, anti-armor weapons, and flamethrowers among other engineering-specific equipment, achieving over 100 enemy kills in a single engagement. Now I confer upon all soldiers of the Engineering Battalion the one man holds the Pass and Heavenly Retribution medals and grant you personally the Iron-Blooded Engineer and Cold and Ruthless medals along with the rank of corporal. Old Phlegm pickled cabbage raised his hand in salute. Thank you, Commander. Xiao Fan smiled. No need to thank me. This is the glory you all deserve. As soon as the award ceremony concluded, players surged into the garage square of the underground base to collect their medals and military merit from Shaoling, then happily pinned the medals on their chests. While lost medals could be replaced, wearing them without qualification was strictly prohibited. Players with medals initially intended to show off in front of those who had not yet received theirs, only to find that it seemed everyone had received their medals. With no other choice, they could only compete over whose medal was more impressive. What sparked the most discussion among the crowd was the captain of the 1st Battalion's 1st Company and his 10 squad leaders. They had actually received the Warrior Medal. The conditions for obtaining the Warrior Medal were extremely stringent. One must achieve a kill count in a battle of over 10,000 participants that reached 10 of the team's total kills. Do not underestimate this 10. If the 1st Battalion altogether killed 10,000 enemies, these 10 individuals together would need to account for 1,000 kills, and that's a single life per kill. Even for machine gunners, this was a daunting task far beyond what ordinary people could achieve. Brother, did you join? Look at my greatness, offered a cigarette. Within the base, cigarettes were considered a hard currency. Apart from collecting them during outings and task rewards, they could only be purchased with military merit within the base and at a high price. Look at my greatness felt somewhat puzzled. The first battle with Xiao Fan had only involved over 200 people. Even if he didn't know everyone, he should have some impression. Yet the 10 individuals before him looked particularly unfamiliar. They were clearly latecomers. Iron Tiger took the cigarette, using the flame offered by the other to light it, and with the cigarette between his fingers smiled. We joined later. We're not as experienced as you, brother. Look at my greatness. Want to join me? If you stick with me, you won't be treated poorly whether on or off the line. Look at my greatness, extended an olive branch. Iron Tiger, however, politely declined, stating that each had their own aspirations, and he also wanted to carve out his own path. Look at my greatness was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said that there would be opportunities for cooperation in the future. After sending off Look at my greatness, Blaster Basket also approached to extend an olive branch, only to be similarly declined. As for Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage, he acknowledged that Iron Tiger and the others were impressive, but their area of expertise was not what he needed. The two exchanged a few pleasantries, but didn't chat further. In the office, Commander, now that the battle is over, can we loosen the recruitment restrictions? Look at my greatness had his gaze glued to the power armor, standing quietly in the corner drooling over it. Xiao Fan closed his computer and replied, yes, we can loosen it. However, you still have tasks to complete. Upon hearing that there were still tasks, Look at my greatness immediately redirected his gaze to Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan instructed, you will lead the 1st Battalion to continue holding the position. Once we recruit enough new soldiers for a battalion, we will have them rotate in. During the defensive period, each person can earn 10 points of military merit daily and enjoy free meals. I guarantee to complete the task. Look at my greatness stood tall and saluted. He understood that the petty and vengeful nature of the little notebook and the stick meant they might secretly send people to bypass the perimeter for surveillance and ambush the base, making defense essential. Moreover, the rotation would not take too long. After this battle, their 4th catastrophe base would undoubtedly gain great renown, and there might even be players from the Heavenly Empire who would specifically delete their accounts to come from other regions to join. Within a day at the fastest, and at the latest within 3 days, the goal of recruiting a new soldier battalion would surely be accomplished. In the real world, a dynamic image displaying a red flag along with the words Wasteland Lord Iron-Blooded Scorpion has gone viral. In the comment section related to Xiao Fan, players from the Celestial Empire continuously copied and pasted this image, quickly flooding the entire section with this symbol of victory. Others could see at a glance that the players from the Celestial Empire had won this great battle. Laughing to death, do those sticks think they can step on us to rise? I beat them so hard they shat themselves. They can't even withstand 10 of the pain threshold, what a joke. And those little devils, did you submit this time? If you have the guts, come again, Grandpa is waiting for you. Baka, we didn't lose this time, it's just that our teammates are too weak, and this is an assault battle, not that our warriors are inferior to yours. What do you mean we are weak? It's clearly you who fell into the trap and dragged us down with you. You are just hopeless. What do you mean by Middle Eastern native soldiers? If you dare submit a place for an unknown challenge. The Foot Basin truly cannot change its nature, always trying to bite when there's an opportunity. Doesn't Wu Chang manage this? I propose we establish a new United Nations in the game. As the 3rd largest country in the world, I, the White Elephant, am willing to take on the responsibility of maintaining peace in the gaming world. Ha ha ha, unable to achieve in reality, now dreaming in the game, truly the A3. Using a Celestial Empire idiom, you are just daydreaming. The thread veered off topic, leaving later participants baffled about what they were discussing. Nevertheless, the players from the Celestial Empire proved through action that even when facing 10 times the number of enemies, they could still make the opponents flee in panic. This victory catapulted Xiao Fan into immense fame. While players elsewhere scrambled to grab equipment, those under Xiao Fan had already organized into a cohesive force, winning 2 brilliant positional battles in succession. Various battle reports from participating players instantly attracted a large number of Celestial Empire players who had not yet pledged allegiance to any lord. Players from other countries also wanted to join, but the Celestial Empire players directly informed them that their commander only recruited Celestial Empire players. Those who didn't believe this could ask the Little Devils and Sticks. The Little Devils and Sticks knew that their own factions were exclusive, but they feared Xiao Fan's growing power and could only begrudgingly accept this matter. Indeed, in times of war, ranks rise quickly. Just a few days after arriving, I went from a soldier to a corporal. TSK Tisk, a distinguished special forces team leader, a lieutenant in reality, now here, turned into a corporal. How does that feel? Less nonsense. How many people came this time? A group of players carrying homemade weapons were meeting with Iron Tiger on a mound in the wasteland. Each of them was spirited, their eyes sharp as eagles, like a pack of tigers ready to pounce. A total of 240 people, all selected from various military districts as special forces candidates. They were all veteran players like Look at Me being awesome and Grab Your Basket, pulled in from reality, who voluntarily detached from their previous lords and were reborn in this wasteland. They were all veteran players like Look at Me being awesome and Grab Your Basket, pulled in from reality, who voluntarily detached from their previous lords and were reborn in this wasteland. A continuous stream of Celestial Empire players gathered towards the base, and their numbers were about to surpass 10,000. The widespread attention this great battle drew from players across nations was the root of such a rapid assembly. Originally, a team of 3,000 had already caused the base to operate beyond capacity. Now, with the number increasing more than threefold, the base was suddenly overwhelmed. Some players even wanted to log off to eat, but could not find a suitable place to lie down and log out. The expansion of the base was imminent. Xiao Fan immediately raised the merit points for various building materials and ordinary metal scrap collection tasks to incentivize scavenger players. At the same time, he ordered technical players like Old Flim Pickled Cabbage to make the mechanical production lines in the underground base operate at full capacity to hasten the production of basic weapons and bolster the base's equipment reserves. Although they had just won the battle, the batch of makeshift iron tube weapons left by the biker gang could barely arm the newly joined players. But with the base's current resources, it could not support the next large-scale war. He had to seize the opportunity while players from other countries had not yet developed and various factions had not fully focused their attention on him to stockpile war materials. The current battle situation was merely child's play. Once those lords realized the true strength of the players, the entire Bice Federation would surely descend into a battlefield of warlords where every day would be either fighting or en route to the battlefield. The strength of the Celestial Empire players stood out internationally, and in the future, they would undoubtedly face a united suppression from those verbal strongmen from small countries. Apart from guilds that do not restrict nationality, all factions composed solely of Celestial Empire players are likely to be targeted. Moreover, due to the uniqueness of Epoch, the game has already become an underground black market trading venue in the real world. At that time, high-ranking officials from various countries would inevitably be passively involved in the game, personally supervising their own players. In the office, Xiao Fan summoned Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage, who was busy. You can call upon materials and manpower from the base, and it'll allocate another 1 million contribution points to you. I need you to build this within a month. As he spoke, he handed over a blueprint. Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage glanced at the blueprint, his brow instantly furrowing, but he still solemnly promised to complete the task. The blueprint depicted a power station. Given the current conditions of the base, constructing this power station would indeed be no small feat. However, seeing the generous reward, he hesitated no more. Even if he didn't take it, the commander would find someone else, and he would still have to help out. Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage nodded in agreement and immediately summoned all the players from the engineering company. After the last great battle, Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage had earned immense prestige among technical players. With the draft order bestowed upon him by Xiao Fan, it wasn't long before all the engineering company players had gathered. Boss Pickled Cabbage, what do you want us for? To build infrastructure. Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage succinctly stated, then unfolded the blueprint. The commander wants us to build a power station with a construction period of 1 month and has allocated 1 million contribution points. If you are confident you can accomplish this, I won't mobilize other brothers from the base. I calculated that if we can finish within a month, each of us can earn 30 military merit points per day, which is more than hunting or scavenging. Upon hearing this good news, everyone immediately responded, urging Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage to give orders, and they would take on this task. Good. Old Phlegm Pickled Cabbage closed the blueprint and began assigning tasks. We'll stick to the previous structure. The first squad leader is responsible for logistics, ensuring the supply of construction materials, and anything lacking should be directly requested from the commander. The second squad leader is in charge of the technical division, coordinating the distribution of technical tasks. The third, fourth, and fifth squads will handle the foundational construction, fully committing to the power station's construction. Commander, does the base have cement or concrete? Figure it out yourself. Commander, do you know where we can find clay? Go find it yourself. Commander, if you cannot handle this task, I can assign someone else. Listening to Xiao Fan's final warning, the company commander dashed out of the office and then began frantically scratching his head in worry. The commander only urged them to work, but the base had no materials. How could the project advance? Watching his comrades finish digging the foundations while he could not even secure concrete for the piling, he was nearly driven mad with anxiety. Company commander, what did the commander say? The 5 platoon leaders of the company gathered around, faces full of anxiety. The company commander shot them. Company commander, what did the commander say? The 5 platoon leaders of the company gathered around, faces full of anxiety. The company commander shot them an irritated look and tossed out, figure it out yourselves. The 5 platoon leaders were momentarily stunned. But after Xiao Fan's warning, the company commander came to a... The commander had entrusted him with broad authority to allocate the base's resources, personnel, and equipment if he had to seek approval for every trifling matter. What use was he as a company commander? He needed to mobilize everyone's initiative. Self-reliance would supply their needs. At once he issued clear directives to the 5 platoon leaders. The first platoon leader hurried to build a kiln to produce lime. The second platoon leader drove heavy trucks with his men loaded with explosives to the waste plain to blast the hills, hauling the blasted rock back to the base to be crushed into aggregate for concrete. The third platoon leader was tasked with tuning the furnaces, smelting recycled scrap metal, and using the base's equipment to roll rebar. The fourth and fifth platoon leaders were assigned to source clay and coordinate transportation respectively. In short, the tasks had been distributed, the specifics of execution were left to them. Now it was the platoon leaders' turn to fret and scratch their heads, but the company commander paid them no mind and turned back to his coordination work. In his office, Xiao Fan watched the busy players outside through the blinds, a faint smile touching his lips. He wanted dependable cadres who could stand on their own, not green recruits who only followed orders. Opportunities to temper people like this were rare. Commander, you wanted me. Gani Lanzi received the notice and soon arrived at the office. Xiao Fan, a cigarette between his lips, tossed a map across the table on which the Jish party's main camp was clearly marked. The Geesh party's main force had already been wiped out. Taking their camp would be easy. There is a small coal seam hidden beneath the Geesh party's main base. Take a battalion of men and seize it. Over the years, the Geesh party had managed to obtain numerous firearms and weapons entirely because of this thin coal seam, less than half a meter thick, yet stretching for dozens of kilometers. The seam was of poor quality, low in calorific value and high in sulfur, but for the present base, it was a strategically vital resource. Moreover, by controlling the mine, Xiao Fan could inherit the Geesh party's former coal supply business, with Declare City earning substantial revenue. Therefore, he planned to station a battalion of players permanently at the mine and recruit the scavengers who flocked there to work the shafts. A few days later, a kiln rose beside the base, and a coke oven converted from a ruined fuel tank belched thick black smoke into the air. With the rusty machine shop in the underground base brought into full production, Xiao Fan's base had in its rudimentary way entered the industrial phase. When Zake and Anmin led convoys out to hunt and gather supplies, they often encountered scavengers on the waste plain. Word had long spread that Xiao Fan's base offered generous treatment and that he was approachable. Having defeated the Geesh party and the Liego gang and earned the title Wasteland Lord, countless scavengers came seeking to join him. Now that Xiao Fan had become a coal boss, he naturally did not turn them away. So much labor would accelerate construction of the base. In just a week, countless scavenger tribes, large and small, gathered around the base. These people often teamed with players to hunt and scavenge. Their demand was simple, just enough to feed their families. As the saying goes, big trees catch the wind. Xiao Fan's rapid rise inevitably attracted attention from all quarters. One day, the base received an unexpected visitor, an old acquaintance of sorts. Is that a merchant? No way. He came in armored vehicles. If I could drive one of those armored cars, I'd be thrilled. I'm going to score off him. The players gathered nearby could not help whispering among themselves. Commander, the people have arrived, a subordinate reported. Xiao Fan nodded, rose, and emerged from the underground base to the surface. The scene before him felt incongruous. A merchant wearing slightly shabby clothes stood there, yet behind him marched well-equipped attendants and several armored vehicles. Ha, long time no see, my dear Shaxi. Should I address you as Lord now? The man greeted warmly. Xiao Fan smiled faintly, stepped forward to embrace him, and teased, so you finally linked up with the Luopu family. I'm curious, how did you manage that? The man before him was Pilaisi, who in his past life had been the greatest traveling merchant in the waste regions. Backed by the Luopu family, he once enjoyed unrivaled prominence. The Luopu family were anomalies, hereditary grand dukes who did not crave power or sensual pleasures, yet each of them was a money-obsessed merchant. Though their wealth rivaled nations, they were notoriously tight-fisted. Still, one had to respect them. Not only were they powerful, they were extraordinarily trustworthy. Pay them, and there was nothing they could not or would not procure. After the game launched, they had been an important channel for many players to acquire high-grade equipment. Even after the major powers realized the threat players posed and repeatedly forbade selling weapons to them, the Luopu family's channels were never completely severed. Even after the major powers realized the threat players posed and repeatedly forbade selling weapons to them, the Luopu family's channels were never completely severed. Who traded between several cities in the wastes. Once Xiao Fan happened upon him being robbed, recognized him, and decisively intervened to rescue him. From that moment, the two formed a friendship. Now it seemed the good deed sown back then had begun to bear fruit. Pilaisi leaned in and lowered his voice. The reason is actually very simple. A young duke of the Dower family had confessed to the Luopu grandee's daughter and been publicly rejected before many dignitaries. Nursing a grudge, the young duke deliberately suppressed the Luopu trading caravans in his jurisdiction. He had slaughtered the Luopu caravans on the Lido wastes, and the Luopu grandee was so furious he placed a bullet in the young duke's plate right then. Although the two sides later negotiated a reconciliation, the caravans here were ruined. Rather than send outsiders, the family preferred to recruit a merchant familiar with local conditions, so I became the natural choice. Xiao Fan had actually long been aware of the backstory, yet he feigned surprise. Pilaisi smiled and joked, "Aren't you going to invite me in for a visit?" In truth, he had not wanted to come calling on Xiao Fan. Owing a favor in person always felt awkward. But unlike the lowly scavengers, he had some understanding of the arrivers. Moreover, he had been specifically instructed by his superiors to keep an eye on the figure who had climbed into the top 10 of the arrivers' Lord reputation board. That was why he had made the trip. In the underground base's restaurant, Press took out a bottle of red wine from his pocket with a smug expression. He held up the bottle and said, "This is a premium product sourced from the federal imperial capital. Consider yourself lucky today." Xiao Fan smiled faintly, feeling somewhat helpless. Did he really think he was a country bumpkin? From the label on the wine bottle, it was clear that although this wine came from the federal imperial capital of Aelorian, it was the cheapest and lowest quality available, easily found on the streets of the capital. However, due to the harsh environment of the wasteland, grapes couldn't be cultivated, and even this cheap red wine couldn't be produced. Because of this, any red wine sold here became a rare luxury. He was certain that there were at least 100 boxes of this red wine stacked in the truck accompanying Press. Press took out 2 exquisite goblets, poured a small half-glass for Xiao Fan, and pretended to be a gentleman, closing his eyes to savor the taste. Xiao Fan shook his head helplessly and downed the wine in one go. The wine had a faint flavor with heavy tannins and was intensely bitter. If the tannins were to dissipate, that slight hint of wine flavor would likely vanish entirely. He passed a cigarette to Press, who accepted it without disdain, lit it, and took a puff. So tell me, my base is poor and lacks resources. What business do you, a scheming merchant, wish to conduct here? Xiao Fan got straight to the point. Upon mentioning business, Press immediately put away his casual demeanor and became serious. I indeed came to discuss a deal with you, but before we talk business, I can offer you a piece of information for free. Is it about Baron Day or Claude? Xiao Fan's lips curled into a smile. Press was taken aback and exclaimed, "You guessed it." Was that difficult to guess? The biggest local tyrant in this wasteland is Baron Claude. Although he never expands outward, he absolutely cannot allow unstable elements like me to rise. Press observed Xiao Fan anew. He had initially thought Xiao Fan was merely a lucky scavenger with some strength, but now it seemed that his ability to defeat the biker gang and the hyena gang was no mere fluke. The Fury faction has close ties with the Alchemy Guild of Darkly City, consistently assisting the guild in gathering technology and equipment from ancient civilizations. As Press spoke, his gaze swept over the black bracer on Xiao Fan's right hand, a glimmer of light flashing in his eyes. He continued, "Moreover, Baron Day or Claude has a stake in the coal mine controlled by the biker gang. Now that the biker gang has collapsed and the coal mine is under your control, you have essentially incurred the wrath of 2 major troubles. The higher-ups have stated that if you are willing to affiliate with the Rop family, we can help you resolve these issues." Xiao Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed, the emergence of players had thoroughly disrupted the balance of this world. Even a trade-based force like the Rop family was beginning to lay plans. Without strength, wealth cannot be protected, and as a wild lord without any backing, he naturally became their target for recruitment. However, he understood that relying on others is unreliable. Only his own strength was most dependable. Affiliating with the Rop family might bring about initial stability, but in the long run the family would undoubtedly become a stumbling block to his development. Xiao Fan declined politely. "No need to, I can handle these matters myself." Press frowned slightly and couldn't help but advise, "Shasker, you need to think carefully about who you are dealing with. The regular army of Darkly City is not a ragtag group like the biker gang. Even if Darkly City is small and remote, it is still a legitimate city. The army there is well-trained and well-equipped, and it is said that there are even a few armored vehicles, main battle tanks, and long-range artillery. Once Baron Day or Claude decides to take action, given Xiao Fan's current strength, he may not even have the chance." Xiao Fan understood the risks involved, but he had his plans, so he changed the subject. "All right, let's not discuss this anymore. What good things did you bring this time?" Time slipped away quietly, and more than half a month had passed since the game launched. Even though the start was difficult, players from various countries had managed to establish roots in different factions through various means. The players from Xiao Fan's base were increasingly clashing with players from other nations in the wasteland, and there had even been instances of entire squads being ambushed and wiped out. As for who was behind it, everyone was aware. But Xiao Fan had no intention of intervening for now, as such minor conflicts could be handled by the players themselves. What he urgently needed now was a powerful weapon for self-defense, and he had to wait for Press to deliver this weapon. Fortunately, the base had traded a good amount of food for coal with Press, so food supplies could hold out for now. Xiao Fan strolled through the bustling base, and the players around him stopped to salute upon seeing him. He smiled and nodded in response while carefully inspecting the situation in the base. He never underestimated the initiative of the players. With limited accommodation space and food supplies not being cheap, many players had built their own small houses on the ground using materials scavenged from the wasteland. Some players had figured out a way to set up wind turbines and solar panels, and with batteries they could easily light up a small power lamp. Every night lights twinkled in the base, resembling a myriad of homes, creating a truly spectacular scene. The more capable players even constructed 2-story small houses using discarded iron plates. The first floor served as a workshop and garage, while the second floor not only opened up a small vegetable garden, but also installed vertical windmills that functioned as both power generators and water vapor collectors. As the cold wind of the wasteland blew through at night, the windmills generated electricity, while the water vapor collected in the plastic tanks below due to gravity and centrifugal force. This water was not suitable for drinking, but it was perfect for irrigating the small vegetable garden planted with various seeds collected during scavenging. However, whether these seeds could germinate under high doses of radiation and what they would grow into afterward remained. Toot toot toot. A series of urgent honks sounded, followed by a player's complaint, "You guys are too much. Can you at least reduce the dragging? The roads in the base have been ruined by your freight." Hearing the commotion, Xiao Fan turned to look back. In the terrified gaze of the truck driver, he slowly stepped aside. Soon a heavy truck with no less than 10 trailers roared past, stirring up a cloud of dust. The vehicle bounced violently over the bumpy road, and several players were even thrown off the trailers. Seeing the commotion, Look at My Awesome quickly jumped down from the driver's seat, running up to Xiao Fan with a sheepish grin scratching his head. Ever since he had seized this heavy truck, he had been using it to haul back each trailer he encountered on the way to Ruined City. To save costs, he had ingeniously devised a way to make the truck pull the load, pushing its performance to the brink. But the cost was evident after repeated crushing. The smallest potholes on the base's roads were at least 20 centimeters deep, making road repairs an urgent necessity. The smelting plant in the base has accumulated quite a bit of slag, Xiao Fan instructed. All teams with heavy trucks pull half your manpower to repair the road and build a 10-meter-wide gravel road from the base entrance directly to the checkpoint. We will ensure the task is completed. Look at My Awesome immediately stood at attention and saluted. Xiao Fan nodded, opened his thermos to take a sip, and silently turned to leave. After returning to Lossler, and Pules enjoyed the service of his maid, holding in his hand a note with a string of numbers, feeling utterly bewildered. He simply could not believe that the Scorpion could use just this string of numbers to make the Ropu family cooperate with him, even to the extent of having the family voluntarily offer a nuclear bomb with a yield of 100,000. To him, this was nothing short of a fanciful dream. He lifted his chin toward the maid, who immediately bowed and exited the lavishly decorated bedroom with light steps. Pules donned a bathrobe and quickly set up the antenna, retrieving a satellite phone. "Contacting me this late. You better have news that will please me." A commanding voice came from the other end of the line, mingled with the soft gasps of a woman, sparking the imagination. Pules felt like slapping himself, knowing his master's schedule. Reporting at this hour was simply asking for trouble. "Master, there's a situation with the Scorpion," he said in a hurriedly low tone. "Oh, he didn't agree to affiliate with the Ropu family." Pules momentarily fell silent, only able to flatteringly respond, "Your wisdom and insight always hit the nail on the head. Enough with the nonsense. Why are you contacting me at this late hour? What's going on?" The other party's tone grew more impatient. Pules dared not delay and hurriedly reported the string of numbers given to him by Xiao Fan word for word. A sharp scream from a woman erupted from the phone, followed by a cacophony of chaotic noises, ultimately concluding with a heavy slam of a door. "Repeat that, I didn't catch it." The master's voice carried an unmistakable urgency. Though unsure why this string of numbers caused such a reaction from the master, Pules patiently repeated it verbatim. The other end fell into a deathly silence. In the inner city of the Olorian Empire, Duke Ropu rushed into the castle's basement, not even bothering to tidy his clothes. In the center of the basement stood a peculiar device. He glanced at the note in his hand, then traced the number on the device, confirming that they matched perfectly before tremblingly opening the device's panel. He input the first number, and seeing that the panel didn't light up with a red error, he continued to input further. Until he reached the second to last number, the device showed no abnormalities. Duke Ropu's heart raced, almost bursting from his chest in excitement. He actually knows the password to the Divine Punishment Rainbow Light. This device was the controller of the Divine Punishment Rainbow Light, excavated from the ruins of an ancient civilization. It could control space-based weapons hidden in the deep orbit of a planet after the previous civilization's downfall. As long as he had the complete password, he could command this weapon to strike any corner of the planet Malroka. No more than 5 factions on the entire planet Malroka possessed such a controller. However, even if one was lucky enough to obtain the controller, most could not activate it due to ignorance of the password. More critically, the controller only allowed 3 incorrect attempts. Exceeding this limit would lead to immediate self-destruction. And the password given by Xiao Fan corresponded precisely to a Divine Punishment Rainbow Light satellite hidden. As long as he controlled this weapon, combined with the Ropu family's substantial financial backing, no one would dare to provoke them lightly again. At worst, they could activate the weapon and perish together. Currently, the first 98 numbers were correct. Only the last digit remained before he could fully connect to that satellite. Duke Ropu stared at the final button, his outstretched hand unconsciously clenched into a fist. He dared not take the risk. Even with 2 chances left, the probability of guessing 1 correct digit among 10 was too low. He could not gamble with the future of his family. After a long while, Duke Ropu returned to his study, grabbed the satellite phone, and dialed Pules' number again. "What does he want?" "He wants a small-yield nuclear bomb," Pules quickly replied. "Immediately return and give him the nuclear bomb." Duke Ropu's voice brooked no argument, and informed the Scorpion that from today onward the Ropu family is his most steadfast ally. Pules was completely stunned. The Scorpion had actually guessed right. What incredible secret lay hidden within this string of numbers? By the way, this matter must not be known to a 4th person. Duke Ropu's tone turned icy. "If it leaks, you know the consequences." "Rest assured, Master. The note from the Scorpion has already been burned. Besides you and him, no one else will know," Pules hurriedly assured. After hanging up, Duke Ropu sat in his chair, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the desk, filled with curiosity about Xiao Fan's identity. How could Xiao Fan know the password to the divine punishment rainbow light? Since he was aware that the controller was in his hands, he must also understand the weight of this weapon. To know if this password were handed over to the Alchemy Guild or the Imperial family of the Bice Federation, it could easily exchange for a position of elder or even a peerage. Yet Xiao Fan only wanted a small-yield nuclear bomb. This item lacked satellite guidance, and regardless of its power, was merely a large rocket. He simply could not fathom Xiao Fan's intentions, but none of it mattered now, though the priority was to obtain the last digit of the password. Thinking of this, Duke Ropu couldn't help but chuckle as Xiao Fan's gift was simply a tremendous surprise. He stroked his chin, a calculating smile appearing on his face. The Leto Wasteland had always been a lawless zone, severely irradiated, and Baron O, a descendant of the Dor family, had been dispatched there. Since the Dor family could occupy that land, he had no reason not to. In the past, he had looked down on that wasteland, but now it was perfect to give it to the Scorpion as a favor. With a formal fief and the backing of the Ropu family, that kid from the Dor family would definitely not dare to trouble the Scorpion again. It also indirectly let him owe him a favor. The next day, Duke Ropu, along with several allies, wrote a recommendation letter and presented it to Bice 18. The Emperor was never worried about his subjects not getting along. He feared their forming cliques and factions. Now Duke Ropu actively setting a trap for Duke Dor delighted him. He immediately removed the ring representing the throne, dipped it in red clay, and heavily stamped it on the recommendation letter. What? Our commander has been granted the title of Baron by Bice 18 of the Bice Federation. The territory within 300 kilometers centered on the base is now ours. Is this for real? Olorian is thousands of miles away. Has the commander's reputation reached the royal ears? Ha ha ha. Now we can legitimately drive away all the little devils and Korean players from our territory. Don't underestimate the title of Baron E. This is an official position. I was worried about the Lord of Doclair City causing trouble, but now they're all on the same side as surely they can't have infighting. This news spread throughout the base, causing players to erupt in excitement and envy among players from other factions. Despite being a wild lord, Xiao Fan's treatment was simply worlds apart. After hearing the news from the players, Xiao Fan merely smiled faintly and didn't pay it much mind. He understood that this was the response the Ropu family had given after he sent out that string of numbers. This collaboration had only just begun. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Due to the backing of the Luo family and the formidable strength of Darkle City, players dared not provoke them lightly. However, the remnants of minor bosses like the Spiked Teeth and Fury met their doom. They had once arrogantly bullied players, but now they faced a fierce backlash. Players relying on their immortality painstakingly gathered firearms and weapons, their power growing larger like a snowball. When players fell in battle, they could immediately resurrect, while the natives perished completely. In this nearly carpet-like counterattack, the minor bosses were pushed back step by step, their resources nearly. Players had become an existence even more detested than mutated hyenas. Even though a few minor bosses managed to deceive some players into becoming their subordinates with sweet words, they were quickly betrayed. This group of players was not easy to control. Once they felt there was no benefit to be gained, dissatisfaction would accumulate, and when it reached a critical point, they would directly rise against their leaders, eliminating them and taking their resources to seek new allies or simply establishing their own faction. Such incidents occurred countless times throughout the month. Just by observing the influx of new faces in the lower ranks of the leader's reputation list, Xiao Fan could guess the general situation. He also discovered a rather dramatic fact. The 9th-ranked leader, just like in his past life, fell due to luck. He was originally a powerful marquee warlord, but in the end he was eliminated by a female player from the Great Goose faction who endured humiliation. This incident might prompt the world to reassess the player community. They were like a double-edged sword, effective when wielded well, yet capable of bringing disaster when mishandled, leading to a complete loss. Thanks to the downfall of this leader, Xiao Fan's reputation ranking smoothly rose from 10th to 9th. Commander, as per your orders, the construction of the power station has been completed within the time frame. Old Tan Sauerkraut hurried over, his excitement barely contained. Xiao Fan nodded at him, opened his thermos for a sip, tightened the lid, and walked out of the base behind Old Tan Sauerkraut. In the distance, the iconic cooling tower of the steam power station could be seen. The tower appeared rudimentary and crude, full of a wasteland aesthetic, yet it stood solidly alongside the power plant. Its actual operational efficiency still needed further verification. The two quickly arrived at the power station, covering an area of 10,000 square meters. Commander, over there is the steam room, Old Tan Sauerkraut pointed to a building as he introduced. We don't have heavy industrial production equipment, so we converted the fuel tanks from the gas station in Ruin City into steam storage tanks. The tanks are buried 5 meters underground, insulated with thermal materials and reinforced with concrete, significantly enhancing their pressure resistance. They then entered the control center, which also exuded a wasteland vibe. In the spacious room, one wall was covered with signal lights made from simple bulbs with Chinese characters labeled below them. On the opposite wall were densely packed circuit breakers. The tangled wires, though organized, still made one's scalp tingle. If the hidden cables within the walls were revealed, the whole control room would likely turn into a spider cave. These switches not only controlled the power room and steam room, but would also manage the entire base's power distribution in the future. Let's give it a try, Xiao Fan instructed in a calm tone. Old Tan Sauerkraut rubbed his hands, unable to hide his nervousness, and shouted into the intercom. Boiler room, start the boiler immediately. Understood. Players in the boiler room put down the intercom pad into their hands and forcefully pushed the gate in front of them. Boom. A fierce fire ignited within the boiler, followed by players sequentially closing all the circuit breakers, and the backup power source was activated. The massive blower emitted a deafening roar as crushed coal dust was blown into the combustion furnace in a fine dust form along with saturated air. Once the coal dust could maintain self-ignition, the ignition source was turned off, and the intense flames enveloped the rows of copper heating pipes. The injected distilled water quickly began to boil, and the thermometer in the adjacent steam room rapidly climbed, soon reaching 184 C. At this point, the pressure in the steam room tended toward dynamic equilibrium, and the water in the tank had completely transformed into saturated steam. Beep. When the boiler pressure rose to 1 megapascal, the alarm lights on the factory ceiling began to flash. The passive pressure relief valve opened automatically, and high-pressure steam sprayed toward the outside, alerting players that the pressure had reached a critical value. The player in the boiler room pressed the switch, and the control center immediately received the signal. Old Tan Sauerkraut promptly ordered, "Power room, start generator unit 1." Understood. Saturated steam was delivered to the power room, and as the gate opened, rows of steam engines covering thousands of square meters began to operate with a puffing sound. The connecting rods possessed immense torque, driving 2 energy storage flywheels weighing hundreds of tons to rotate. The flywheels gradually accelerated from slow rotation, eventually emitting a sharp, whirring sound. Once the rotation speed reached the predetermined standard, the flywheel automatically docked with the generator manually crafted by the players. Old Tan Sauerkraut turned around and saluted Xiao Fan solemnly. "Report, Commander. The voltage is stable and all systems of the power station are functioning normally." Xiao Fan nodded, his gaze falling on the stable voltmeter, then sweeping over the scattered blueprints on the table that had been modified according to actual conditions. It's common to modify blueprints during a project. Even national projects often adjust designs due to unexpected situations, which have worn out many designers. Although this power station appeared quite impressive, its actual power generation capacity was still below 1 megawatt, 1,000 kilowatts, barely sufficient for a medium-sized residential community, far from meeting the future development needs of the base. However, given the limited conditions, completing such a power station was already a significant breakthrough. He had originally hoped to supply power to the players' self-built cabins while collecting some electricity fees to earn merit points. Now it seemed that being able to operate various factories for subsequent expansion was already good enough. Fortunately, players had left room for upgrades during the design, and when conditions improved in the future, they could still modify and upgrade the power station to enhance its generation capacity and efficiency. For now, they could only make do. After passing the inspection, Xiao Fan snapped his fingers. The little spirit beside him immediately transferred 800 military merit points to Old Tan Sauerkraut's account. As for the remaining 200 final payment, Xiao Fan proposed to settle it after they taught the natives in the base how to maintain the power station. Looking at the 800 hefty sum in the account, Old Tan Sauerkraut was extremely excited, patting his chest and assuring that they could teach the natives basic maintenance within a week at most. However, he also admitted that due to the cultural level of the natives, they could at most handle basic maintenance tasks that did not require complex thinking, while key positions still needed players to guard. But this was hardly a problem. There were quite a few players living in the base, and after finishing their own tasks, they were happy to take turns at the power station. They could earn military merit points for free while chatting and bragging with their companions, which most of them were quite willing.